The last thing I felt in my first life was my wife's hand resting on my chest, and I remember thinking how warm it was. It was my wedding night. I was the first war god of the heavens. I had 9 personal disciples, an army that moved when I breathed, and a sword that had cut a world in half on a bad day. I had spent 200 years climbing to the top of the only ladder that mattered, and I had finally decided to stop climbing and be happy for a while. So of course, that was the night they killed me. Her hand pressed down. My chest opened. I looked up at my bride of 6 hours, and she was already looking past me at her father in the doorway, waiting to be told she'd done it right. Li Twilight Great Emperor, the man who toasted me at dinner. He didn't even come closer. He just watched me try to breathe with a hole where my heart used to be, and he said, "Take his sword." 200 years of cultivation, 9 disciples, an entire war god's legacy, and her only note on the whole thing was, "He's heavier than I expected." I died on a bed covered in red silk with my own blood ruining the pattern, and the last thought I had wasn't rage, it was a shopping list. Names. Hers, his, and 7 more. Then somebody slapped a 9-year-old girl and I woke up. Not gently, not in a garden with a wise old man explaining my second chance. I came back inside somebody else's body in the middle of a room full of shouting, and my first sensation in my new life was the sound of a hand hitting a child's face. "Brother Lei Jin, save me." I opened my eyes. There was a man standing 4 steps away with a little girl hanging from his fist. He had her by the collar, off the ground, kicking. She couldn't have been 10. She had 2 crooked braids and a very serious expression that was falling apart around the edges, and there were 4 red finger marks coming up on her cheek like a print left in dough. "Brother Lei Jen," she said again, and her voice cracked. "Meyer will be good. Meyer won't be disobedient anymore." That's what she thought this was. She thought she was being taken away because she'd misbehaved. The memories arrived then, all at once, the way water arrives when a dam stops existing. Lei Jen, 16, head of the Ni family of Moyang City. Meridians shattered. Father dead 3 years in a mountain ambush. Everyone in this hall in a chair that his father had paid for, and not one of them standing up. And the girl was Lei Ling Mei, adopted, nobody's blood, which meant to the men in this room, nobody's problem. "The Ni family owes the Lishan family," the man holding her said. He said it to the room, not to me. "The debt was your father's. Your father is dead, so we're taking the collateral. The girl comes with me today." Collateral. He said it the way you'd say inventory. I want to be clear about my emotional state at this point, because I've had 100 years to think about it, and I still can't improve on it. I was not enraged. Rage is loud, and rage is slow. What I felt was much quieter than that. It was the feeling of a man walking into his own house and finding a stranger eating out of his pot. I stood up. Nobody noticed. That's how far this body had fallen. The head of the family stood up in his own council hall, and the conversation didn't even hiccup. Ling Mei twisted around and bit his wrist. "Good girl," he hit her. Backhand, casual, the way you'd swat at a fly that had gotten personal, and her head snapped sideways and she stopped making noise entirely, which was somehow worse. I crossed the 4 steps. He was reaching for her again when my hand closed on his wrist, and I'd like to report that I felt something noble. I didn't. I felt bone. I felt it the way you feel a dry stick when you're deciding whether it'll do for kindling. Click. Not a crunch. A click. His wrist folded the wrong direction and made a sound like a lock turning, and Duan Kong Xuan, eldest son of the Lishan family, 9th level of Essence Meridian, went from ordering a child around to screaming on the floor of my house in less than a second. Ling Mei dropped. I caught her. She weighed about as much as a sword. "Duan Kong Xuan," I said. "You've gotten arrogant." The hall went so quiet, I could hear a bird somewhere outside failing to read the room. Then 2 people moved at once, and both of them were older than me, and both of them were stronger than me, and one of them had my last name. Duan Hong Li, the Lishan family's great steward, came in from the left with a palm strike that could have gone through a wall. And Lei Song Ran, the great steward of my own family, the man who'd been running my house for 3 years while I was busy being crippled, came in from the right with his hand shaped like a claw. I want you to sit with that for a second. My steward, attacking me, in my own council hall, while my elders watched from very comfortable chairs. I didn't have the strength to block either of them, so I didn't. I picked up Duan Kong Xuan instead. He weighed a lot more than Ling Mei, which is a sentence I enjoyed at the time and enjoy more now. I got him up by the front of his robe and swung him into the gap, and Duan Hong Li's palm strike landed square in the chest of his own young master. Song Ran's claw got there half a beat later and took most of the man's robe off in strips. "Damn it, what are you doing?" Duan Hong Li shrieked at the man he'd just hit, who was in no position to answer. "Lei Zhen!" Song Ran's voice came out with the exact tone of a man giving an order. "I command you to let him go." I looked at him for a while. "Lei Song Ran," I said. "I'm the head of the Ni family. When did it become a steward's job to give me commands?" Then I kicked Duan Kang Xuan across the hall. He landed in a heap near his steward, and the two of them made an unlovely pile, and Duan Hongli hauled him up and back toward the door, hissing about how the Li Shan family would repay this 100 times, 1,000 times, we'd all see, and so on. The full speech. He got most of it out before the door. I didn't listen. I was doing arithmetic. Because the outsiders were leaving, which meant it was time to deal with the traitors who lived here. I turned around to face a room full of the Ni family's elders, all of whom had been extremely still for the last 30 seconds and were now discovering an interest in the ceiling. Elders, I said, a grown man was breaking a 9-year-old girl's arms in this room. Where were you, Steward Songran? Songran's face did something complicated, but the instant I broke his wrist, I said, you appeared. Fast. Very fast. And then you attacked me, side by side with the Li Shan family's steward. I let that sit. So which is it? Is your surname Nie or is it Li Shan? Somebody in the third row made a small noise. Also, I said, the Yuan Dan pill you handed me yesterday, the one you were so insistent I take, that was poison, wasn't it? I hadn't been guessing. When I woke up in this body, I'd taken inventory the way you check a house after a break-in, and all 9 of its meridians were shattered, and the shattering was old, but there was something newer sitting on top of it. Black, sluggish, sitting in the channels like grease in a cold pipe. Not an injury, a dose. Song Ran stopped pretending. He came at me with the claw again, straight across the council table, and I stepped 3 meters back on a body that had no business moving that way, and then the temperature in the room changed. Enough. Lei Yuanji, great elder of the Ni family, myriad manifestation realm, the single strongest cultivator in Moyang City, stood up out of his chair. He didn't hit Song Ran. He just let his aura off the leash for half a heartbeat, and Song Ran went across the floor and into a pillar like a sack of rice off a cart. Head of the family, Yuan Ji said to me, and his voice had gravel in it. Say the word. That was the first person in this entire building to call me that. Song Ran got dragged out, stripped of his post. Yuan Ji asked me quietly to spare his life. Decades of service, a family name, all the usual arguments. I said fine. I said fine because I'd watched Song Ran's eyes while he was being sentenced, and there wasn't fear in them. There was scheduling. He'd try again. And when a man tries twice, nobody expects you to warn him 3 times. Afterward, the elders wanted to talk about how unwise I'd been. The Li Shan family is stronger than us. We can't afford this. Have you considered apologizing? I let them finish. Then I asked exactly one man in that room for his opinion, and Lei Yuanji gave it standing up. The head of our family slapped the eldest son of the Li Shan family in his own hall, he said. That doesn't cost the Ni family face, that gives it face back. One of the elders tried once more. He was about 60. He had been in that chair since before I was born in this body, and he genuinely believed he was being reasonable. Head of the family, with respect, the Li Shan family has 4 times our strength. They have the Ma and Yang households leaning their way, and we have just crippled their heir in our own hall. There is a version of tomorrow where we send a gift and an apology, and everyone lives. There is, I agreed. He brightened. In that version, I said, we send the gift and the apology, and then in about 11 days they come back and ask for something else, because a household that pays once has told everyone it pays, and what they'll ask for the second time is the girl, and we will have already established the exchange rate. The brightness went out. Then let's keep it simple, I told the rest of them. Anyone who touches the Ni family dies. If that's too complicated for you, write it down. And I left. Ling Mei caught me in the corridor. She'd washed her face, which had not helped, and she bowed with her whole upper body like she'd been practicing. Thank you, Brother Lei Zhen. I looked at this extremely serious 9-year-old thanking me for not letting a man carry her off as payment on a bill. Meyer, I said, nobody in this world gets to take you anywhere, ever. If someone tries, you don't apologize to them, you bite them harder. She thought about that with tremendous gravity. I did bite him, she said. You did. It was the best decision anyone made in that room. She left extremely pleased with herself, and I went and sat down alone and finally got a proper look at the wreck I'd been reincarnated into. It was worse than the first pass. 9 meridians, all of them shattered, all of them silted up with 3 years of poison. 16 years old and already a dead end. Whoever had done this had been thorough and had been in no hurry. And then I found the 10th one. Everybody has 9 meridians. Everybody. It's not a rule so much as a fact, like having 1 head. I had 9 ruined ones, and then, sitting quietly behind them, where no cultivator in the world would ever think to look, there was a 10th. I knew it immediately. I'd carried it in my old body for a century. The Star Origin Stone. I'd taken it out of the Dark Sea Star River, the first forbidden land of the heavens, out of the Temple of Anhai, and I'd fought 9 guardian demonic beasts for 4 days to get my hands on it. And when I finally pulled it free, the whole Star River collapsed behind me and stopped existing. It had died with me, and it had come back with me. I sent my divine sense into it, and the world dropped away. Black. Not the black of a dark room. The black of somewhere that has never once had light in it, going out forever in all directions, and very far away, a few stars, dead cold, absolutely silent. Then something in it noticed me. Eternal chaos, star river domain, 9 heavens river, endless stars, star power, the origin of power, power gathered from the stars, eternal, supreme. The voice didn't come from anywhere, it came from the place itself, and the place woke up. A lattice unrolled across the emptiness, layer over layer, bigger than any structure I'd ever seen built by anything, and stars came on inside it in their millions until the black was gone. From the center of it, a pillar climbed and kept climbing and did not stop climbing, joining the ground to a sky that had no top. 9 levels, 9 heavens river. The pillar was the stone itself, covered, from bottom to a height I couldn't see the end of, in gray ceiling patterns. The voice told me what was under them. 900 billion star power. Let me translate that. 100,000 star power will shake a mountain. 1 million will break the ground open. 100 million will crack the void realm itself. In my last life, I stood at the 9th level of the heavenly emperor realm, the peak of everything the heavens had, and I could not crack the void realm. I sat down inside my own 10th meridian and looked up at 900 billion of anything. Here is the thing about carrying an object like that. In my first life, I owned it for a century, and I used maybe 100,000 of it, ever, at the outside, and I still went up the ladder faster than anyone in recorded history. I never had time to open it properly. There was always a war, and then there was always another war, and then there was a wedding. Now I had a ruined 16-year-old body, no allies, no reputation, an entire family sitting downstairs hoping I'd be quiet about the poisoning, and absolutely nothing else to do. I reached for the nearest star. The first star power, awakening. Here's the part the stories leave out. It hurt. The star power came down my ruined channels like a fire going through a house, and my 9 broken meridians had opinions about that, and every one of those opinions was screaming. Worse than the poison. Worse than dying had been, honestly, and I've done that. I held on because I'd been through this shape of pain before, and because I'd already decided what I was going to be in this life, and it was not a man who lets go. Then it changed. All at once, the fire turned into something like spring rain, and it went through every channel I had, and it fixed them. All 9. Rebuilt and glowing faintly with starlight where they'd been black. The poison came out through my skin and left me smelling like a dead animal and feeling like a god. 9th level of essence meridian, restored, in one night. Naturally, my very next thought was, do it again. I reached for a second star and got absolutely nothing, not a spark. The domain didn't even bother to be rude about it. I sat there for a while with the obvious question, and the obvious question was, why not just wake all of them and skip everything? Because it doesn't work like that, and I want you to know I checked immediately, and I checked hard. Each star only opens when the body carrying it is strong enough to hold what comes out. 900 billion star power sitting behind a door I could only open by getting stronger the ordinary way, 1 level at a time, like a peasant. The greatest treasure in the heavens, and it was a ladder, not an elevator, which meant I needed to break through to the Yuanling realm, which meant medicine, which meant money. So the former first war god of the heavens, conqueror of the Li Twilight divine region, went down to the family finance hall to ask for pocket change. The man who ran it was named Gao Jianhui. I found him with his feet up, eating melon seeds, in the middle of a very entertaining conversation with 3 subordinates about our useless family head. Can't even lift a sword, he was saying. 3 years of feeding him. Trash is trash. You can put a hat on it. He saw me. His mouth kept going for another half-second out of pure momentum. What? He said. Do you want? I hit him. Then I hit him again, and I kept hitting him, open-handed, across that face, both directions, until my arm actually got tired, which took longer than I expected, because his head kept coming back to the same place like a bell. Now, I said, tell me who you are. I'm the great steward's son-in-law, he screamed. I'm Lei Song Ran's. Song Ran's. I nodded. Then you've earned considerably more of these than I gave you. Somewhere behind me, a young man in the crowd said very clearly, he deserved it. Everyone froze. He went white. He deserved it, someone else repeated, from the back, and then it went around the room like a fire in dry grass. He deserved it. He deserved it. Beat him to death. And I want to point out that these were the same 40 people who had watched Gao Jianhui eat melon seeds and insult me for 3 years. I pointed at the first one, the one who'd said it before it was safe. Name. Enlei Chunye. You run the finance hall now. I walked out with 100 gold and a distinct impression that about 39 people in that room were now furiously calculating how much faster they could have spoken. I want to note for the record that in my last life, I did not carry money. I had disciples for that. Now I was standing in a market street counting coins into my palm and discovering that a mid-grade healing pill costs about the same as a decent horse. 200 years of glory, and I was doing math about horses. And that's when I saw it. It was in a junk stall. under a pile of rusted hardware, a broken hilt with about a third of a blade left on it, black, filthy, so beat up the stall owner had it priced with the scrap. The Juezhen John sword, number 1 of the 10 famous swords of the heavens, 9th order imperial artifact. When it was finished, its light went straight up into the 9 heavens, and every cultivator in the celestial realm looked up at the same time. Snapped in half by the owl-dragon demon blade of Long Bai Lei, demon emperor of the 9 netherworlds, in the last real fight of my old life. It had come back too. The old man running the stall watched me pick it up and immediately started earning his living. Ah, young master has an eye. That is no ordinary blade. That is an ancient divine artifact. It is said, he said, warming up, that with that very sword a great hero slew the evil dragon of the demon race. He had no idea he was telling the truth. He just made it up, out of nothing, standing there in a market stall in a border town, and every word of it had happened, and I had been the one holding it. How much? 100 silver, and I'm robbing myself. I paid without haggling, which I think genuinely upset him. I stood there in the street with 100 silver of scrap metal in my hands. 100 years, old friend, I said. You still feel exactly the same. Are you talking to a broken knife? I turned around. The woman standing behind me had her arms folded and her chin up and the specific expression of someone who has been waiting a long time and intends to make it your problem. You've finally shown your face, she said. Lin Hua Yue, daughter of the city lord of Moyang. Now, I'd like to defend my reasoning here. She had come to find me. She had clearly been keeping track of me. She had, by her own admission, been waiting. You waited 3 years for me? I said. That's very touching. 3 years ago, you beat me at the new martial arts tournament, she said, and I came second, and I have thought about it every single day, and this year I'm going to put you through the floor of that stage in front of the entire city. Ah, different kind of waiting. While she was explaining in some detail exactly how she planned to do it, I was looking at her, and something was wrong, or rather something was extremely right and had been badly handled. There was a heat coming off her that had nothing to do with her temper. You're stuck at the 9th level of Essence Meridian, I said. 2 years, no movement. And every day at noon it burns. Here. I tapped my own stomach, like something's trying to get out. She stopped talking mid-threat. How? She said. Do you know that? Because you're not stuck. You're sealed. I looked at her. You have a 9 heavens divine phoenix. There are 9 ranks of Primal Spirit. 9th rank is called Supreme, and the reason nobody uses the word casually is that most cultivators will go their entire lives without meeting one. In my last life, I had one. Exactly one person in the heavens had another. This woman had been carrying one around a border town for 2 years, thinking she had a bad constitution. You're lying, she said, and her voice had gone thin. Your phoenix seal is at the 9th stage. When it hits the 10th, it doesn't seal anymore. It hatches. I let that land. And when a 9th rank Supreme hatches inside a body that isn't ready for it, it burns. You, this street, and everything for a few hundred li in every direction. How long? 3 days. She was quiet for a second. Can you stop it? No, I said. Nothing in the 3,000 small worlds can suppress that. 10,000-year ice soul might. There isn't any. Then what? We're not going to suppress it. I was already walking, and after a second she came with me. We're going to wake it up early. We got about 40 meters up the market street before somebody blocked it. Duan Kongshuan had brought 15 people with him, which I thought showed a certain lack of confidence in his own recovery. His wrist was splinted and strapped across his chest, and he had clearly spent the intervening hours composing. 100 times over, he announced to the street. I said 1,000. Then he threw a punch at my face with his good hand. It didn't arrive. Lin Huayue stepped past me, turned it, and put him on his back in the road, all in about the time it takes to sigh. Private duels are illegal inside the walls, she said. You know that. Your father helped write the ordinance. Duan Kongshuan sat up in the dirt and looked from her to me and arrived, with the unerring instinct of a certain kind of man, at the single most unhelpful conclusion available. You're protecting him, he said. You've fallen for him. I'm enforcing a… Look at you. You have. Are you jealous? I said. Both of them turned around and looked at me, and for one glorious moment I had them united. Then Duan Kongshuan got up and used the stone-crushing palm, which is the Li Shan family's signature and is genuinely a decent technique, and about 20 people got out of the way. I met it with a bare fist. I want to explain why, because it looks like showing off and it wasn't. Every martial technique I actually know is heaven rank or above. If I had used one, any of them, at the lowest setting, with intent, Duan Kongshuan would not have been a person afterward, and I would have had to explain that to a city lord I hadn't met yet, in a street full of witnesses, on my second day alive. So I hit him with my hand, which was the merciful option, and it shattered every bone in his. He went down and stayed down, holding a wrist that was now his second worst problem. Then I put my foot on his chest. The street went very quiet. Somebody's cart stopped rolling. 2 days ago, I said, in my own hall, you called me trash. He was making a noise, not words. Now you're under my foot in a public road with 15 of your own men watching. I leaned a little. So which of us is trash? And then I broke his essence meridian. I did it slowly, with 2 fingers, in front of his entire retinue, and I'll be honest that I took no pleasure at all in the sound and considerable pleasure in the sight of 15 armed men deciding not to move. Duan Kongshuan, eldest son of the Li Shan family, 9th level of Essence Meridian, the pride of a top 3 household, would spend the rest of his life as a man who could carry his own shopping and nothing else. Lin Huayue caught up with me 2 streets later, walking fast. Do you have any idea what you just did? Approximately. They won't come for you, they'll come for your household. She got in front of me. Aren't you afraid of the Li Shan family? Yes. That stopped her dead. You're afraid. Of course I'm afraid, I said. I'm 16. I have 9 meridians that were black on Tuesday, and I've just crippled the heir of a family 4 times my size. I'd be an idiot not to be. Then why? Because he earned it. I kept walking. And because not killing him is the single greatest act of mercy I have performed in 2 lifetimes, and I would like somebody in this city to appreciate it. She was quiet for about 10 steps. Duan Yongjian is coming back, she said. The second son. He left Moyang a year ago, and nobody's seen him since, and he was already Yuanling realm when he went. She looked at me sideways. He's the real one. Kang Xuan was just the loud one. Good. That is not the correct response. It is if you're me, I said, and went to buy herbs. I needed yin catalysts, frostgrass, a lot of it, and the spirit core of a frost serpent king. I found both, and while I was buying them, I also bought an ice serpent egg off a vendor who was selling it as a curiosity because it was mutated, because it had a cold aura on it that a first-rank egg shouldn't have, and because it cost 8 silver. 5 days later, it still hadn't hatched. I'd like that noted as well. Then Lei Chunye came sprinting down the market street with no dignity at all, and I knew what he was going to say about 4 seconds before he got there. City lord, head of the family, he hung off a post, wheezing. The Li Shan family, all of them, they've surrounded the estate. And? Because there was an and. It was all over his face. They brought a gift, he said. They brought a coffin. They had 2. It was sitting in the middle of the road outside my gate, black lacquer, brand new, propped up on 2 trestles so everybody could get a good look at it. Very old-fashioned. I appreciated the effort. The whole Li Shan family was arranged behind it, and Duan Hong Li was out front with his good hand behind his back doing his big speech. Today, he announced, not even a fly leaves the Ni estate, and on a stretcher beside him, propped up on cushions, wrist splinted, face like a burst fruit, Duan Kongshuan was howling. Not words at first, then words. On his knees, he was saying, I want to see Lei Zhen on his knees. I want him to crawl. He got about half of it out. I'll give him this. He committed. Lei Yuanji came out of the gate to meet them, and I want to explain what that meant. Yuanji was Myriad Manifestation Realm. In Moyang City, there were 2 people at that level, and the other one ran the city. When Yuanji walked towards you, the correct response was to stop having ideas. The man in black put him on his knees with one hand. I didn't see it happen. I was still coming down the street. What I saw was the aftermath. Our great elder on both knees in the dirt outside his own family's gate, and a stranger standing over him with his hand still out, not even breathing hard. Myriad manifestation. A third one, in a border town where there had never been more than 2. 2 Ni disciples ran at him because they were young and they were ours. He killed them without turning his head. It took less time than it takes to describe. Old man, he said to Yuanji pleasantly, call me ancestor, put your forehead on the ground, do it properly, and I might let some of your ants keep breathing. And Lei Yuanji, 70-something years old, the strongest man our family had produced in 3 generations, with tears cutting tracks down a face that had gone the color of ash, started to bend. Let's see, I said coming up the street. Which bastard thinks he can humiliate the Ni family? Everyone turned. Here's what I want you to understand about the next 4 seconds. I didn't announce anything. I didn't posture. In my last life, I commanded armies of the heavens, and the one thing that job teaches you above all others is that when the enemy is looking at the wrong thing, you don't tell him. They were all looking at me, so I took Duan Kongshuan's throat instead. Nobody saw me cross. One moment I was in the street, the next I had a hand around the neck of the eldest son of the Li Shan family, and there was a very interesting silence. I looked at the man in black. You've got a hostage, he said, and shrugged. Kill him. I don't care. And to prove it, he grabbed Yuanji by the collar and threw him 10 meters up the road like a bundle of laundry. Honestly, he added, I'd rather it was you living and him dead. Fine, I said, then let's go. I closed my hand. Duan Kang Xuan stopped screaming. I want to be honest about this because I've had a long time to think it over and I refused to dress it up. I did not agonize. He had come into my house and taken a 9-year-old girl off the floor by her collar, and he had told me exactly what he intended to do the moment he was able, and he had a family behind him who agreed with him. There are people you argue with. There are people you warn. And there are people whose entire plan requires you to be dead, and with those people the only real decision is timing. The man in black didn't blink. He'd watched me break the neck of the man he was supposedly there to protect, and his expression didn't move at all. That told me what he was. His hobby was killing geniuses before they finished ripening. He hadn't come here for the Li Shan family. He'd come here for me, and the Li Shan family were just the people who'd sent the invitation. Behind him, a primal spirit rose up, a black wolf, huge, mist pouring off its back. To kill you, I said. One move is enough. To kill me, he said. You'd need 9 extremes war god art. 1 sword commands the gods. A half-broken 100 silver piece of scrap came out of my hand, and there was a flash and everything stopped. The man in black hung in the air like he'd run face first into a wall that wasn't there. The wolf came apart into smoke. He stayed up for a full second, and then he came down, and his throat was open, and he did not get up. Nobody in that street made a sound. Then someone at the back said it, in the voice of a man watching a dog do algebra. He's a sword practitioner, which in a town like Moyang is roughly what you'd say if a farmer pulled out a warship. You killed a man of the Blood Bat sect! Duan Hong Li was screaming it, spraying, both arms up. You finished your whole family, you! I cut every meridian in his body, put a foot on his chest, and rolled him into the coffin. I think it fits you, I said, and shut it. Then I looked at the 2 dead Ni disciples in the road, and I said the only thing worth saying out loud. One of mine costs 10 of yours. Write that down too. And that was when Li Shan Wuli arrived, the head of the Li Shan family, 9th level of Primal Spirit, at the peak of it, and he came down the street and saw his eldest son lying in the road with his neck at the wrong angle, and he made a sound I don't have a word for. Family head Li Shan, I said. It's been a while. How do you like the gift I prepared for you? He came at me palm first with everything he had, and I met him palm to palm, and he went backward with blood coming up. I'd like to take credit for that. I can't, entirely. My own origin key was gone. All of it had gone into that one sword strike, so what I'd actually just done was reach past my own body entirely and borrow from heaven and earth. Flowing kill human seal, one of the War God 3 imprints. The technique I'd used to break open the corpse demon lord in my last life, and I'd used it on a regional bully outside a market town, and it had left me hollow enough that a strong wind would have been a serious fight. So I did the only sensible thing. I smiled at him and said, "Be glad I've got so little strength left today, otherwise you'd already be in the box with your steward." He believed me. He believed me hard enough to shout for a general attack instead of testing it, which was ideal because a general attack takes about 10 seconds to organize, and I needed 9 of them. I got 8. Because that's when the city lord of Moyang came over the wall. Lin Wei. Myriad manifestation, 3rd level. He landed in the road between 2 armed families like a man arriving at a garden party, and everyone stopped, and I understood immediately that he had not come to save anybody. He'd come because his daughter had asked him to, roughly 100 times, and because he wanted to see with his own eyes whether the boy who'd claimed he could wake her spirit was real or was going to die in a street brawl and save everyone the trouble. I know this because his second son of a thing did the exact same thing 5 minutes later. Duan Yongjian stepped forward, second son of the Li Shan family, 4th level of Primal Spirit, gone from the city a full year and back that morning, and the first thing he did was throw a strike at Lei Yuanji's back, which Lin Wei swatted out of the air without looking. "A wager," Duan Yongjian said. "I fight Lei Jun. He wins. The Li Shan family walks away. I win. He dies here." Our elders started shouting that it wasn't fair. He's exhausted. He's just fought 2 people, which was true. And which was exactly why Lin Wei's eyebrows didn't move. He wanted to see the edge on me. He just didn't feel like using his own hand to test it. "Since young master Li Shan is in the mood," I said, "who am I to ruin the party?" "I'll kill you with one hand," Duan Yongjian said, and held the other one behind his back to make sure everybody understood the arrangement. Our elders were still shouting about fairness. Lei Yuanji had gone the color of a man doing sums he doesn't like, and I stood in a road full of Li Shan family retainers with about 4% of my origin key left and thought, he's going to open with something big because he's been away a year and he needs the street to see it. He opened with something big. He came in from the left with a straight thrust, no technique on it at all, testing. And I want to note that this was the smart move and the last smart move he made. He was checking whether the story about the man in black was true. I let him find out. Eastern Emperor finger. One finger. No wind-up. No light. No shout. There was a hole through his palm afterward that you could have put a thumb through, and he stood in the road looking at it with the specific expression of a man whose entire model of the afternoon has just been deleted. Then he howled and let his primal spirit out, and it turned out to be a good one. Spirits come in 3 kinds: beast spirits, wood spirits, weapon spirits. Weapon spirits are the rarest of the 3, and they hit the hardest, and a 4th-rank weapon spirit in a border town is a genuinely impressive thing to own, the kind of thing a family builds a decade of planning around. It was a sword. It hung in the air over his shoulder, 4 meters of it, trailing fire. The street reacted. Somebody in the Li Shan retinue actually cheered. That's why they sent him away, Lei Wenji said behind me, quietly. That's a 4th rank. That wasn't a 4th rank a year ago. No, I agreed. Somebody's been feeding him. Blazing flames soar through the sky. A pillar of fire came down the street wide enough to take the shop fronts on both sides, and the heat came off it in a wall, and I could feel it drying my eyes from 20 meters. Behind me was my family's gate. Behind the gate were about 60 people who did not fight, so I didn't dodge. Old friend, I said, to 100 silver of scrap metal in my hand. Your turn. Star power came up out of the 10th meridian into a broken blade, and I used a technique I had not used since the last night of my first life. Sword severing the 8 desolations. The fire came apart down the middle, cleanly, the way a curtain opens. It did not scatter, it did not gutter, it parted and stayed parted, and the 2 halves of it went past me on either side and set the road on fire behind me in 2 neat stripes, and Duan Yongjian came out of the gap in the middle of his own attack at a speed he had not chosen. He hit the ground about 8 meters back and did not get up. His primal spirit hung in the air for another 1.5 seconds and then folded up and went away, which is a thing a weapon spirit does when the man holding it stops being able to hold anything. Nobody in that street said anything for a while. Behind me, Lei Wenji said, "Good," 3 times, each one louder than the last, and then to nobody. 78 years I've lived. This is the most fun I've ever had. Lin Wei actually applauded. 3 years without flying, he said, and now you go up in 1 jump. And in the middle of all that, Li Shan Wuli stood in the road looking at me, and I couldn't hear what he was thinking, but I found out later, and it was this: 3 sons. The eldest dead in the dirt, the second bleeding on the stones, the third one already an idiot from birth. And, I killed your father 3 years ago in the Liaoyun mountain range. 3 years later, I'll kill you. And now that you've offended the Bloodbat sect, you've finished the Ni family for me. I didn't know it yet. He was standing 4 meters away, holding the answer to the only question that mattered in my new life, and he was too angry to gloat. The Li Shan family left, and Lin Wei turned to me and stopped calling me by my name. Family head Ni, he said. The moon's at its highest. That's the best hour there is. Which is a city lord's way of saying, my daughter has 3 days, and you have 2 of them left, so let's go. Over in the Li Shan family hall that same night, they were having a very different conversation. Li Shan Wuli was shaking. Duan Yongjian, out of his sickbed and out of a sealed door session in the same 24 hours, had come out at the 5th level of Primal Spirit and sworn to kill me on the tournament stage in half a month in front of the entire city. And sitting in the head chair of the Li Shan family, in Li Shan Wuli's own chair, which nobody remarked on, which told you everything, was the reason none of them were afraid. The Bloodbat sect. 36th altar. Li Shan Wuli wasn't a client of theirs. He was their deputy altar master and had been for years, and not one soul in Moyang City knew it, including the part he'd never said out loud to his own son, because the deal Duan Yongjian had struck was simple and generous on its face. The altar helps the Li Shan family take Moyang, and in exchange, Duan Yongjian gets sent up to the Bloodbat sect's main headquarters for training, a promotion, an honor. Li Shan Wuli knew what the training was. The Bloodbat sect is an assassin's organization. The branches exist to feed talented adolescents to the center, and fewer than 1 in 100 survives the process. He knew. He sat in that room and listened to his last standing son celebrate the arrangement, and he didn't say a word, because a family only needs one thing to survive, and it isn't sons. Ni or Mo. He said it to the empty air after they'd gone. Once the Bloodbat sect arrives, you're both finished. Meanwhile, I was sealing the gates of the city lord's inner courtyard with a spirit array, and Lin Wei was standing behind me, having a small crisis. You know arrays, he said. I know a few. You're 16. Stand there and don't talk. Here's what the tie-in ritual actually needs, since the whole thing sounds like nonsense until you see it work. The Phoenix Seal is pure yang, and it's about to hatch. You can't hold a 9th rank Supreme down. What you can do is give it a full moon, the highest tide of yin energy the world produces, and frost grass laid on the array points, and the spirit core of a frost serpent king at the center, and enough cold to convince a divine bird that the correct move is to come out slowly instead of exploding. Lin Huayue walked into the middle of it and looked at me and said, If this kills me, I'm going to be extremely annoyed. Noted. I mean it. I'll haunt you. I'll be very good at it. Sit down in the center circle and don't move your feet after the ice starts. Whatever it does, whatever it feels like, your feet stay inside the ring. I checked the grass placement one last time. If you step out, the array stops holding the yin balance, and then it's not a ritual anymore, it's a fire. How bad is it going to be? I thought about lying to her. It's the standard thing to do, and there are good arguments for it. You've been carrying a 9th rank supreme under a seal for 2 years, I said. For the next hour, that seal is going to lose. Everything it has been holding back is going to come through you on its way out, and there is no version of that which is anything other than the worst hour of your life. She looked at me for a moment. All right, she said, and sat down. Then the array came on, and it stopped being funny. Ice rings came up out of the frost grass at every point, climbing, joining, and the seal on her woke up and started fighting the cold, and she made a sound I am not going to describe, twice. Hold on, it isn't long. It was long. It was 40 minutes, and I spent most of them feeding grass into the ring points at a rate that would have bankrupted a merchant house, and about halfway through, I stopped being able to buy time with herbs and started paying with my own yuan power instead. Lin Wei stood at the edge of the courtyard with both hands on the wall and did not interrupt once, which I did not expect from a father and have never forgotten. At around the 30-minute mark, my yuan power ran out. The array began to lose. Not dramatically, the ice at the outer ring simply stopped climbing and then began, very slowly, to retreat, and I could see the next 10 seconds arranged in front of me like a row of plates. Badly, then loudly, then not at all for anyone within a few hundred li. So I put star power through a Frost Serpent King's core. The entire courtyard went solid, not frozen over, solid, one piece, air included. And in the middle of it, the fire finally stopped fighting and started listening, and it gathered itself up and stood, and a phantom bird the size of the courtyard opened its wings over her, and it cried out once, high and clean like a crane, and went straight up into the 9 heavens. She dropped. I caught her before the ice let go. She woke up the next morning, and the first thing she did was look down and discover that her outer robe was on backwards. Did you dress me? You were unconscious, I said. No need to thank me. Thank you, Mai. I would like it on record that I got out of the room at a full sprint shouting, "Help, young lady Mo is committing murder," and that I ran directly into her father in the corridor. Lin Wei checked her over. Then he sat down on a step. It's awake, he said. Told you. She let it out for him, and the courtyard air went hot enough to bend, and a crimson phoenix stood over the roof tiles of the city lord's residence, looking at absolutely nothing with the disinterest of something that has been alive in one form or another for longer than the city. What rank? Lin Wei said. He said it the way you'd ask what year a tomb was. He says 9th. Lin Wei nearly went off the step. 9th rank, I said, waving a hand. Is that impressive? I suppose from where you're standing, with a 4th rank flame lion, yes, it must be. He stopped breathing. Nobody knew about his spirit. A cultivator's primal spirit is the one card you never show. I'd named his, its rank, and the exact ceiling of his strength, in the tone of a man reading a menu. Lei Zhen, he said after a while. You're a good boy. Maybe this is fate. Maybe. I turned my wrist over. City Lord, a tattoo of a bat, in blood, on the inside of the wrist. What is it? Everything friendly went out of his face. Drop it, he said. That organization isn't something I can touch. It isn't something the royal family of the Blue Cloud Empire can touch. 3 years ago, someone put an ambush in the Liaoyun mountain range and my father didn't come back, I said. From the moment they did that, what they can touch stopped being the relevant question. He looked at me for a long moment, then he said it. Blood Bat Sect. Thank you. Lei Zhen. He caught my sleeve. Don't drag Hua Yue into this. That part's mine, I said. But you don't get to stand outside it either, City Lord. I killed one of their people in the street yesterday, in front of 40 witnesses. They're coming back. The only thing left to decide is where we meet them. Which left me with the small matter of Lei Song Ran. I'd spared him. I want to be precise about what that word means. Sparing a man is not mercy if you already know how the story ends. It's scheduling. So I walked out to the Liaoyun mountain range alone at dusk, and I took my time about it. I had a real errand out there, one road in and out of Moyang City, and I wanted sensing arrays on all 3 approaches so that nothing bigger than a rabbit could come at us without me knowing a day early. But I also walked slowly, and I stopped to look at things, and I generally behaved like a boy with a new toy and no situational awareness whatsoever. Behind me, about 200 meters back, moving through the scrub with a great deal of confidence, was my former steward. He'd been following me since the tree line. He was Yuan Ling Realm, and I was a 16-year-old with restored meridians and no reputation. He was waiting for the perfect moment, which is exactly what a man does when he thinks he has all the time in the world. I led him into a valley. Then I stopped, cupped my hands, and howled. The green eyes came on in the dark the way lamps come on in a street. 2, then a dozen, then 100, then more than I bothered counting. Shadow wolves. First rank, individually, not much, and there were between 200 and 300 of them, and 3 of the pairs of eyes were higher off the ground than the rest. Wolf kings. I crushed a corpse-dissolving pill in my palm and rubbed it down my arms, and the smell that came off me was so bad my own eyes watered. To a shadow wolf, I now smelled like something that had died 4 days ago and been rained on. Not food, not competition, not interesting. I walked out through the middle of that pack like a man crossing a street. At the far side, I turned around, and I could just make out Songran's outline where he'd frozen at the valley mouth, doing sums that were not going to come out in his favor. "Lei Songran," I said, "this is as far as I go. Enjoy yourself." Then I howled again, and 200 wolves turned around. I went and found a cave in the cliffs, sealed the mouth with an array, and got to work. Here's a thing worth knowing about cultivators. Everyone talks about strength. Almost nobody talks about mental energy, which is the actual dividing line between a thug and a threat. The average martial artist sits around level 10. Alchemists and array masters go much higher because their entire craft is built on it. A 9th rank alchemist runs 90 to 100. In my last life, I ran around 100. In this body, I was down to 40. 40 was still enough to feel everything within a kilometer of me like a hand in still water, which is how I knew 3 days later and without opening my eyes that Lei Songran had survived. Not well, but he'd survived. I had 3 days before the Bloodbat sect were due back, and I spent all of them on the same problem, awakening my primal spirit. 2 of those days went into stuffing UN power into my rebuilt meridians and widening the Dantian until it stopped complaining. 4 more stars came awake along the way, and I nearly doubled in strength, and I noticed something the domain hadn't bothered to mention. The star patterns aren't identical. Some of them give raw power, some of them give speed. The stone wasn't a battery, it was a workshop. Then, on the 3rd day, I woke my spirit. It hurt more than dying. I say that with the full weight of a man who has direct experience. Awakening a primal spirit doesn't tear the body, it tears the soul, and mine came up out of somewhere very deep and very old, and it did not come quietly. When I awakened the 9 extreme beast in my last life, a 9th rank supreme, one of the most violent births in the history of the celestial realm, it had been easier than this. "Fine," I said through a mouthful of blood to whichever heavens were listening. "You want me to let go? Not a chance." And then it finished, and I saw what I'd been carrying. It was a coffin. I would like to describe my reaction accurately. For about 30 seconds, I did not move or make a sound. I sat in a cave, cross-legged, on the greatest cultivation night of my second life, and I stared at the thing that had come out of my soul, and it was a coffin. "Damn it," I said eventually. "What the hell is that?" Let me put this in context. In my first life, my primal spirit was a 9 extreme beast, 9th rank, supreme. When I awakened it at 9 years old, the sky over 3 provinces went the wrong color for a day and a half, and 2 separate sects sent people to find out what had happened, and one of them tried to buy me. I had spent the last 3 days of this life quietly assuming the universe owed me something in that neighborhood. Primal spirits come in 3 kinds: beasts, wood spirits, weapons, occasionally something exotic, a ghost, a mirror. Once in my old life, a man with a bell. Not furniture, not funeral furniture. It floated there, unbothered by my opinion. Crystal clear, beautifully made, the lid closed. And when I reached out to grade it, and I could grade any primal spirit in the world at a glance, that was a skill I'd built over 2 centuries. Nothing. No rank. The reading slid off it like water off oiled leather. Chaos origin. Coffin. I got closer. There was space flowing around it, actual space, folding and moving in a way that had nothing to do with the cave I was sitting in. And when I put my divine sense inside it, I found 2 things that made me stop being upset about the aesthetics entirely. The first was time. Inside the coffin, time ran at 1/10 the speed of outside. 10 days of cultivation in there cost 1 day out here. Let me put that in terms a normal cultivator would understand. Every genius in this world was going to spend the next decade fighting me for the same 24 hours a day, and I had 240. The second thing was a book. It was sitting in a subspace inside the coffin, surrounded by countless drifting patterns like a night sky that had been filed properly. When I opened it, the first line explained itself. Star Soul Codex. A registry of every star soul in the Star River domain. Star souls can only be forged out of star power. Nobody else in either of my lives had ever had any. They come in 9 ranks. They're engraved rather than learned, and the surface they're engraved on, as far as I could tell, was the coffin itself, which is worth stopping on for a moment. Every technique in the world is a thing you learn. You are given it, you drill it, and on a bad day you can forget it. A star soul is a thing you cut into a surface. Once it's there, it does not degrade, it does not need practice, and it does not care how tired you are. It is not a skill, it's a fitting. I have never been able to decide whether that's an enormous advantage or a slightly frightening one. Page 2 held 12 first-rank star souls. Page 3 was locked, and the lock had a condition on it in the same flat tone the domain used for everything, 5th level of Primal Spirit. Of course it did. I picked the one that looked like an arrow, Crimson Flame. It looked simple. It was not simple. The pattern only opened one section at a time, and each section only unlocked when the previous one was correct, and by the time I'd carved the whole thing I was scraped so clean I had to sit still for an hour before I could stand. Then I opened the cave. Lei Song Ran was standing in the clearing outside. He was in rags. There was a scar across his face that had taken most of one eyebrow and was going to be with him forever. He had spent a full day and night killing his way out of that valley, and 2 more days hunting for the mouth of my cave, and the look on his face was not the look of a man who had learned anything. Lei Zhen, he said, when I get my hands on you, I'm going to take your skin off in strips. He was 300 meters away. Crimson Flame. A crescent of fire came off my hand and crossed 300 meters in the time it takes to blink, and Lei Song Ran, 9th level of Primal Spirit, went from a man delivering a speech to a handful of black bone. One shot. From a first-level Primal Spirit cultivator. I'll be honest about it because being honest about your own numbers is how you stay alive. He'd been wounded, he'd been exhausted, and he never saw it coming. A first-rank star soul isn't a cheat code, but it will kill anything below the 5th level that isn't paying attention, and most people aren't. Promise settled. Then something the size of a shed came out of the trees behind me. Earth Bear. 2nd rank. 20,000 Jin of muscle. Roughly equivalent to a 4th-level Primal Spirit cultivator, and extremely annoyed about the noise. I didn't have another star soul in me, so I used my feet. Fallen Leaf, Flying Swan Step, a movement technique from a life where I'd needed to dodge things much faster than bears, and I went under a paw the size of a door, up its shoulder, onto its back, and hit it once at the base of the skull with a bare fist. It fell over and stopped being a problem. I sat down on it. 15,000 Jin of raw strength now, and 20 with the Eastern Emperor finger. A month ago this body couldn't lift a bucket. Then I went back into the cave for 10 days, which cost me 1. I came out at the 2nd level of Primal Spirit with 12 stars awake and 2 more star souls carved. Sirius, which is a close-range brawler, and 7 waves, which I didn't understand yet and would very shortly be grateful for. With all 3 I could go at a 7th level Primal Spirit and expect to win, and my sensing array on the North Road went off. 30 or 40 men in black on the road at dusk, walking in a formation that was too disciplined to be bandits. The one at the front was a mountain of a man called Cheng Li Mu Qing, and I read him the way you read a price tag, Myriad Manifestation, 5th level, stronger than the city lord of Moyang. Beside him, a thin old man they called Chen Ji Gang, 2nd deputy, the sort of person who does the actual thinking. They were talking about entering the city after dark, and they were talking about it the way a work crew talks about a roofing job, and then one of them said the thing I'd come to hear. The Li Shan family have come over to us completely. There was a boy watching me from the ridge, 15, maybe 16, standing in plain sight several hundred meters off, with eyes that were green in a way that had nothing to do with the light. He'd spotted me from that distance through scrub, in low light, while I was making no sound at all. Ghost eye. An innate ocular talent, sees everything inside 500 meters and reads a target's combat strength off him like a label. He looked directly at me, then he turned and told his own people absolutely nothing. I followed him. "You're not bad," I said when I'd caught him up in a gully. "You felt me. You're worse than not bad." He didn't turn around. "You've got a storage pouch and a corpse dissolving pill on you. Nobody in a town like this has either, which means you took them off 3 of ours." "Sect people," I agreed. "The ones who don't come back. So here's my offer." He turned around then. "Kill Duan Yongjian for me. It's personal, and I'm not explaining it." "Fine, but I don't want information in exchange." He blinked. "I want you to find a man," I said. "His name is Mr. Ren." Something moved across his face that he wasn't fast enough to hide, and it was the specific flinch of a person hearing a family name spoken by a stranger in a place where that name should not exist. "Where did you get that name?" "Does it matter?" "It matters enormously," Ren Xingzhao said, and for the first time since I'd seen him on the ridge, he sounded 15. "There are 4 families in the world that matter, and one of them is called Tang, and the man you just named is not somebody a boy in a border valley has heard of, so either you're guessing or... He didn't finish it. He looked at me for a long moment with a pair of eyes that could read another man's combat strength off him like a price tag, and I watched him get a number back that he didn't believe, and then check it, and then decide not to mention it. "Find him," I said. "That's the whole payment." Which was interesting, because Mr. Ren was the last of my 9 personal disciples and he'd had a ghost eye too. 100 years, I thought. And that's what one of mine has come to. A boy in a border valley wearing an assassin's colors. I wonder how many of the other 8 are still breathing. They're moving after the tournament, he said. The night of it. City Lord's residence first, then your family. That's the schedule. Then I'll be at the tournament. I took the news to the City Lord's residence where Lin Hua Yue had apparently spent the last 3 days getting stronger out of spite, 2nd level of Primal Spirit. She was now casually stronger than most of the men guarding her father's gate, and she came across the courtyard at me like a thrown spear. Where have you been? Home, sitting quietly. Liar, I went to your estate 100 times. 100. A few times. She got about half a shade pinker. It's on the way. On the way to what? Shut up. You missed me. I will set you on fire. Then I laid it out for her father, and the room stopped being fun. Moyang City could field about 20 Primal Spirit cultivators if you counted everyone in 3 families and stretched the definition. The Bloodbat sect were bringing 40 and 1 myriad manifestation 5th level. Ambush wouldn't fix that. Terrain wouldn't fix that. Numbers wouldn't fix that. There's one thing that fixes it, I said. How fast can you get me herbs? Linwei looked at me the way you look at a child announcing he's going to fly. Burst Yuan pill, 2nd rank. It'll put you up 2 full levels for 1 night. I watched him fail to breathe. You'd be myriad manifestation 4th, maybe 5th. That's an alchemist's pill. Yes. You're an alchemist. Alchemists are 1 in a million, I agreed. The entry cost is brutal, the failure rate is worse, and the only thing that actually matters is mental energy. Mine is 40, which puts me at 4th rank. I did not mention that in my last life I had been a 9th rank pill emperor, and that 4th rank felt like being a general demoted to sweeping the yard. Now, herbs, write this down. He didn't write it down, he went himself. In 1 day and 1 night, the city lord of Moyang personally scoured his own city and came back with 17 golden sungrass, 9 flaming holly, 11 crimson serpent flower, 11 cracked-mouthed crow, 13 heavenly essence lotus, and 13 fire cores. A burst yuan pill is not a difficult formula. That's the first thing worth saying about it. In my last life, I would have handed it to a 4th-year student as a warm-up. What makes it rare is the fire. It wants 6 ingredients held at 6 different temperatures inside the same flame for a quarter of an hour. The only method anybody in the small Sumeru world has ever found is to run 6 separate small fires at once. Nobody below the 4th rank can do that, which is why a 3rd-rank empire had never seen one. I could do it with my palm. Then he stood in the doorway and watched me put every single ingredient into the cauldron at once. You can't. He actually reached for my arm. 1 pill at a time. Everyone does 1 at a time. I know. Then why? Because I don't have enough yuan power to do 9 runs, I said, and we have 1 night. 9 heavens fire separation technique. Flame straight off the palm, no external fire, no furnace. 1 of 3 techniques I'd carried out of my last life and the only one I could use at full quality in this body. Halfway through, my hands started shaking and the flames started wandering, and I could feel the whole batch about 4 seconds from becoming very expensive soot. So I put star power into it. The pills came out at nearly 3rd rank instead of 2nd, 9 of them, 5 to Lin Wei, 4 to me, of which 3 went straight to Lei Yuanji and our 2 strongest elders. There's a cost, I told him. After the night ends, a month of weakness, real weakness, you'll be a paper lantern. After tonight there might not be a month, Lin Wei said, and swallowed them. Meanwhile, in the Li Shan family hall, Cheng Li Muqing was sitting in the head chair turning a spatial ring over in his fingers, and Duan Yongjian had come out of sealed cultivation at the 5th level of Primal Spirit with a face like a closed fist. Cheng Li Muqing took 2 things out of the ring and set them on the table in front of him. Gifts, he said, for tomorrow. The Moyang City New Martial Arts Tournament runs once every 3 years, and it decides the ranking of the city's families for the next 3. Every seat was full, every roof was full. Li Shan Wuli had given up pretending and was sitting in the front row of the stands with his chin up. Who wins this year, City Lord? He said, loud enough for 4 rows. The same person who won 3 years ago, Lin Wei said. Lei Zhen. The heads of the Ma and Yang families laughed on cue, the way men laugh when they've already picked a side and are hoping it's noticed. My first opponent was Ma Yan, 20 years old, 8th level of Essence Meridian, and he came onto the stage with his hands behind his back. I'll give you 3 free moves, he announced. After that, I hit him. He landed on his back at the edge of the stage with his mouth open. I didn't need 3, I said. I needed 1, yours. It went like that for a while, and it was almost pleasant. Ma Yan sat on the boards afterward doing the arithmetic out loud, badly, and his family head sat down very hard in the stands. The Ma family had come into that arena expecting to finish third and leave with a better trading position, and their best entrant had lasted one exchange against a boy everyone in the city had spent 3 years describing as furniture. I took 2 more matches. I lost about 90 seconds to both of them combined. And each time I came off the stage, Li Shenwuli's expression got a little further from where it had started, and Lin Wei's got closer to enjoyment, and up in the third row of the Li Shan family's block, a man I had never seen before sat with his hands folded and watched me instead of the fights. I didn't know him then. That was Cheng Li Muqing. He had come down from the 36th altar to watch a border tournament in person, which is not a thing an altar master does, and he had come specifically to see whether the story about the man in black was worth an operation. He decided it was. Lin Huayue took her own bracket apart in the meantime, and I want it noted that she did it faster than I did mine. 2 months earlier, she had been stuck at the 9th level of Essence Meridian with a seal cooking her from the inside. That morning she went through 4 opponents without letting a single one of them finish a technique, and by the third one, the crowd had stopped cheering and started making a different noise, the low one people make when they're watching something they don't have a category for. "That's the city lord's daughter," somebody behind me said. "She was stuck for 2 years." "She was not stuck," I said. Then Duan Yongjian came up against a boy called Nie Muqing. Nie Muqing was 19, 7th level of Essence Meridian, one of ours. He had been eating in the same hall as me for 3 years, and I do not believe we had ever spoken directly, which is a thing I have thought about more than once since. He came onto the stage nervous, and he bowed, and he set himself in a decent guard. Duan Yongjian did not look at him. Not once. Not during the bow, not during the first exchange, not when the boy actually landed a strike on his forearm and the knee block cheered. He fought a 19-year-old with his face turned 45 degrees away, watching me in the stands for the entire 2 minutes, and when he finally set himself to finish it, he said it loudly enough for the whole arena to hear. "Lei Zhen, watch," and he put his hand through the boy's chest. The arena made a sound, not a scream, a kind of collective inhale that doesn't come back out. Somewhere on our side of the stands, an old woman started saying a name over and over. I sat still for a count of 3. Because there is a thing that happens to a commander when somebody kills one of his people in front of him to make him move, and the thing that happens is that he becomes extremely easy to steer, and Duan Yongjian had just spent a human being trying to buy that. He was going to get exactly none of it. I stood up and withdrew the entire Ni family from the tournament, every one of them. The elders went white. 3 of our young cultivators had been in the running for real placements. I didn't care. "No more of ours in the ring," I said. "The Ni family only needs 1 entry, and it's me." Duan Yongjian pulled his own people out to match, which told me he'd wanted exactly this, and I let him have it because we both wanted the same thing, and only one of us was going to enjoy getting it. In the semi-final, I was drawn against Lin Huayue. She forfeited before she came up the steps. The crowd booed. Her father put a hand over his eyes. She stood at the bottom of the stairs with her arms folded and looked up at me, and she was furious, and it wasn't at me. "Don't waste anything on me," she said. "Lei Zhen, beat Duan Yongjian." "Don't worry," I said. "He's going to die." He came up onto the stage smiling, which was a mistake, because it meant he thought he understood the situation. I opened with War God Emperor Fist, 30,000 Jin of force out of a 2nd level Primal Spirit cultivator, when the standard for a 5th level is 10. He went off his feet and across the stage and hit the barrier, and got up. I stopped. That should have folded him. He tore his outer robe open, and there was black scale armor underneath, glinting, 2nd rank, gift number 1. "Fighting in armor!" Lin Huayue was on her feet, screaming it. "Shameless!" "It is shameless," I agreed. "It's also not against the rules, and it doesn't change anything." He tried to detonate his own blood key then, mutual destruction, the classic move of a man who has run out of ideas but not out of hate, and I simply stepped back off the range. "If you want to die," I said, "find your own company." So he swallowed gift number 2. I recognized it going down, because I'd made 9 of them the day before. A burst UN pill, 2 levels, instantly, 5th to 7th. And then, because 7th apparently still wasn't enough, he started burning his own blood chi on top of it, and the stage turned into a sea of fire from edge to edge. I let Sirius out. A wolf came up out of the boards around me, enormous, star-colored, and stood over me with its head down, and the fire went around it and did not come in. "Duan Yongjian," I said from inside the wolf. "Let's see how much blood you've actually got." And then I waited. That's the part nobody writes down, and it's the only part that ever actually matters. I stood inside a firestorm and did nothing at all. Not because I was cornered, because a man burning his own blood chi is a man spending capital he cannot re-earn, and every second I did not attack was a second he had to spend more of it to keep the pressure on, and the one thing he could not do, the one thing his entire temperament made impossible, was stop. The crowd thought I was trapped. Lin Huayue was shouting something from the rail. Lei Wenji had gone very quiet in a way I recognized from the council hall. I counted 41 seconds. I watched his aura climb and hold and climb again and hold longer and then go past the top of its own arc without him noticing, the way a man running downhill doesn't notice the moment his leg stopped being the reason he's moving, and at the exact moment it sagged, the wolf moved. He came off the stage and he was dead before he landed, and the fire went out all at once across the whole arena, and 400 people were sitting in sudden cold silence looking at a boy standing in the middle of a scorched platform who had not, from their point of view, done anything at all. Promise settled. Li Shanwuli came out of the stands at me directly in front of the entire city, and Lin Wei and Lei Yuanji took him out of the air like two men catching a thrown chair. They'd been waiting for it. They'd been waiting for it the whole afternoon. You broke the rules of the tournament in the open, Lin Wei said, standing over him. I'm the city lord. I'm not scenery. And Li Shanwuli, this is the part I remember. Li Shanwuli bowed. He went down and put his forehead toward the boards and begged pardon, said he was mad with grief, said he'd shamed himself. Nobody killed him. Not because of the bow, because Lin Wei and I had already agreed that if the Li Shan family head died at noon, the Bloodbat sect would come at 1 o'clock instead of at midnight, and we needed those hours. Inside his own head, on his knees on a public stage, Li Shanwuli was saying, after tonight, all of you will be kneeling. Back in the Li Shan hall, Chengli Muqing threw a teacup at a wall. Chen Zhigang, the thin old man, tried to be careful about it. Altar Master, this boy is strange. Killed a myriad manifestation cultivator in the street. Our presence is already exposed. Let me look into his background before we look into it after, Chengli Muqing said, waving him off, and I understand why. He'd stopped thinking about the operation. He'd started thinking about my martial techniques and who was going to end up owning them, and there was one more thing under that, which I only learned much later, and which I want to put here because it explains the whole shape of what came after. Chengli Muqing had planned to send Duan Yongjin to headquarters because he wanted to keep Ren Xingzhao for himself. He'd been holding that green-eyed boy in his altar the way you hold a fruit you're waiting to ripen, and what he intended to do when the time came was cut the ghost eye out of his head. With Duan Yongjian dead, he had nothing else to send, so he'd have to send Ren Xingzhao, which was, from the first day, the only thing Ren Xingzhao had ever wanted. He wasn't trying to survive the Bloodbat sect. He was trying to get inside it, because 8 years ago, they had taken a person and turned that person into one of their killers, and he had spent his whole life since then walking toward the front door of the organization that did it. Ren Qiuyue, wherever you are, whatever they've made of you, I'll find you. At the City Lord's War Council that night, the heads of the Ma and Yang families proposed surrender. Lin Wei listened to the whole proposal. Then he raised one hand and put a bolt of fire through Sun Jianyan's head. Anyone else, he said, care to raise the subject? Nobody did, and I sat there and thought, they're idiots, but not for the reason they think. Anyone in this city can surrender. The City Lord can't. He's the first man they kill in the morning. Asking him to surrender is just asking him to die politely. Then I took the map. We had 18 people worth counting. The residents had 4 approach corridors. I gave 3 of them everything we had and left the 4th wide open, which took 10 minutes of argument. You want to let them in. I want to let some of them in, I said. The first ones through will be the eager ones. Once they're in the courtyard, the corridor closes behind them, and the eager ones are alone in a box with all of us. The rest of them are outside a wall wondering what's happening. And the rest of us? Your job is not to fight. Your job is to be slow. Hit them and give ground. Hit them and give ground. Do not be brave. Bravery here costs me people and buys me nothing. I laid it out in about a quarter of an hour, and it was the least difficult thing I did all week, because in my last life, I had moved armies of the heavens across territory that made this look like a game board. Lin Huayue wanted a position on the wall. Her father said absolutely not in the loud voice. Put her with me, I said. I'll keep her alive. That is not reassuring, Lin Wei said. Ren Xingzhao, I said, to an empty corner of the room. You've been standing there long enough. Come out. He stepped out of nothing, and a city lord and his entire war council nearly came out of their chairs. He looked at Lin Huayue, then at me, then he shrugged and walked out. You two look like a married couple, he said on his way past. I leaned over and said in her ear, I've been thinking the same thing, and then bit her earlobe. You, anyway. That's how the bloodiest night in the history of Moyang City started, with a war god's tactical plan, a city lord's murdered ally cooling on the floor, and a woman chasing me around a table. Then the storm came in. It started at moonrise. Lightning first, no thunder, the sky going white in sheets. Then the rain came down like the heavens had dropped the whole bucket at once, and it did not let up all night. Tonight's going to be a bloody one, Yuanji said, next to me. I put Lin Huayue on the inner court roof with a clear line down 2 of the 4 corridors and told her the only instruction that mattered. You don't come down. Whatever you see, whatever it sounds like, you don't come down off that roof. And if you're losing, especially then, that's the stupidest, Hua Yue. I looked up at her. The single most useful thing you can be tonight is a person nobody has accounted for. The moment you jump down into that yard, you become one more body in the count, and they have more bodies than we do. Stay where you are and stay unspent, and when I need you, it will be for exactly one thing, and it will decide the night. She thought about it and then nodded, which surprised me, and then said, "What's the one thing?" "I don't know yet, that's rather the point." They hit the wall in the dark, and the first thing that happened was the corridor plan working exactly as designed, which is a rare and beautiful thing. 20 of them came in through the open route at a run, chasing what they thought was a broken flank. The gate came down behind them, and then Lei Yuanji let his primal spirit out. It was a ghost-headed blade, 40 meters of it, and it was solid. That's the difference nobody explains properly. At Yuanling, your spirit is a phantom. At myriad manifestation, it becomes real. It has weight. It has edge. It exists in the world instead of hovering next to it. The men in that courtyard had time to understand that distinction, and not much time after. I broke a man's neck in front of the rest of them with my bare hands in the rain, and then stood there and asked who was next. They backed up. 40 trained killers backed away from a 16-year-old, and it wasn't because I was stronger than them. 2 of them were stronger than me. It was because they had just watched me do something with my hands that they only did with weapons, and they had made the correct assessment, which was that I was worse than they were. Then a 9th-level primal spirit hit me with a poison wolf fist and put me on my back in 6 inches of water, which restored everyone's confidence considerably. By the time the first phase burned out, there were 24 bodies at the inner gate. We had about 10 left standing. They had about 20. That's when everyone on our side swallowed the pills. Lin Wei went to Myriad Manifestation 5th. Yuanji went to 3rd. 2 of our 9th-level primal spirit elders touched Myriad Manifestation for the first time in their lives, and one of them stood in the rain with his hands out looking at his own arms like they belonged to someone else. Chengli Muqing's voice came across the courtyard, and for the first time all night it wasn't bored. "You have burst Yuan pills?" And out of the dark and the rain, Li Shanwuli came for me personally. "Lei Zhen," water running off his chin. "I killed your son. You killed mine." "You have that backwards," I said. "You killed my father." "I could kill him 3 years ago," he said. "I can kill you tonight." He was 9th-level primal spirit at the peak, better than 30,000 jin, and his primal spirit was a 3rd-rank one-horned ram, and the first exchange put me back 5 steps with my arms ringing. So I stopped exchanging. Fallen leaf flying swan step. I went around him. I came in from angles that didn't threaten anything, hit places that didn't matter, and left again, and I did that for a while in the pouring rain while he swung at where I'd been. He started shouting. Then he started shouting less coherently. "Going mad?" I said, from behind him. "Good." That's what I was after. Then 7 waves. Here's what I learned that night, and it changed how I fought for the rest of my life. Star souls have elements. 7 waves is water, and it was raining. 7 waves came off the star soul and drank the storm and split again. And by the time they crossed the courtyard, there were 49 of them, and they weren't waves anymore. They were a wall. It went over Li Shanwuli, and it kept going. When it cleared, he was on his knees in 6 inches of standing water. He looked up at me, and his mouth was working, and he got 2 syllables out, and then a third, and he was trying to say a name, the name of the organization he served, the one thing he had that might still have frightened me, and he ran out before the end of it. I know now what the name was. I found out about 8 days later from a green-eyed boy on a ridge, and it changed the next 2 years of my life. He'd had it in his mouth the whole time. I stood over the man who had put an ambush in a mountain pass 3 years earlier and waited for a father to come home, and I did not feel triumphant, and I did not feel clean. I felt like a man who has finally put down something heavy and discovered that his arms still hurt. My father was avenged in a flooded courtyard in the rain by a technique I'd invented 3 days earlier, promise settled, which left Chengli Muqing. He stood alone in a courtyard full of his own people, in the rain, at the 5th level of Myriad Manifestation, and he did the arithmetic and didn't like it, and then he took out a pill I recognized, and I stopped liking it either. Blood death pill. 3rd rank. It does exactly one thing. It burns every drop of blood chi in your body at once and lifts you an entire realm for the length of one attack. Then you die. There's no second half to the deal. It is a man deciding to spend his whole life in a single sentence. He swallowed it, and his iron-blooded bear went from 5 meters to 60, and it filled the courtyard wall to wall. I sent everyone else out. Then I started building the soul-severing heaven seal. That's the 3rd and highest of the War God 3 imprints. Flowing kill human, severing extinction earth, soul-severing heaven. I'd shattered the corpse demon lord with it once. And I knew, standing in that flooded courtyard putting it together, that this body could not survive using it. Not survive as in die, survive as in walk away with meridians. Best case, I'd be crippled again, permanently. In the same week, I'd stopped being crippled. Running never came up. I want to be clear that it wasn't courage. It genuinely never appeared on the list of available options. There's a shape my mind makes, and that isn't in it. Just reborn, I thought, and back on the edge again. What a life. And then somebody flicked a finger. I felt the pressure before I saw anything, the kind of pressure that makes your ears want to lie down. An old man in white was standing on the roof tile above the gate, and he had not been there a second earlier, and he was not soaking wet, and the rain was going around him. He raised one hand and flicked his index finger, the way you'd flick a crumb off a table. Chung Li Mu Ching stopped existing, all 60 meters of him, not knocked down, not defeated. There was a 60-meter iron-blooded bear filling a courtyard and holding the last attack of a man's entire life, and then there was rain falling on wet flagstones and nothing in between them. I had been 4 seconds from using a technique that would have cost me my meridians permanently, and an old man had solved the same problem with a gesture you'd use on a moth. Divine Wheel Realm. Let me lay the ladder out, because from here it starts to matter. Essence Meridian. Yen Ling. Myriad Manifestation. Giant Spirit. True Origin. Divine Wheel. Heavenly Evolution. Heavenly Human. Heavenly Emperor. 9 rungs. Everything Moyang City had ever seen sat on the 3rd one. The old man was called Lin Kun, and he was an outer disciple of the Mo family, and he was Divine Wheel. An outer disciple, and he wasn't the important one. The important one came down out of the dark behind him and landed without a sound. 20 years old, in white, and the rain went around him too. Only for him it curved wider, like it had been trained. Lin Wen Hao, 3rd young master of the Mo family's main house. True Origin Realm, 9th level. First genius of his generation, and one of the 3 prodigies of Zhumi Spirit Capital. The Mo family is one of the 4 great families of the small Sumeru world, not a sect, not a clan, one of 4 in a world that contains thousands of empires. A first-rank empire has an emperor. The Mo family has opinions about emperors, and Lin Wei, city lord of a 3rd-rank empire's border town, was a branch. 3 generations of branch, 3 generations of hoping. He'd sent word the moment his daughter's spirit woke. 9th rank, and Lin Wen Hao had come in person all the way out here through a storm because he did not believe it. Because Lin Wen Hao himself had awakened 7th rank. They set up the Primal Spirit wheel in the hall. 7th order artifact, and there wasn't another one in this entire empire. You put your energy in and the wheel turns, and the number of rotations is your rank. I looked at Lin Wen Hao for about 2 seconds while they were setting it up, and everything I needed to know was on him like paint. Petty, careful, absolutely could not stand being second at anything. If that wheel turned 9 times, they would take her back to the main house as a treasure, and the main house would spend the next decade eating her alive. So when Lin Huayue put her hand on it, I put a very small amount of my own energy into her stream. The wheel turned 7 times. Then it made half of an 8th turn and stopped. Lin Wei's head snapped around at me, and I gave him the blankest face in the world. Lin Kun was delighted. 7.5 in a branch family in a border town was a miracle by any measure, and Lin Wen Hao let out a breath he'd been holding since he landed and said, 7, well, that's respectable. Later, when nobody was looking, I put enough energy into her to hold that reading for a month, so it would give the same answer when they tested her again at home. She found me at the gate at dawn. She had a traveling cloak on, and she hadn't put the hood up, and her hair was flat to her head in the rain, and she stopped about a meter away and shouted it at me in front of her father, Lin Kun, Lin Wen Hao, 4 guards, and a divine wheel cultivator. I want to stay with Lei Zhen. Everyone in that courtyard found something else to look at. Lei Zhen. Her voice cracked in the middle of it, and she said it anyway. I love you. I said, Hua Yue. So do I. And then, because I was 16 and had been dead once and had absolutely nothing left to be careful with, I promise you, in this life, you'll be my woman. That's a very large promise from a very small cultivator, Lin Kun observed. What Lei Jin says happens, I said, even if the sky falls in. I kissed her in the rain in front of her entire family, which I recommend, and then I let go of her, which I do not. There was a very long silence in that courtyard afterward. Lin Wei had covered his eyes with one hand. A guard had turned around entirely. You have to go. I don't. You do. I'm too weak to protect you. Today, in this courtyard, I could not stop any of the 4 strongest people standing in it. I made myself say the rest of it plainly. Go with them. Get strong there. I'll come and find you inside 3 years. Lin Kun decided at this point to be helpful. He put his aura on me, gently, the way an adult puts a hand on a child's head to move them out of a doorway, and said, Boy, she is a phoenix of the 9 heavens. You are a small fish in the mud. Let go. I shrugged it off my shoulders and looked up at him. Do you actually know who you're talking to? Enlighten me. I don't take what belongs to others even as a gift, I said. And I don't give up what's mine even under a blade. Lin Wen Hao started warming up his own speech at that point. The Mo family is a height you'll never reach, and a person from that height. 3 years, I said. Jumi Spirit Capital, you and me, to the death, no one behind either of us intervening. The hall went quiet in a new way. I want to explain why I said it, because it wasn't temper, and it wasn't for her. A man like Lin Wenhao does not remember insults. He is far too well fed for that. An insult from a border town evaporates before he reaches the next province. What he does remember is a scheduled appointment, because an appointment is a thing on a calendar, and a thing on a calendar is a thing his household staff will keep reminding him about for 3 years. I did not need him angry. I needed him unable to forget me. Between us, Lin Wenhao said, there are 3 great realms. A second-level primal spirit does not challenge a true origin ninth. It isn't arrogance. It's a category error. Fair enough. So I raised one hand, spread my fingers, and used 9 heavens fire separation on all 5 at once. 5 separate flames, 5 separate controls, 5 small dragons of fire going up into a storm that should have killed every one of them and didn't. Lin Kun's face came apart. Because that isn't strength, that's control, and that degree of control is not available below the 3rd rank of alchemy, and everyone in that room who mattered knew it. If a second-level cultivator has no right to challenge him, I said, does a 4th-rank alchemist? Lin Kun was in front of me almost instantly. Young friend, I'm not your friend, I said. I'm a small fish, rotting in the mud. He took it. He stood there and took it. Because a 4th-rank alchemist in a place like this is worth more than a city, and he had already spent his one chance at politeness. Lin Wenhao accepted the challenge. 3 years, Jumi Spirit Capital, to the death. Lin Wei walked me to the gate afterward, which was not necessary, and took him about 8 minutes. She'll be tested again at the main house, he said, within the month. It'll read the same. You're certain? I put enough in her to hold it for 6 weeks. After that, she'll have grown past the question on her own. I stopped at the arch. City Lord. One piece of advice, and then I'm gone. Go on. When she comes back to you in a few years, and she is very strong and very angry about something, and she will be, do not tell her the wheel was rigged. I looked at him. Tell her you were there and you let it happen. She'll forgive that. She will never forgive being managed. He thought about it for a long moment. You're 16, he said. I keep hearing that. Then a 4-winged griffin came down over the residence. 5th rank, 100 meters across, and the pressure off its wings put half the tiles off the roofs, and the entire Mo branch of Moyang City went up onto it and left. I'll be waiting for you, she called down. In Sumi Spirit Capital. Ren Xingjiao came out of a shadow near the wall as the sound faded and picked something up off the flooded ground. A black token, bat-shaped. It had come off Chung Li Mu Qing when Lin Kun flicked him out of existence. That's how you get into headquarters, he said. Only that, there's no other way in, and there's no forging it. He turned it over twice in the rain and then put it inside his shirt, and I understood in that moment that he had not picked it up as a trophy. You're going to use it. Yes. They'll take you apart. You said it yourself. Fewer than 1 in 100 survives the training. 1 in 100 is a number, Ren Xingjiao said. I've been looking for 8 years. A number is better than 8 years. Then he sat down on the wet steps and explained the world to me, since I clearly hadn't asked anyone. The small Sumeru world holds thousands of empires in 3 ranks. Blue Cloud Empire, where we were standing, is 3rd rank, the bottom. There are 40 first-rank empires, and half of them belong to the 4 great families. The Mo family is one of the 4. The Tang family leads all 4, and Mr. Ren, the man I'd asked him to find, was the head of the Tang family. 100 years, I thought again, and my youngest disciple is still stuck down here in the small Sumeru world. As his teacher, I find that embarrassing. See you in Blue Cloud City, he said. Blood Bat Sect, I said, to nobody, watching him go. I'm going to take you apart. 50 days later, the ice serpent egg finally hatched. I want to describe this properly. I had been carrying that egg around for nearly 2 months. I had paid 8 silver for it. I had explained to a 9-year-old on 3 separate occasions that yes, it was still an egg, and yes, it would hatch eventually, and no, shouting at it would not accelerate the process. It cracked open in the middle of the afternoon, and what came out was not a snake. It was round. It was black and white. It was the size of a baby's fist. It was covered in fur, and it immediately fell asleep. A Pixiu. I sat down on the floor. Pixiu are extinct. They have been extinct for so long that in my last life they were a subject for scholars and liars. They are direct kin to the divine dragon, and a fully grown one is comparable to a heavenly emperor, and their second name is Iron Eater because they will chew through bamboo, stone, and metal without changing expression. In another world entirely, I happen to know, this animal has a much more famous name, Giant Panda. The mutation was my fault. The egg had been soaking in star power in my storage pouch for 2 months, which is why it came out with 2 elements. Ice and starlight, instead of 1. Ling Mei named it Little Guai. It slept through the naming. I spent the rest of that month in the coffin, which is to say I spent 10 months in it. Third level of Primal Spirit. 12 stars. 2 more star souls. Blood Feather Heavenly Fiend and 8 Desolations Dragon Chant. 10 days of carving each. Moyang City settled. The Mo family sent a new branch to run the place. The Ni and Mo families divided the Lishan family's business between them, which took about 4 days and generated more paperwork than the entire war, and then I left. I got about 40 meters down the road before I heard the running. Ling Mei came around the corner with a bundle on a stick over her shoulder, an actual bundle on an actual stick. Meyer is coming with you, she announced. Behind her, the entire front gate of the Ni family estate was laughing. Meyer, if anybody bullies you, she said with total gravity, Meyer will protect you. I looked at her for a while. In 6 weeks, she'd gone from the 4th level of Essence Meridian to the 6th, with no resources, no teacher, and no supervision, purely because nobody had told her that wasn't normal. Lei Yuanji came to the gate to see us off and stood there for a while without saying anything, which for him was a speech. Head of the family. Great elder. I have been in this house 78 years, he said. I watched your grandfather run it, and your father, and for 3 years I watched a steward run it while I told myself there was nothing to be done. He looked at the road. I would like to say something to you about that, and I find I can't. Then don't. The city's ours now. The Lishan holdings are split. The Mo family have sent a new branch, and there hasn't been a killing in the market district in 6 weeks. He cleared his throat. It's a small city, but it works. I thought you should hear it from someone before you left. Keep it working, I said. I'll be back for it. Will you? I thought about that honestly, which he deserved. Eventually, I said. Bring the panda, I said to my sister, and we went. The road to Blue Cloud Imperial City is 2,000 li, and I would like to state for the record that I did not enjoy all of it. Brother Lei Zhen, why is little Guai asleep? Because he's a baby. Do all little Guais sleep? I've met one little Guai. When I'm a little Guai, will I sleep all day? You are not going to be a little Guai. Why not? For about 2 hours around midday, I sincerely considered whether being a panda was, in fact, the superior life outcome. Eventually, I flagged down a carriage on the Imperial Road, 4 dragon horses, lacquer, curtains, a big one. I wanted to buy passage. The driver whipped the horses straight at us. I stopped them with a flash of green light into their eyes. Beast taming, 8th rank, another skill from a life I keep not getting to use properly, and all 4 animals stopped dead in the road, and the driver, a man named Zhou Kai Li, went off the box and into the dirt face first. The curtain came open. 15 or 16, 5th level of Primal Spirit, silk worth more than my family's monthly income. Zhou Zhenkun, 3rd young master of the Qin family of the imperial capital. His father commanded the imperial guard. His aunt was the empress. He looked at Ling Mei for a long moment and then said, "That one, I'll take that one." Tribute for the road. Ling Mei moved half a step behind my leg. Say that again. The girl. He was already bored. The Qin family is expanding its household staff. Hand her over and you'll be paid better than you're worth. The driver got up off the ground, spitting mud, and joined in enthusiastically. Hand your sister to the young master and you'll be rich for life. I hit him in the mouth. His teeth left in a spray and he sat down and stopped participating. Then I walked to the carriage and put 2 fingers into Zhou Kun's dantian and cut every meridian he had. He screamed. It went on a while. You won't be taking anything from anyone again, I said. And then a hand came out of the carriage and hit me. There had been nothing in that carriage. I want to be very clear about that, because it is the only time in this entire life that my own senses handed me a wrong answer and I nearly paid full price for it. I had swept it on the way in, habit, not caution, and it had come back with 1 passenger, 2 servants, and a great deal of luggage. I went 6 meters backwards through the road's surface and came up on my hands with blood coming out of my mouth and my ribs telling me several urgent things at once. An old man stepped down out of the carriage and I hadn't sensed him. Not sensing him was the part that frightened me. Wu Xuanping, myriad manifestation 3rd level, which was survivable. And a 4th rank alchemist, which meant mental energy above 40, which was why my 40 had slid right off him like a hand off glass. He looked at me sitting in the road, alive, and he was insulted by it. You took a full palm strike, he said, and you're breathing. He came closer. That's a high-grade martial technique keeping you together, very high. Boy, give me your technique, and I'll take you as a personal disciple. I laughed. It hurt. Old dog, I said. In my last life, I had 9 personal disciples. The weakest of the 3 alchemists among them was 8th rank. You wouldn't have made it into my registered students. He didn't understand a word of it, which was the only enjoyable part of the exchange, and then he stopped talking and picked Lei Ling Mei up by the throat. The technique, he said. Now. I was 6 meters away, on the ground, with 2 broken things in my chest, and a round black and white shape came out of my collar like a thrown rock. Little Guai, 5 days old, the size of a fist, bit through Wu Xuanping's wrist. Iron Eater. A human arm doesn't register as an obstacle. The old man's scream went up an octave, and then the arm he'd raised to swat the panda off went white and stopped moving because there was ice climbing it from the wrist to the elbow. A 5-day-old cub had just put out the power of a third-rank spirit beast. I got Ling Mei, got the panda, and got out. Behind me, I could hear Wu Xuanping hitting Zhou Jinkun across the face and telling him to get on the box and drive, since the driver was in no condition and the old man wasn't going to. Both of them were going to the same city I was. We got picked up 2 hours later by a carriage that stopped without being asked to, which was a novel experience. There was a girl in it, 13 or 14, who took one look at Ling Mei's face and moved over, Shenjing Xuan. And her guardian, a man of about 45 called Shen Muqing, who I read at a glance and then read again because it didn't make sense. 10,000 manifestations, first level, combat strength somewhere around a 5th level primal spirit. That's not a small gap. That's a man carrying a full realm of rank around like a coat he can't put on. They were going to Blue Cloud City for the Lishan Yun Academy entrance examination in 3 days. Lishan Yun is the first martial academy of the empire, and people talk about it the way they talk about holy ground. And by the time we reached the outer gates, there were thousands of carriages stacked up in the approach, and nothing was moving in any direction. Brother Lei Zhen is a 4th-rank alchemist, Ling Mei announced to the carriage, apropos of nothing at all. Even our great elder isn't his match. She's 9, I said. I'm 9.5. Shen Muqing was polite about it, which was decent of him. So I reached over and put 2 fingers on his wrist for 4 seconds, and then I told him what was wrong with him. Your meridians have been silted up for about 25 years, I said. Not damaged, blocked. That's why your rank and your strength don't match. You're pushing a river through a pipe somebody packed with clay. The carriage got very quiet. He was on one knee on the floor of a moving vehicle before I could stop him. Cure it, he said, and I'll serve you for 10 years. Get up. 10 years, I'm not negotiating. So I heard the story, and it was uglier than the diagnosis. 25 years ago, Shen Muqing had been the rookie king of Lishan Yun Academy and the best student in the outer court. He was, by his own admission, too direct, the kind of man who says the true thing in a room where everyone has agreed not to, and a fellow student named Si Longbo had arranged for him to be broken. Xi Longbo was now vice president of the academy. We couldn't get through the front gates, so we went over Lishan Yun Mountain instead, which is academy land, patrolled by 9th level primal spirit cultivators and stocked with 2nd and 3rd rank spirit beasts, and which is exactly the sort of route that seems clever until you're standing in a ravine watching a 5-meter saber-toothed black leopard decide which of you looks most portable. It wasn't looking at us. It was looking at a fat boy. He was alone in the middle of the ravine floor, an academy student in clothes worth more than the carriage we'd arrived in, and about 40 meters behind him, I could see the last of his entourage disappearing over a ridge at a very respectable speed. 6 of them. I counted, because I was going to want the number later. He didn't run. He looked at the leopard, and then at the ridge his friends had gone over, and then at the leopard again, and he bent down and picked up a rock about the size of a loaf. If I'm dying anyway, he said out loud, to a 5-meter 2nd-rank spirit beast, I'd rather do it standing up than lying down, and he set his feet. I want to say something about that because it turned out to matter enormously. He was at the 1st level of Primal Spirit. He had been at the 1st level of Primal Spirit for 5 years. Every single person he knew, including his father's business partners, including the boys who had just run away, had spent those 5 years explaining to him in increasingly creative ways that he was the useless son of a great house. And when it came to it, he did not beg, and he did not run, and he picked up a rock. I got there about a second before the claw did. I took him out from under it by the collar and took 3 furrows across my own forearm doing it, deep ones, because I'd had to reach past the paw instead of around it. Then I put 1 finger through the leopard's skull, and it stopped being a problem because it was a 2nd-rank spirit beast and I had somewhere to be. The fat boy sat down in the dirt. Then he offered me 10,000 gold for the beast core. A 2nd-rank core is worth under 100. That's not what it's worth. I know exactly what it's worth, he said. That's what your arm's worth. He stuck out a hand. Cheng Yuanjian, from this day I'm your younger brother, I'm not asking. His entourage came back over the ridge about then, full of explanations. Cheng Yuanjian stood up and destroyed them. You eat my pills every day, he said. Every day, and the first time it costs you anything you're over that hill faster than rabbits. Get out of my sight before I remember your names. He was, it turned out, the only son of the richest man in the imperial capital. We came down off the mountain into the plaza in front of the academy and walked directly into the Qin family, which I want to note is the sort of luck I have consistently. Zhou Jinkun was already in the city, and word had traveled. Since the road, he'd become the academy's favorite joke, the young master who went out on the road with 2 primal spirit levels and came back with none of them. He saw me and started screaming immediately. Him! That's him. He did this to me. Kill him. Brother, kill him. The brother turned around. Zhou Bingchen, 20, 10,000 manifestations, first level. Inner court student, which in Li Shan terms means something. Outer court is where everyone starts. Inner court begins at myriad manifestation, and the elite court begins at the 5th level of it. Before he could move, one of his hangers-on volunteered, a He Yun Ting, 8th level primal spirit, keen to be seen. I broke his fist with a normal punch. Not a technique, not a star soul. 12 stars, 30,000 jin, and a closed hand. The plaza noticed. Lei Zhen isn't my man, Cheng Yuanjian announced to the general public in a voice pitched to carry. I'm his man. And then, because he was incapable of leaving anything alone, honestly, whatever he did to young Master Qin was an improvement. He stopped bothering the junior students, and he started singing tenor. I want to record that this is when Zhou Bingchen actually drew. His primal spirit came out, and I stopped enjoying the afternoon. Tiger Fang Fierce Sword, a weapon spirit, the rare kind, and mutated on top of it, nominally 4th rank, functionally 5th. It went out from him and split a boulder 100 meters away that he wasn't even aiming at. That was the first time in this entire life that I felt genuinely threatened. Not Wu Xuanping, not the man in black outside my gate. This. Here is what a mutated weapon spirit does that an ordinary one doesn't. An ordinary 4th rank spirit gives you a 4th rank spirit's reach and a 4th rank spirit's weight. A mutated one gives you both of those and then adds something the owner didn't ask for and can't fully control, and the problem for the man standing opposite is that he can't tell in advance which of the 3 it's going to be. Zhou Bingchen's mutation was speed. The blade came off his shoulder at an angle that had no wind-up in it at all, and I got Sword 17's first form up out of pure old habit, and it still opened my shoulder to the bone. The plaza screamed. I came back inside the arc while he was still finishing it. You cannot beat a sword like that at range, and every second you spend trying is a second you're paying for, and got the Juizhenjian's sword up under his arm, and put half a foot of broken blade into the meat there. Then we came apart and stood 4 meters away from each other, bleeding on the flagstones. He looked at his own side, then at me. You're at the 4th level, he said. Of primal spirit. That's right. That's not possible. It's extremely possible. It's just annoying. Because I could not close the gap. The gap was an entire realm, and an entire realm is not a thing talent covers. He had more yuan power than me by a factor I didn't want to calculate. He had a 4th rank weapon spirit hanging over his shoulder throwing edges at me, and he had 20 years of family instruction behind every movement. And my own primal spirit contributed nothing whatsoever to the exchange. On account of being a coffin having a nap, I couldn't use a star soul either. There was a man standing at the front of the crowd in academy robes. Zilong Wei, myriad manifestation 9th level, a teacher, and he had been watching me since the first exchange with an expression I did not care for at all, and he was not stepping in. Cheng Yuanjian had vanished, which I noted and set aside. So I used 8 Desolation's dragon chant. A dragon's head came up out of the ground under me, 6 meters of it, starlight and shadow, jaw wide, and Zhou Bingchen's overlord's ultimate strike came down into it and cracked the plaza into a dozen craters and did not get through. Half the crowd concluded on the spot that the dragon was my primal spirit and that I was hiding a 9th level cultivation. Who are you? Zhou Bingchen said. You're not tall enough to know. The dragon went in for the finish, and at the last moment, Zilong Wei finally moved and knocked Zhou Bingchen out from under it. There it is, I said. Then he saw Shenmu Qing standing at the edge of the plaza, and he started laughing, and it was the single ugliest sound of my new life. Well, he said, look what walked back onto academy ground. It's the trash we threw out. Shenmu Qing didn't move. 25 years, Zilong Wei said, walking over. 25 years, and you're still at the 1st level of 10,000 manifestations. What right does a man like you have to blame anybody for anything? And then, because he couldn't help himself, you've never even found out who ordered it, have you? Not me, not my brother. We were the hands. He leaned in. It's a shame. You'll die not tall enough to know that either. Then he turned to me, and his face went businesslike. And you're too sharp. You're the kind that cuts the hand. He raised an arm. Better to. Something hit him in the air and took him 30 meters sideways. The man who done it landed between us. Older, broad, giant spirit realm, and behind him, sprinting, purple, wheezing, came Cheng Yuanjian, who had not run away at all. He had gone and gotten the other vice president. These people are my friends, Wei Han said. That's the whole conversation. Then he saw Shenmu Qing. I watched a giant spirit realm cultivator's face fall apart in a public plaza. They'd been sworn brothers 25 years ago before the setup. Wei Han had been looking for him ever since. On his way out, he stopped by me. You've got real talent, he said. So take one piece of advice. Don't go picking fights with the wrong people. It's not them you'll damage. Understood. You're not going to take it, are you? No. That night we ate at the first grade residence, which is the finest restaurant in the imperial capital and the symbol of the Yang family, and the meal cost 100,000 gold. For scale, the entire Ni family's annual income was under 10,000. Cheng Ren Guang, the father, turned out to be a large, comfortable, endlessly cheerful man who put food in front of you until you gave up. He installed Shen Mu Qing and Shen Jing Xuan in the Yang family estate without being asked. Cheng Yuanjian spent the entire dinner failing, catastrophically, to be subtle about Shen Jingxuan, who noticed on the first course and let him keep going out of scientific interest. I broke through to the 4th level of Primal Spirit that night and immediately woke 4 stars at once, 16. And when I looked at the star origin stone afterward, the 16 lit stars weren't scattered. They were connected, a single arc of light running across the surface of the pillar, and it very obviously did not stop there. It was one small section of something enormous, a star totem, and there was spirit array energy running inside it. I sat there in the dark inside my own 10th meridian, looking at one arc of a diagram I couldn't see the edges of, and I thought, whatever this whole picture turns out to be, when it finishes, it will not be a technique, it'll be a weapon that breaks worlds. The next morning, I took Ling Mei to the Alchemist Guild because she'd never seen one and because I wanted to buy about 40 things. The guild building in Blue Cloud City is a sphere of luminous glass, which is a very expensive way of saying it looks like a gigantic pill. I stood in front of it for a moment. In my last life, I had been one of the 7 great elders of the Alchemist Guild of the Heavens, and there was not a demon emperor in the celestial realm who would touch its doors. Then Ling Mei pressed her face to a display case and said, "What's that beard?" I looked. And I said, out loud, in a crowded hall, "That's a purple dragon beard," which is a 7th rank herb, and which was sitting in a display case in a 3rd rank empire labeled and priced as serpent root. The hall went quiet in the way halls do when someone has said something either brilliant or fatal. A young man came through the crowd, and the crowd got out of the way, including 2 giant spirit realm cultivators, 20 years old, a badge with 3 gold marks on it, Zhang Yifeng, 3rd rank alchemist, the first genius of the empire. "That," he said, "is serpent root. I have studied herbs since I could read. There is no such thing as a purple dragon beard." He looked at Ling Mei and then at my clothes and made a decision about both. "You're a fantasist. Leave the guild. Care to bet?" The hall made a noise. "If I'm right," I said, "you sell it to me at the price of serpent root. A 7th rank herb for the price of a 2nd rank one. And if you're wrong, name it." "Your eyes," Zhang Yifeng said. "You'll leave me your eyes." "Done." I walked to the case. "Ordinary serpent root matures at 100 years and then stops," I said. "That's what the books say, and the books are correct, as far as they go. What they don't say is what happens if it grows in permafrost, or beside a volcano, somewhere the temperature never lets it complete the cycle. Then it doesn't stop. It keeps going, and after enough centuries, thin purple whiskers grow out from under the tail." I stepped back. "Lift the tail." He didn't want to. He stood there with 300 people watching and his own reputation on the counter, and I watched him do the only interesting thing he had done all afternoon, which was to weigh humiliation against not knowing. He did it anyway, because he was, whatever else, a real alchemist, and a real alchemist cannot leave a question alone once it has been properly put. He lifted the tail. There were whiskers under it. Fine, and purple, and unmistakable, and about 400 years old. The guild hall came apart at the seams. The 2 giant spirit cultivators who had stepped aside for him 5 minutes earlier were now shoving each other for a view of a display case. Somewhere near the back, a man was shouting at a clerk about the pricing policy. A woman in the front row said it was in the window 3 times in a row in a voice that got higher each time. That case had been in the front window of the Alchemist Guild of the Blue Cloud Empire for 11 years. It had been walked past by every alchemist in the empire, several thousand times each, all of whom had glanced at the label. And while 300 people were shouting, I walked up to the first genius of the empire and said, quietly enough that only he heard it, "You've got talent, genuine talent, but you rush, and you think in a narrow line, and you've had nobody above you your entire life to tell you that." I let that land. "Without a teacher, you can already see the ceiling of your life from here." He went white, and then he went red, and then he did what young men with talent and no teacher always do. "Kill him," he said, and about 15 men in black came in off the walls of the guild hall. I didn't move. "Suppressing a demonic flame with Zhuanyin grass," I said, "must be extremely unpleasant." Every one of those 15 men stopped where they stood because their employer had stopped breathing. "Your pupils are contracted. There's a red flush between your brows that comes up and goes down on a cycle you've probably started timing." I looked at him. "The fire's already in your primal spirit. You've got under 10 days before it burns you out from the inside, and you know it, and you haven't told a single person." Nobody knew. That was the point. Nobody in the world knew. A month earlier, the thing living in Zhang Yifeng's body had slipped its leash. It was a doomsday flame, 13th on the list of demonic fires, smelted out of the heart of the lava of the volcano at the end of the world, and he had been holding it down with herbs and stubbornness and telling nobody, because the first genius of the empire cannot be seen to be dying. He went down on both knees on the floor of his own guild. "Teacher," he said, "I was ungrateful. Take me as your disciple." 300 people watched the first genius of the Blue Cloud Empire kneel to a 16-year-old in road clothes. "You're not grown enough to be my disciple," I said. "I'll take you as a registered student." I want to explain the difference because he understood it and thanked me anyway. A personal disciple is a son. A registered student is a servant. The teacher owes him nothing, is not responsible for him, and may cripple him at any time for any reason. 7-leaf cleansing vein grass, heavenly essence lotus, purple ginseng, I said. 3 times a day, that holds it. And to be rid of it? You don't get rid of a doomsday flame. You merge it with your own primal spirit and make it yours. That needs 5th and 6th rank herbs, which you cannot get, and a level of control you don't have. I shrugged. Behave yourself and I'll handle it. Yes, teacher. 2 things. Find out everything about a man called Wu Xuanping. He came back with it inside a day, and it was worse than I'd hoped. Wu Xuanping was from the Fengqin Empire, 2nd rank, and he had been invited to the capital by the Qin family to treat a princess. He was at that moment living in the imperial palace. And the second thing, teacher? 12 silver needles, to my measurements. Tonight. Then I locked myself in a room for 3 days. 3 days without food or sleep, and at the end of it, I had over 100 pills on the table. 10 awakening, 10 blood essence, 10 marrow cleansing. Others. For Shenmu Qing, I made a 9-turn spirit elixir and told him 3 drops a day for 10 days, and that at the end of 10 days, his meridians would show the first sign of movement, and that was when the needles went in. Ling Mei and Shen Jing Xuan ate their way through a shocking quantity of 2nd-rank medicine as though it were confectionery, and little Guai chewed an entire Xuan Yu Hai iron bamboo stalk down to nothing and looked around for another one. 3 days later, 12,000 people stood in the plaza in front of Lishan Yun Academy for the entrance examination. There were 180 places. 120 of them had already been sold to families in the capital before anyone arrived. So, 12,000 candidates under 60 real openings and 1 title on top of it, Rookie King. The Rookie King gets resources several times over what an ordinary entrant gets, and, the part that actually matters, 10 days of personal instruction from the dean. The dean of Lishan Yun Academy was a woman named Bai Su Lian, 20 years old, the only true origin realm cultivator in the entire Blue Cloud Empire, and generally held to be its most beautiful woman, in a tone that suggested people had voted. 20. True origin. That's Lin Wenhao's tier, in a 3rd-rank empire. There were 3 favorites for the title, all 9th-level primal spirit with weapon spirits, Zhou Hongguang, Han Taoyuan, and a boy named Xiao Yan. And Zhou Bingchen, who had apparently spent the night workshopping it, came across the plaza to tell me I was too much of a coward to enter. I'm entering. Then let's make it interesting. He'd been waiting to say this. A wager. If the Yang family's man loses, the Yang family hands over the 1st-grade residence. Cheng Yuanjian made a noise like a stepped-on bellows. And if the Qin family loses, the Golden Thunder armor. That one turned heads, 4th rank, gifted to the Qin family by the late emperor personally. A man at Essence Meridian wearing that armor can survive a giant spirit strike. Done. We'll need a witness, Zhou Bingchen said and looked past me, and the crowd folded open like a curtain. 14, maybe 15. 10,000 manifestations, 1st level, at 15. Robes with too much white in them. Shadow Frost Jai, youngest son of the emperor, the Ice Prince, the only serious rival to the crown prince for the throne. The wager stands, he said. I'll witness it. He walked away, and Cheng Jian, one of Yuan Jian's people, came up behind us and delivered the rest of it in a very small voice. Young master, the Rookie King has already been decided internally. It's him. He's competing personally. Cheng Yuanjian went the color of a fish. Say that again. The Rookie King has been decided, young master, internally. 10 days ago. Cheng Jian was speaking to the ground. The list went to the vice president's office and came back with 1 name on it. He's 15. He's the emperor's son. Because that was the shape of the trap, and it had been the shape of it from the first word. Nobody in that academy would raise a hand against a prince of the blood. The tournament wasn't a tournament, it was a coronation with paperwork, and Zhou Bingchen had bet a building on a fixed race. Without the 1st-grade residence, Yuanjian whispered, we're not the richest family anymore. We're just a rich family. Do you understand what that does to my father? Yuanjian. The Chamber of Commerce will smell it in a week. Yuanjian. I put a hand on his shoulder. Relax. I'm going to be Rookie King. The first test was strength. There was a 10-meter stone stele in the middle of the plaza, and you hit it. 5,000 jin to pass. 1 point per 5,000 after that, and the stele's ceiling was 50,000, which was 10 points, which nobody had ever scored. Presiding over the whole thing personally was Vice President Zilongbo, the man who had broken Shen Mu Qing. Zhou Hongguang went up, Zhou Bing Chen's cousin, 9th level Primal Spirit and Overlord Hammer, and put 30,000 into it, and the plaza made a very satisfying noise. Then it was my turn, and 12,000 people made a point of not looking at me, which is its own kind of attention. I stood in front of that stele for about 8 seconds, which the crowd read as nerves. I was reading the array, because a strength stele does not measure force. Nobody had ever told these people that, and it is written on the thing in array script if you can read array script, and apparently nobody in 200 years of Li Shangyun Academy had bothered. It measures the strongest single point of impact, which means the entire history of that stele, every record, every ranking, every family's carefully coached technique had been built by people spreading a big, beautiful, sweeping strike across the whole surface of a palm and then dividing their own score by about 40 without knowing it. Zhou Hongguang had just put 30,000 into it with an Overlord Hammer. If he had hit it with his thumb, he'd have doubled that. Eastern Emperor finger, 1 finger, everything I had, delivered into a space the size of a coin. There was a sound like a rope snapping. A beam of light went through 10 meters of solid stone, came out the far side, and kept going for another 40 meters before it gave up. The readout climbed and climbed, and then stopped at 50,000 because 50,000 was as high as the numbers went. The plaza did not cheer. 12,000 people made no sound at all. I stepped forward and put my hand flat on the stone. Break. The stele came apart into gravel from the top down, in order, like a wall of sand losing interest, and the noise it made going down lasted about 6 seconds, and nobody spoke over any of it. Zilongbo was on his feet at the examiner's table with his mouth open. Behind him, an assistant was going through the record book at speed and getting more upset with every page. There was no procedure for this. Nobody had written one. The stele was Academy property. It was 2 centuries old. It had a maintenance schedule, and a first-year applicant in road clothes had just turned it into aggregate. In 200 years of Li Shangyun Academy, nobody had ever done that. And up on the platform, Shadowfrost Jai's face went the color of old snow, because he had come here to build a reputation he intended to carry to a throne, and a boy in road clothes had just taken the entire afternoon away from him with 1 finger. That was the moment I went onto his list. The second test was Primal Spirit evaluation, and it was the most nakedly corrupt thing I have ever watched. There's no instrument. The real instrument, a Primal Spirit wheel, is a 7th rank artifact, and nobody in this empire had ever laid eyes on one. So the ranking is done by alchemists, by eye, behind a curtain. The first candidate through got 1 point without the examiner looking up. He objected. He was knocked out of the room by a palm strike and did not come back. After that, you could read the outcome off people's faces as they came out. Children of the great families came out smiling. Everyone else came out gray. I went in and found Zhang Yifeng behind the table. 2 things, I said. First, I don't want anyone seeing my Primal Spirit. He assumed this was modesty about a low rank. It was not. It was that my Primal Spirit was a coffin, and there is no version of that conversation that ends well. Second, there's a girl called Shen Jingxuan. Don't shave her score. He nodded, wrote something, and handed me a slip. 10 points, the maximum, which meant 20 out of 20 overall. Which meant the first perfect score in the history of the Academy, and which meant that once again every eye in the plaza went somewhere other than the prince, and I would like it on record that I hadn't asked him for that. That evening, waiting for me at the Yang family estate, there was a young man of about 18 with an alchemist's badge on and an extremely careful expression, Shadow Frost Li, the Crown Prince. 2nd rank alchemist, mental energy 24. He went down on 1 knee in a merchant's courtyard. He did it in daylight, in a yard with a working kitchen door in it, with 2 Yang family stewards and about 40 servants in a position to see, and he did not send them away first. That was deliberate, and I understood it before his knee touched the flagstone. A prince who kneels privately can deny it. A prince who kneels publicly has bought something with the only currency he has. Take me as a student, he said. A registered student. I'll accept any terms. The heir to the throne of the Blue Cloud Empire, kneeling in front of 40 servants. Your talent isn't enough for a registered student, I said. Give the idea up. He didn't flinch, which was the first thing I respected about him. So I gave him a door instead. Meridian opening pill, purple Ganoderma, heavenly lotus, clover, golden sprout, plus a 2nd rank wood core. I watched him memorize it. I'm not giving you the proportions, and I'm not giving you the order. Work them out. If you bring me a finished pill inside a month, I'll take you as a registered student. He left looking like a man who'd been handed a map with the roads left off. Chung Renguang waited until the gate closed and then poured himself a very large drink. You know he didn't come here to learn alchemy. I know. 2 reasons. He held up fingers. 1. He wants you to beat his little brother in front of the whole city and take the shine off him. 2. Through you, he buys the Alchemist Guild's goodwill for the price of 1 Neil. He drained the cup. In an imperial family, blood is the weakest tie there is. It's barely a tie at all. It's an address. Then he explained the capital to me properly, over 3 cups of something that cost more than my family's stable, and it was the first time I understood what I'd walked into. You've been thinking of this as an empire, he said. It isn't. It's 4 businesses and a family that owns the flag. 4 powers in the Blue Cloud Empire sit outside the Crown's control. The Alchemist Guild, the Bloodbat Sect, the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce, the Black Market. The Crown can't tax any of the 4, can't arrest any of the 4, and needs all of them, he said. So the Lan family doesn't rule. It brokers. 6 generations of standing in the middle and making sure no 2 of us ever agree about anything on the same day. And when 2 of you do, then there's a new flag, Chung Renguang said comfortably, and everyone keeps trading. And the Empress, Chung Renguang said, refilling. The current Empress, mother of your Ice Prince, born of the Qin family, was a junior fellow student of the head of the Bloodbat Sect. I put my cup down. They studied under the same master. Yes. So the organization that murdered my father in a mountain pass 3 years ago was family with the throne, and Qin Yetian, commander of the Imperial Guard, father of Zhou Bingchen, was the Empress's brother. And you, I said, are the president of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce. Chung Renguang smiled at me over his cup, cheerful as a farmer. There's a martial arts business alliance above us that spans worlds, he said. I'm the local branch. Have more fish. That same night in the Ice Prince's residence, a figure in a black cloak came in through a window that had been closed. 14 years old, adopted daughter of the head of the Bloodbat Sect, brought down from Shumi Spirit Capital 8 years earlier, and at 14, the best killer the sect had. Ren Qiu Yue. Zhou Bingchen said something to her he shouldn't have, and she hit him across the face without turning her head. Useless dog, she said. You eat and you don't hunt. Then, to the prince. I'll be at the tournament tomorrow. You'll have your title. The red list went up in the morning. Lei Zhen, first. 20 points out of 20. The first perfect score in the 200-year history of Li Shan-Yun Academy. Shenjing Xuan, 79th, on her own merits, which mattered to me more than I expected it to. And the arrival of an actual Prince of the Blood at a public examination passed entirely without comment, because 12,000 people were busy arguing about somebody else. Somewhere in that crowd, Shadow Frost Jai said quietly, to nobody, "If I don't kill you, I'm not a man." The tournament ran over 3 days, and the seeding told you everything about the empire. Zilongbo presiding. Zhang Yifeng seated for the Alchemist Guild, and Qin Yetian, commander of the Imperial Guard, seated for the crown. Qin Yetian opened with a joke. I hear the guild's first genius has taken a teacher, he said, over the heads of about 400 people. A teenager, I'm told. Zhang Yifeng did not laugh. You are insulting my teacher, he said, in a voice you could have chilled meat in my presence. Do you not respect this great master? And the commander of the Imperial Guard, brother of the Empress, apologized to a 20-year-old in a public stand. It took him 11 seconds to do it, and he did it standing up, and about 400 people watched him do it. That is what an alchemist's badge is worth in a world where medicine is the only thing that cannot be taken by force. Qin Yetian could have killed Zhang Yifeng in front of witnesses and survived it politically. What he could not survive was a formal complaint that closed the guild's doors to the Qin family for a generation. I did not laugh either, but it was close. 180 entrants, 4 groups, 2 out of each group into the final rounds. I drew number 1 in the first group, which meant I fought first, which suited me. I put my first opponent down with a single strike and made a point of holding back enough that it looked ordinary. Over in the second group, Han Tao Yuan opened his own tournament by hitting a boy so hard the boy did not get up, and did not get up afterwards either, and the medics went out slowly because there was nothing to hurry for. He came over between rounds to introduce himself. Pray you don't draw me, he said, or they'll be carrying you off in pieces. He wasn't even angry at me specifically. He'd come here to be famous, and a prince and a nobody had taken the whole conversation, and this was his way of getting back into it. Shenjing Xuan drew the worst possible card in the round after, Zhou Hongguang, 9th level Primal Spirit, against her 3rd. Shen Muqing went over the rail before I could stop him and got knocked back down by 2 officials. Withdrawal is only permitted before mounting the stage, one of them said, with the deep satisfaction of a man reciting a rule at somebody's father. She's already up. It's too late. She was 13 years old on a stage with a man who had hit a steely for 30,000 jin. Shen Muqing stopped fighting the officials and stood at the rail with both hands on it and did not move again for 4 minutes, and I have rarely seen a man work that hard at standing still. Cheng Yuanjian said, boss, do something. I can't, she's on the stage. You're you. Which is exactly why I can't, I said. If I set foot on that stage, she is disqualified and humiliated in front of 400 people forever, and she will have to live in this city afterward, and I will have taken something off her that I cannot give back. I made myself keep watching. Sit down. And she let her primal spirit out, and it was beautiful. Spirit Serpent Illusion Sword. A slim thing, all speed and no weight, the kind of spirit that a family with money looks at and quietly starts planning a marriage instead of a career, and she used it exactly the way you have to use a spirit like that when you are 4 levels down. She never once tried to meet him. Snake dance on the azure waves. 7 sword shadows became 49, and the 49 became a curtain of water, and Zhou Hongguang stood in the middle of it swinging at reflections while the crowd got louder and louder. He had to spend a killing move to get through. An actual killing move in the second round against a 13-year-old because it was the only thing left that would work. And the instant he committed to it, she stepped backwards off the edge of the stage. You win, she said from the ground and bowed. The crowd howled. Zhou Hongguang stood on an empty stage having spent his best technique on nobody in front of 400 people and looked like a man who has swung an axe into a doorframe. She knows when to press and when to leave, I said to Cheng Yuanjian, who was making a strangled noise beside me. That's rarer than talent. The last 8 came out like this. Me at the 4th level of Primal Spirit, which everybody assumed was a lie. Zhou Hongguang, Han Taoyuan, and Xiao Yan at the 9th. Cheng Wei, Zheng Hao Yuhai, and Zhang Zilong at the 8th. And Shadow Frost Jai at 10,000 manifestations. Xiao Yan was the one I watched. 15 years old, a commoner, no family, no resources, no sponsor. And at the 9th level of Primal Spirit, which under those conditions is not talent, it's a miracle with a person attached. And in 11 qualifying matches, he had not shown his primal spirit once. After the prince, he was the most dangerous person in that arena. My quarter-final was Han Tao Yuan. I walked at him without a star soul, without a technique, without my primal spirit, which as previously discussed contributes nothing. He hit me with Dragon Roar, 30,000 Jin, a genuinely good move, and it came apart on my chest. Then I hit him once. That's it? I said, standing over him. That's disappointing. There was something in his hand. I opened it. A burst yuan pill. 3rd rank, several times stronger than anything I'd been able to cook in Moyang. Somebody had given the second favorite in a school tournament a 3rd rank combat pill. I'll take that, I said, and pocketed it. The second quarter-final was Shadow Frost Ji against Cheng Wei, and Cheng Wei tried to forfeit at the 8th exchange. Too late, the prince said. His primal spirit was a strange one, and I mean that technically. It was a foreign type spirit, the same broad category as my coffin. Black water, mystic ice, a dark liquid that hung around him and switched between vapor and ice on command. He froze Cheng Wei solid where he stood, and then he kicked the statue over. The arena did not cheer. 400 people sat there in a silence you could lean on, and somewhere near the front somebody said clearly, strong, but that's a low way to do it. Up in the stands, the crown prince put his chin on his hand and looked absolutely delighted. Go on, little brother. Be a monster in public. Nobody wants a butcher on the throne. Then Xiao Yan came up against the prince and refused to concede. His primal spirit finally came out, and it was a fiery halberd, and it was the single worst possible matchup for Blackwater Mystic Ice, fire and ice canceling each other, both of them stripped down to what the person behind them could actually do. He lasted a long time. I watched that fight more carefully than any other match in the tournament, and I want to explain what I was actually looking at, because it wasn't the halberd. Xiao Yan had no family, no sponsor, no teacher, and no pills, which means every single thing he did on that stage, he had worked out himself, alone, from first principles, and it showed in a way that was almost painful. His footwork was inefficient and completely original. His guard was built to survive one specific kind of attack that nobody in that arena used anymore, and his timing was better than anyone else's in the top 8 because timing is the one thing you can practice with nothing. He was 10 years of good instruction away from being the most dangerous person in that building, and he was never going to get it. Then he sat down in midair, and light came off him in layers, one shell inside another, and the entire arena stood up. A heaven and earth spirit body, 1 in a million, born with it, not earned. It comes with an innate divine ability nobody can teach and nobody can copy. His was a lotus spirit body, and it was yellow rank, low grade, the bottom rung of the whole system, so he lost anyway. But he made the prince work for 20 minutes to do it. And then, with Xiaoyan already down and already beaten and barely conscious on the boards, Shadow Frost Jai raised a spike of ice over him. I put a star soul through it from the edge of the arena. I want to record that this was the single most expensive thing I did in that entire tournament, and I did it for a boy I had never spoken to. It cost me a first-rank star soul I could not replace inside a week. It told 400 people, including a giant spirit realm commander who was already watching me, that I could reach across an arena without moving. And it put me on the wrong side of a prince a full match earlier than I had planned. I did it anyway, and I would do it again, and I have never been able to construct a tactical justification for it that survives 10 seconds of examination. Some things you just don't watch happen. The prince came off the stage at me, and I met him halfway, and Zilongbo had to physically separate two competitors in front of the entire capital. Here's the part nobody in that arena understood, including Xiaoyan. If he had won that match, he would have been dead before he left the building. Not from the prince, from the stands. Qin Yetian would have had him in a corridor within the hour, because a commoner with a heaven and earth spirit body who publicly humiliates the empress's son is not a story anybody in the Qin family can allow to exist. He got beaten half to death, and it saved his life. My semi-final was Zhou Hongguang. He came in with the Overlord Hammer, the same spirit that had put 30,000 into the stele, and he was faster than he looked and considerably angrier than he had been 2 days earlier. He also knew exactly what had happened to his cousin 2 days earlier, and he had come to the stage with a plan built around it. Never let me close, never let me set my feet, keep the hammer between us, and grind me down over 20 minutes. It was a good plan. It would have worked on almost anybody. For the first 4 minutes, it worked on me. I spent them being herded around a 20-meter stage by a weapon I did not want to touch, and the crowd started to make the noise crowds make when the favorite is being managed, so I stopped trying to get around it. The 9 Extremes War God art has 9 levels, and at the 9th it gives you the body of a war god, and in my last life I stood on that 9th level for a century. In this body I could reach the 1st, and I had never once used it because using it hurts and because I had not yet met anything worth the cost. Gold Extreme Yellow Heaven Battle Armor. Energy came up out of every meridian at once and closed over my skin in plates. Gold. Seamless. For as long as it held, my body was operating in the same bracket as a low-grade heaven and earth spirit body, which is to say the bracket Xiaoyan was born into, and I was renting by the second. Then I walked into the hammer. I want to be precise about this, because it's the whole trick and it looks insane from outside. I did not block it. I did not turn it. I let a 9th level Primal Spirit's killing technique land square on my left shoulder while I was still moving forward, because a man who is blocking has one hand occupied and a man who has decided to simply take it has two. The armor screamed, my collarbone went, the stage cracked under my heel, and both my hands were free. War God soars to the heavens. 100 silver of broken market scrap went up under his chin and out the other side. Zhou Hongguang was dead before the hammer finished falling, and the hammer finished falling anyway, and it took a third of the stage with it. Zhou Bingchen came out of the stands. One more step, I said, and I'll kill you too. The Qin family will never forgive this. I turned to Cheng Yuanjian, who was standing at the rail with both hands over his mouth. And if I'd let him live, I said, were they going to forgive me then? Then the final. Me and the Ice Prince. And for the first 20 minutes I lost. Not on strength, on element. Black water, mystic ice doesn't hit you, it touches you, and everything it touches starts to freeze, and every exchange cost me more than it cost him. My knuckles went numb in the first minute. By the 5th, I was fighting a man I couldn't punch. I did learn one useful thing in there. When star power met that ice, the ice stopped, not resisted, stopped, and then thinned, as though something were drinking it. Star power devours other people's Yuan power. File that. Come back to it. Then he sealed the stage. I felt it start about a second and a half before it closed, because I have been building arrays for longer than his dynasty has existed, and a second and a half was not enough time to get off a 20-meter platform. The whole thing lit up. Xuanbing restriction, 2nd rank. A 2nd rank array will hold a myriad manifestation cultivator in place if it is built properly, and this one had been built properly by somebody expensive some time ago and carried into a school tournament in a prince's sleeve, which tells you everything about how that tournament had been arranged and about how long it had been arranged for. The temperature went through the floor. Frost came up the inside of my sleeves. My knees stopped bending as far as I told them to, and then every movement started costing 4 times what it should, and then 5. 400 people watched a boy in a white robe walk slowly across a frozen stage towards somebody who could no longer run. I found the array's core in about 2 seconds, because in my last life I was an 8th rank array master and this was a schoolboy's work, and I was far too weak to break it. So I stopped trying to break it with strength. Bloodfeather Heavenly Fiend. The star soul went off inside my own dantian instead of outside my body. It filled me to the walls with raw energy in one beat, and my aura came off me in a shockwave that had nowhere to go except into the array, and the array came apart into light. Shadow Frost Jai went across the stage and hit the boards, coughing blood. I came down on top of him with a fist raised, and everyone in that building could see how it was going to end, which was the idea, because Qin Yetian left his seat. A giant spirit true body came up behind him as he rose, a thunder beast, 30 meters of it, filling the air over the arena, and he threw a bolt of violet lightning at my back in front of 400 witnesses, on behalf of his nephew's rival, wearing the uniform of the Imperial Guard. I'd been waiting for it. The fist was a lie. I'd been building the real strike since I landed on him. Eastern Emperor finger, 1 point, aimed at the prince's throat, and a third party arrived. An invisible spiral of wind came out of nowhere and pulled Shadow Frost Jai out from under me, and my finger opened a shallow line across his neck instead of a hole through it. Ren Chu Yue. And because I'd committed everything to that strike, I took the full weight of a giant spirit realm attack across my back and went down through the boards. I want to describe what happened next accurately, because I've been told by several people that they remember it differently, and all of them are wrong. I got up, and 6-meter black wings came out of my back. Blood feather heavenly fiend, fully open. Feathers like knife blades, dark, and the whole arena went silent as I lifted off the ruined stage and hung there in the air with a star soul across my shoulders like a coat. Qing Yuanjian stood up in the stands and called the commander of the Imperial Guard something so comprehensively obscene that Qin Yetian knocked him unconscious with a wave of aura, which I consider fair. Then I took out Han Tao Yuan's 3rd rank burst yuan pill and swallowed it. 9th level of Primal Spirit. Qin Yetian, I said from about 10 meters up. Let's see what you've got that kills me. And I went at him. Not away. At him. Straight into the thunder hand as it was forming, closing distance the whole way, which every person in that arena read as suicide. It wasn't. The thunder hand accumulates after release. The further it travels, the worse it gets. The closest possible point to the caster is the safest place in the sky. Down in the shadows under the stands, a 14-year-old assassin watched a 4th-level cultivator do that on purpose and did the arithmetic and came to a conclusion that would matter a great deal later. She would have done the same thing. She was the best killer the Bloodbat sect had, at the 9th level of Myriad Manifestation, and it had taken her 4 years to learn that trick. He's 4 levels below me, she thought. How could he possibly see that? There's only one answer. He's a genius without equal. The lightning hit me, and then it went away. Not deflected, not absorbed. Gone, the way a coin goes into a pocket, and inside my 10th meridian the domain spoke up for the 2nd time in my life. Star power, the origin of power, defy the heavens and devour the world. Star power awakening, devouring heaven's soul, open. The armor on my body started throwing violet lightning that wasn't mine. For about 90 seconds after that, a 4th-level Primal Spirit cultivator with a borrowed pill in him pushed a giant spirit realm commander backward across an arena, and 400 people watched it and would spend the rest of their lives disagreeing about what they had seen. Then Bloodfeather Heavenly Fiend ran out. They don't last. That's the trade. The strongest star soul I had was also the shortest, and when it went all at once. The wings went to ash, the armor came apart, and Qin Yetian, who had spent the last minute and a half being publicly humiliated by a schoolboy, put everything he had into a single strike called Heaven Destroying, and I did not have anything left to put in front of it. I came down in a crater in the middle of the arena, and I stopped moving, and a black feather came out of the shadows under the stands, aimed at my heart. The 10th meridian moved my body without asking me. The feather went through my shoulder instead. 400 people saw a boy get hit by a giant spirit realm master and then get hit again while he was down, and the arena made the sound crowds make when something is over. One voice came up out of it. No! Zhang Yifeng was on his feet at the guild's table. My teacher is alive. I came out of the crater. Qin Yetian started walking toward me to finish it, and I looked up into the stands for the crown prince, who was 18 and owed me nothing and had knelt in a courtyard 3 days earlier. He looked away. I want to be fair to him. He'd done the arithmetic, and the arithmetic said that a boy who could do this at 16 was not a tool, he was a weather system, and the throne would be safer if it happened to me now. He would come to consider that the worst decision of his life. He was right to. Somebody else stepped between us. Back off, Wei Han said. Vice President, this is imperial business. While I'm standing here, Wei Han said, who exactly is going to kill him? Then he turned to the Ice Prince, who had been saying something. One more disrespectful word out of you, he said, and if Emperor Zhao Wuji himself stands over you, I will take your life. And then, having apparently decided that today was the day, he turned around and pointed at the presiding vice president of his own academy. You watched, Wei Han said. You sat there and you watched, because you wanted somebody else's hand to do it. You can't stand a genius in a room, Zhilongbo. You couldn't stand my brother Shenmu Qing 25 years ago, either. Two vice presidents of Li Shan Yun Academy released their giant spirit true bodies over a school tournament. Zilong Bows came up as a tree, Crimson Dragon Sandalwood, a 4th rank wood spirit 40 or 50 meters of red trunk with the branches moving. Wei Han's came up as a sword, Xuan Shuang Yue Zhan, 5th rank, 30 meters, and the temperature in the arena dropped when it cleared the ground. They traded ultimate techniques and both of them coughed blood. Then, they set up to do it again, and the second exchange was going to kill at least one of them. Stop. A wind came through the arena and swallowed both killing techniques the way a drain swallows water. No sound, no shockwave. They were simply no longer there, and a woman was standing in the air above the stage, white robes, black hair to her waist, a purple ribbon in it, and eyes that were ice blue and entirely, completely uninterested. The only true origin realm cultivator in the Blue Cloud Empire. 20 years old, every single person in that arena dropped their eyes. The commander of the Imperial Guard dropped his eyes. I looked straight at her, because I have never in 2 lives been able to do otherwise, and she noticed. Your name is Lei Zhen. It is. You're this year's rookie king, she said. Come with me. Nobody argued. Nobody in that building had standing to argue, including, I suspect, the emperor. The Qin family handed over the Golden Thunder armor that afternoon, and Cheng Yuan Jian spent about an hour holding it and making small noises. The dean of Li Shan Yun Academy lived in a thatched hut in the deep woods behind the mountain, which told me more about her than anything she said. 4th level of Primal Spirit, she said without turning around. And you went at Qin Yetian. Who are you? Everyone has secrets. I won't ask about yours. She let that sit for a while. The Rookie King's prize is 10 days of my instruction, she said. I'm not giving it to you. Fine. I'm giving you a condition instead. 1 month. Get from the 4th level of Primal Spirit to Myriad Manifestation Realm inside 1 month, and I'll teach you. Fail, and the prize is void. For anyone else in the world, that would have been a polite way of saying no. 2 entire ranks. In 30 days, I have a coffin in which time runs at 1/10 speed. 1 month outside is 1 year inside. Agreed, I said instantly, and I watched her eyebrows do something they clearly didn't do often. On my way out, I stopped at the door. Your eyes, I said. They're 9-colored pupils. She went very still. There are 10 innate heterochromatic eyes in the world. Ren Xingzhao's ghost eye is on that list, near the bottom of it. The 3rd of the 9 heavenly emperors of my old life carried the purple extreme demon eyes, and everybody agreed there was nothing above them. 9 colored pupils are above them. How? She said. That isn't the interesting question. Then what is? The interesting question, I said, is why the only true origin realm cultivator in an entire empire is living in a hut in the woods behind a school, teaching adolescents at 20 years old when there are 4 great families who would build you a mountain. She didn't answer that either. Get some rest, I said, and left. Behind me, the only true origin cultivator in the empire stood in a doorway and thought about the fact that a 16-year-old had just thrown a stone into a lake that had been still for 4 years. The Ice Prince spent that evening hitting his own uncle across the face, the commander of the Imperial Guard, who took it, and then got hit across the face himself by a 14-year-old in a black cloak, which he also took. I want all of them dead, he was saying. Not just Lei Zhen, the sister, the fat one, the friends, every. Enough, Ren Qiuyue said. I'll kill Lei Zhen. The rest of them are nothing to do with me. And she thought, privately, my godfather was right. The Lan family's time in this empire is finished. Then the silver pendant on her chest lit up. It had never done that. Not once in 8 years. And at that exact moment, 3 streets away, a green-eyed boy running an errand stopped dead in the road because the identical pendant around his own neck had gone warm. Twin pendants. They find each other. They stood 200 meters apart with a wall between them, both of them looking at their own chests, both of them feeling something they had no name for. And then the light went out, and they went in opposite directions without ever seeing each other's faces. She didn't remember his face. She'd been 6. What she had was a smudge and a pendant, and the same question she'd been asking herself for 8 years every time she looked down at it. Ren Xingzhao. Who are you to me? 3 days later, the Alchemist Guild came to the Yong family gate. The Crown Prince came twice and was turned away twice. On the 3rd day, they sent the man himself, Wu Yuanjian, president of the Alchemist Guild of the Blue Cloud Empire. The only 4th-rank alchemist in the country, a man the emperor stood up for, and he didn't ask. I don't care if he's injured, he said from the courtyard loudly. I don't care if he's dying. Bring him out to me. And then, when Chengren Guang tried to be diplomatic, Lei Zhen's life is not as valuable as you people seem to think. I came out for that line. I came out applauding. Beautifully put, I said. Genuinely. So, my life is cheap, and the princess's life is expensive. I stopped in front of him. Then why have you come to beg something cheap to save something expensive? The cheap thing might take it badly. His mouth opened. Master Yang, I said, see our guests out. Zhang Yifeng from the back of the group started to say something conciliatory. Whose student are you? I said, without looking at him. Have you forgotten where you stand? He shut his mouth, walked across the courtyard, and stood behind my shoulder in front of his own guild president. That was when Wu Yuanjian broke. Name your price, he said. In the emperor's name. Anything. I want the ice prince dead. The courtyard stopped. Cheng Ren Guang, who had been quietly enjoying the whole afternoon from a doorway, stopped enjoying it. Zhang Yifeng closed his eyes. Somewhere behind the guild delegation, a young clerk audibly said, "Oh no," and was hushed. I wasn't serious. I wanted the number. I wanted to know exactly how much a prince weighed against a princess, and how much the guild weighed against both, and now I knew because Wu Yuanjian stood there for 4 seconds and then said, "That isn't possible." Then my answer is no. See our guests out. Here is why the crown was on its knees. Princess Shadow Frost Jing, only daughter of the emperor, twin sister of the ice prince, has never been able to cultivate a single day in her life. Worse, she cannot take medicine. Any medicine. A first-rank pill puts her body into swelling and shock. She had spent 18 years being carefully poisoned by people trying to help her. 4 days earlier, Wu Xuanping, the old man from the road, the one who had held my sister by the throat, had fed her a 5th-rank 7 treasures spirit pill. She had been unconscious ever since, and there were black marks spreading across her, and Wu Yuanjian had held her when she was a baby and had never entirely stopped thinking of her as his. Zhang Yifeng came back alone that night and went down on his knees in my room. Get up, teacher. I told you not to kneel without permission. He stayed down. So I let him talk, and it turned out my registered student had been a street beggar until he was 10 years old. Actual streets, actual begging. And one afternoon, a girl in a carriage had given him a single gold coin, which was the reason he had not died that winter, and she had smiled at him. That's the whole event. A girl in a carriage, 1 coin, 1 smile, 10 years ago, to a child she has never once thought about since and would not recognize in a corridor. He had built an entire life on it. 3rd-rank alchemist at 20, the first genius of the empire, a badge that makes giant spirit cultivators step aside. Every hour of that was work done by a boy who had decided at 10 that he was going to become something worth the coin. For that smile, he said to the floor, I'd give my life. I sat there for a moment. What a thing love is, I said. People will die for it and can't explain it afterward. I got up. Get off the floor. She isn't going to die. Because I'd worked out what was wrong with her within about a minute of hearing the symptoms, and it wasn't an illness. Princess Shadow Frost Jing has a body of 10,000 poisons. A heaven and earth spirit body, the same category as Xiao Yan's lotus, except that Xiao Yan's was yellow rank, low grade, and hers is yellow rank, high grade. She wasn't sick. She was being fed the wrong fuel for 18 years. The treatment for a body of 10,000 poisons is poison, serious poison, more and better poison than exists in the guild's entire vault, which is how I ended up going to the black market. Wu City sits in the middle of the imperial capital and has 5 districts: medicine, weapons, beasts, slaves, and the auction house. Entry costs 1,000 gold, which keeps out exactly the sort of person you'd expect it to keep out. I walked the slave district on the way through because I wanted to know what kind of city I was actually standing in. I'm not going to describe it. I'll say 2 things and move on. The first is that it was clean and orderly and well run, and that this was worse than if it had been filthy. The second is that Cheng Yuanjian, who had been born 4 streets away and had walked past that district his entire life, went quiet at the entrance and stayed quiet until we were 300 meters clear of it, and then said, "My father doesn't trade there. I've checked. Twice." He'd checked twice. That's a 15-year-old who had thought about it on his own. I decided at that point that I liked him considerably more than was convenient. There is a 6th district. It's behind a stretch of woodland. It's not on any map. The crown has no authority in it, and admission is 10,000 gold per person. Cheng Yuanjian paid for 6 of us with 7 low-grade yuan crystals, each of which is worth 10,000 gold, and did it the way other people pay a bar tab. The 2 men on the gate were brothers, Xu Bo and Xu Ying, both myriad manifestation 5th level, and they hired on as our escort for 1 mid-grade crystal without asking a single question about where we were going. Ren Xingzhao came with us. In the 2 months since Mo Yang, he had gone from the 5th level of Primal Spirit to the 9th, which is not a normal rate of travel, and which is what a ghost eye does to a person once it starts opening properly. Behind us, at a distance, in a black cloak, somebody else came too. Lei Zhen, she thought. Now that you've walked into the black market, you're not walking back out. And then, because she couldn't stop doing it, Ren Xingzhao. Who are you to me? The poison shop was called the Dangson Pavilion, and the man behind the counter nearly ended the entire trip. He looked like a shopkeeper. He was reading. And when my divine sense went over him, it came back with a number that made me stop in the doorway. Mental energy above 50. possibly above 60, which is a 5th or 6th rank alchemist standing behind a counter in an illegal district of a 3rd rank empire selling poison to teenagers. Zhang Yifeng nearly fell over because in 3 months he had never once seen me speak to anybody respectfully, and I greeted that old man like an equal. 30 varieties of 4th rank poison. He named a price of 1 million gold. I raised it to 2. Zhang Yifeng made a noise. Chung Yunqian made a different noise. I did it because the crown was paying and would pay double, and because a man like that does not need money and does need to be treated as though he might matter later, and because I intended to come back, and because of what was in the case behind him, a star soul stone, 7th rank forging material, out of a meteorite, and there was no chance he knew what it actually was for. Not for sale, he said before I opened my mouth. At any price. So I put a purple dragon beard on the counter. That's what it had been for. 7th rank herb, bought at 2nd rank prices off an ignorant display case, carried across an empire for exactly this moment. He looked at it for a long time. Take the stone, he said, and then, as we were leaving, so quietly that only I heard it. You're being followed. I needed that stone to reforge the Juezhenjan sword, and I needed the sword whole to finally use the proud sword art, which is not a technique I learned. It's a technique I built in my last life by breaking 3 celestial schools apart and welding the useful pieces together. We got about 400 meters out of the woodland when the sky opened. Cross reverse kill. It came from 400 meters out in the dark, and I felt it about half a second before it arrived, which is exactly half a second more than most people get, and I read the line of it, and the line was the entire problem. It wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed through me, angled so that whatever was left of it after it went through my chest would keep traveling into the group standing on the path behind me, which at that moment consisted of an old poison seller, a dwarf, my 10th disciple, a 13-year-old girl, and my sister. That's not an assassin's mistake. That's an assassin telling you she has done this before and has already decided what you'll do about it. Dodging was not available. So I used proud sword art for the first time in 100 years. Sword 17. The only defensive move in the whole system, a shield of light and shadow. The shield broke. I went 10 meters backwards through packed earth and came up on one knee with my ribs shouting at me, and I was alive. And the only reason I was alive was that an old poison seller had told me I was being followed, and I had spent the whole walk holding my body ready. The Jew brothers went in to protect their client because that was the job, and because 2 myriad manifestation 5th level cultivators had every reason to think they were relevant to what was happening. 2 black feathers came out of the dark, and both of them were gone before they finished the step. I had hired those men 4 hours earlier for 1 mid-grade crystal each. I did not know either of their first names. They had asked no questions about where we were going, which at the time I had read as professionalism, and which I now think was simply the habit of men who had stopped expecting the answer to matter. Everybody run, I said. Now. Ren Xingjiao didn't move. He was staring at the black shape in the sky with an expression I couldn't read, and later I understood that he couldn't read it either. So I used the second imprint. Severing extinction earth. I put both hands down, and about 60 meters of the ground behind me came up. Soil, stone, bedrock, a small mountain of it, hanging in the air, and I dropped it on her. She came out of the bottom of it. Barely, bleeding from everywhere, and when she came out, 9 pairs of black wings came out with her. 7th rank Primal Spirit, 9-winged dragon raven. I'll remember you, she said, and went. I sat down in the crater because I had nothing left in me at all, and that was when I noticed Ren Xingjiao. He was standing there with his hand over his chest, and there was light coming out between his fingers. That's not possible, he said. It can't be her. And he was gone after her without another word. While I was doing that, a dozen men in black took the road behind me. Zhang Yifeng went down first, knocked out, not killed, because you do not kill a 3rd-rank alchemist in an empire with a guild in it. Shenmu Qing went down second, with a thorned vine through his chest. They stripped the golden thunder armor straight off Chung Yuanjian while he was still shouting, and a 9-year-old girl put herself in front of all of them with her arms out. I want to lay this out properly, because I got it in pieces afterward from 4 different people, and it took me a week to assemble, and I have never once been able to think about it calmly. Zhang Yifeng was down. Shenmu Qing was down with a hole in him. Chung Yuanjian was on his knees with a man peeling a 4th-rank imperial armor off his back like a shell off a crab. Shen Jingxuan had a blade at her throat and had stopped moving because someone had told her that if she moved, they'd start with the little one. And Lei Lingmei, 1st level of Primal Spirit, 9 years old, 40 kilos in wet clothes, walked out in front of all of them and put her arms out. My brother is Lei Zhen, she told a dozen professional killers. He has never lost. He is not going to forgive you. Little Guai took the hand off the man reaching for her and iced his arm to the shoulder, and for about 4 seconds a 1-month-old panda held a road against the Imperial Guard. Then they broke through, and they put her in a sack. The leader gave 2 orders on the way out. Kill everyone except the alchemist. Leave no bodies. He left one man behind to finish the witnesses. That man made one mistake. He turned his back on a fat boy he had already written off. Chung Yuan-jan, first level of Primal Spirit, 5 years without a breakthrough, useless by every measure the capital had ever applied to him, took a knife off his own belt and did it from behind. Then he sat down in the road and shook for 10 minutes. I came back to a road full of my people. I'd like to describe what I felt. I can't, particularly. There's a place past anger where things get very organized. Find Ling Mei, I said. Here's what had actually been arranged. The client was the Ice Prince. The contractor was Qin Yulong, the commander's eldest son, captain of one of the 8 imperial guards. The fee was the command of the guard itself, payable on the day the prince took the throne. And the instruction regarding my sister, delivered casually on the way out of a room, was, give the girl to my third cousin to play with, and when he's bored, sell her. Then, I was never here tonight, understood? I did not go to the guard. I did not go to the academy. I walked into the crown prince's residence through the front, past 2 guards who decided very quickly not to be involved and said, I'm giving you one chance to fix what you did in that arena. Take me to your father, now. Wu Yuanjian was standing outside the imperial apartments, and he had recovered his composure since the courtyard. His Majesty is asleep, he said. Come back. Black marks, I said. On her abdomen, sunken in the middle, not raised, a dark red point at the center of each one, and as of tonight, the largest 3 have opened. He stopped breathing. Nobody had told him that. Nobody had told the Emperor that. He had been in that room 4 hours ago, and he had seen exactly that, and nobody outside it had. She has an hour, I said. Move. That was a lie, and I want to be honest about it, because it's the kind of lie I'm good at. The marks weren't fatal. I knew they weren't fatal, because I knew what she actually had. And a body of 10,000 poisons opens like that when it's finally getting something it can use. But he didn't know that, and I needed a door opened. The Emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire received me at midnight in a sleeping robe. I'll save your daughter, I said, after you save my sister. There were 11 people in that room. 4 of them were guards. 2 of them were ministers who had been woken up. One of them was the Crown Prince, standing behind my left shoulder with the expression of a man who has brought a fire into his own house. The room went cold. Literally, the aura came off Zhao Wuji like a window opening in winter, and it was giant spirit realm, and it was aimed entirely at me, and the 2 ministers went to their knees without deciding to. I stayed standing, which cost me something, and which was the entire point of the exercise. You are bargaining, he said, with me. I am. Boy, do you understand what you are standing in? A room, I said, with a man whose daughter has been dying for 4 days, while every alchemist in this empire poisons her a little more carefully than the last one. One of the ministers made a small sound. They've been feeding her rare medicine since she was born, I went on. Every single dose has been making it worse, and not one person in your guild has ever asked why, because asking why would mean admitting that 18 years of the best treatment in the empire has been the disease. I let that sit exactly as long as it needed. I know what she has. I can name it. Nobody else in this world can, and by tomorrow morning, it won't matter whether they can. Then save her, he said, and name your reward afterward. That is how this is done. No. No, Your Majesty. Half an hour ago, a captain of your Imperial Guard put my 9-year-old sister in a sack. My voice did not go up, and I was proud of that. So we are going to do the sister first, and then the daughter, and the reason we're doing it in that order is that I have already watched what your people do to a promise once they've got what they wanted. And if I refuse, I looked at him for a while, then the Blue Cloud Empire ends. Zhao Wuji stared at me for a long moment, and then he laughed, genuinely from the chest, the way a man laughs when he's been shown something rare. I'd seen that expression before, in mirrors. It's the look of someone recognizing a dragon in a well. Qin Yetian, he said to a doorway, half an hour, bring the child back, or don't bother coming back. Qin Yetian went home at a speed the commander of the Imperial Guard should not be capable of, and found his eldest son's household, and found my sister alive, and found out in the same 30 seconds that she had seen Qin Yulong's face. He killed his own son with one palm. Zhen Kun, he said, standing over him. Don't blame your father. Then he built the story, standing over the body, out loud, alone in a courtyard, in about 90 seconds. The whole affair was his eldest son's private crime. His son had acted without orders, out of a personal grudge, using men he had suborned. The Qin family was appalled. The Qin family had dealt with it internally, immediately, at the highest possible cost, which was the life of the commander's own heir, and every guardsman who had been on that road tonight was going to be dead before the palace opened. It hangs together. That's the frightening part. Every element of it is true except the direction, and there was not one person alive by dawn who could say otherwise. I've known a lot of monsters. Most of them are honest about it. A tiger won't eat its own cubs. Qin Yetian went home and did the sums and came out the other side with a corpse he could use. They brought her back to the palace hall in a blanket. She got about 4 steps into that room and then ran the rest of it and hit me somewhere around the waist. And finally, after Moyang, after the road, after a sack, she cried. Qin Yetian laid his son's body on the floor of the imperial hall as proof of justice served. Every single person in that hall knew it was a lie, including the emperor, who worked out in about 10 seconds who the real client had been because there was only one person it could have been, and who then decided not to dig. Name the punishment yourself, he said to me generously. I want him dead. Lei Jun, I want him dead. And the emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire offered me a compromise instead. From this day, Qin Yetian would answer with his own head for my sister's safety, whoever touched her, forever. It's a real offer. It has teeth. It would have satisfied most people. And I want to be fair to that offer, because it was not a small one. The commander of the Imperial Guard permanently bonded with his own head to the safety of a 9-year-old girl from a border town, enforceable by an emperor, in writing, in front of the court. Most people would have taken it. Most people would have been right to. Your Majesty, I said, do you know why I'm refusing? He waited. Because the offer is generous, and the price is a lie. You are asking me to accept the wrong man's corpse and call it justice, and every person in this hall knows it's the wrong corpse, including you. And the moment I agree, I have agreed that the arrangement works, that a thing can be done to my family and then settled afterward with paperwork by whoever happens to own the paperwork. I let that go all the way around the room. That's not a punishment. That's a rate. I only know one punishment, I said. You don't want to give it. That's your business. I'm not accepting anything else. Then I turned around. Take me to the princess. He'd chosen his son in front of me, and I have never once in 2 lives forgotten a thing like that. Behind me, standing at the back of that hall, having walked in halfway through without being announced, were Cheng Renguang and Wei Han. They'd come for me, both of them, to an imperial hall at midnight. I noted that too. Blue Jing's room was the worst thing I saw in the entire capital, and I say that having recently walked through a slave district. It was full of treasure. Actual, literal treasure, the rarest herbs in the empire in cases along every wall, spirit grasses under glass, a fortune in curatives arranged in tiers around the bed of a girl for whom every single one of them was poison. I stood in the doorway and counted because I couldn't help myself. 9 third-rank herbs, 2 fourth, a cloud heart lotus in a sealed jar that I would have crossed a province for. Every one of them was quietly killing her, and had been since before she could walk. She had lived in that room for 18 years. Every object in it had been chosen for her by somebody who loved her. Every object in it had been quietly making her worse. And nobody had ever once asked why, because asking why would have meant admitting that 18 years of the finest care in the empire had been the illness itself. The maids who tended her had been getting sick for years, headaches, then tremors, then reassignment. Nobody had ever connected it, because the obvious explanation was grief, and the correct explanation was that a body of 10,000 poisons runs a small permanent weather system around itself, and everything in that room had been feeding it. She woke up on the 2nd day of treatment, which nobody had expected, least of all me. The first thing she asked was whether her maid Li Xia had recovered, not what happened, not who are you. She had been unconscious for 5 days on the edge of dying, and the first sentence out of her was about a servant who had gone home ill 3 weeks earlier. I have met a great many extraordinary people across 2 lifetimes. I want it on record that Blue Jing is on the short list, and that she has never done anything more impressive than that sentence. And she was still, by every account and by my own observation once she woke up, kind. I put a shielding array on Ling Mei so she could sit on the bed and hug her, which she did immediately, and at length. Then I told them to carry the princess out of that room. A man cannot carry the princess in his. Master Xiao. I looked at him. You have no idea what she goes through every hour of every day. You've been doing this to her since she was born, with the very best intentions, and you have never once asked why the medicine makes her worse. I pointed at the cases. I'm taking all of it, by the way. It's poison to her. It's excellent for me. The treatment is simple once you know. Distill the poisons, 1 drop per bath 3 times a day. Improvement in 5 days, normal in a month. And then I handed the entire course of it to Zhang Yifeng and removed the president of the Alchemist Guild from the case. I did that on purpose. She was going to spend the next month with the one person in the building who had loved her since he was 10 years old and had never once mentioned it. On the 5th day, she laughed out loud, which the palace staff reported to each other as a miracle. In another wing of the same palace, at the same hour, the Ice Prince knelt in front of his mother, Empress Zhou Min, sister of the commander of the Imperial Guard, and, 30 years ago, the junior fellow student of the head of the Blood Bat sect. Her plan was simple, and she'd been at it for a decade. Her son on the throne instead of the crown prince and instead of the princess. Mother. He had his forehead on the floor. I want all of them. Not just him. The sister first, so he watches. Bingy. He humiliated me in front of the entire capital. Bingy. Her voice did not change. You are going to be emperor in 11 days. Stop asking me for a boy's revenge and start behaving like a man who is about to own the thing that revenge is for. Then a shape came out of the dark at the back of the room and it moved like something that didn't have legs. Cao Yong, head of the Bloodbat sect. His voice sounded like a funeral bell being struck in a room a long way away. The boy is an error in the arrangement, he said. He should be removed, but he stands very close to the Alchemist Guild and closer to the Chamber of Commerce, and both of those are inconvenient. A pause. We'll wait for an occasion. And then, mostly to himself, Lei Zhen, you get more interesting every week. What is it you're hiding? In the Qin family hall, they had a corpse on the table and a decision to make. Zhou Zeikai, father of the Zhou Hongguang I'd killed in the semi-final, wanted blood immediately. An elder shut him down. Lei Zhen is past us. He was past us a month ago. So Qin Yatian made the sensible choice, which is the one that always frightens me most in an enemy. Do nothing. Wait. And at the correct moment, push the Ice Prince forward and let him pull the chestnuts out. I spent 3 days and 3 nights on the sword. The Star Soul Stone went into the break and closed it, and at the end of the 3rd night, the Jujin Jan sword was whole for the first time in a century. It was not a 9th Order Imperial artifact anymore. It was a 3rd-rank spirit weapon. I took it out into the yard and swung it once, at nothing. It cut a pillar as thick as a bucket in half and put a trench 10 meters long into the ground behind it. 10 meters. At full commitment. Still too weak, I said, and went inside. Then, because I had a whole sword and half a night, I sat down and started rebuilding my sword heart. The sword Dao has 10 steps, forms, technique, sword chi, sword heart, sword intent, sword momentum, sword spirit, sword soul, sword essence, and at the top, the sword of profundity. Most people who pick up a blade never leave the 2nd step. Condense sword chi, and you're called a genius. Reach intent, and you're 1 in a million. In my last life, I stood on the 10th, and I built my own profundity there, and I named it Pride. The Wuji Sword Saint once crossed a continent to sit in my courtyard for a week and ask me questions about it. Dying cost me my sword heart, everything below it too. I had to start from nothing, and that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because a sword heart is grown once, and a man who grows a 2nd one can build a 2nd profundity on top of it. It took half a day to cross 2 steps and condense sword chi, except that it didn't condense once, it condensed twice. One strand came off the proud sword art, sharp, arrogant, mine. The other came off the star origin stone, and it was cold, and it was silver, and it wanted to eat things. And then, without being asked, the 2 of them wound together. That has never happened. Not to me, not to anyone in the heavens, not in any record I've ever read. There are 5 peaks of the sword in the celestial realm. Lin Cheng Kun, 10,000 Lin, Guan Yu Haibo, Shadow Blade, and me. With 2 profundities, I don't join them. I go over the top of all 4. I sat in a merchant's spare room in a 3rd-rank empire with 2 threads of sword chi turning in my chest, and I said it out loud for the first time since I'd woken up in this body. Li Twilight Great Emperor, Zhang Huiyin. The threads turned. Wait for me. I'm coming back to the divine realm, and when I get there, we'll settle the account. In the morning, my sister broke through to the 7th level of Essence Meridian, which was 2 levels in 1 week. Meyer is going to study very hard, she informed me, so she can protect brother Lei Zhen. I gave her 10 awakening pills and started thinking about who could teach her, and the only correct answer in the entire empire was a woman in a thatched hut who didn't like people. The Cultivation Hall at Li Shan Yun Academy runs on a 3rd-rank spirit array that triples the density of ambient energy, and it has 100 rooms in it, and the best 20 had been taken, not allocated, taken and held by 20 inner court students on the grounds that they could. Liang Yunfeng was standing in the corridor with 6 of them when I came up. Myriad Manifestation, 3rd level, and the older brother of the Han Tao Yuan I'd put down in the quarter-final. One of his people got enthusiastic before he'd finished talking. A sun bow, claw strike, straight at my throat. I didn't draw. I cut all 5 of his fingers off with bare sword chi, and then put my heel on the last one. That finger's the lesson, I said. Don't reach for something you haven't measured. Liang Yunfeng came at me with a golden blade and I broke it with a finger. Sword chi has an edge, it just doesn't have a handle. Then he did the traditional thing and struck at my back while I was turning, and I took his arm off at the elbow, and the strike that would have caught my spine hit Cheng Yuanjin instead, who had stepped in wearing a 4th-rank Imperial armor and who bounced. The best room in that hall belonged to the Ice Prince, which made it, from my point of view, the only room in the building worth having. It had a guard on it. 16 years old, out of the only sword family in the empire, and he'd condensed sword chi 6 months earlier, which is why a boy of 16 was inside the top 20 of the inner court. Wen Qingmu Qing. Your sword's rubbish, I told him. You'd be better off with a spirit. I broke the blade with a finger. Then I used the second of the Proud Sword Art's opening forms, Sword Shadow 300 billion, and when it cleared, his sword chi was gone, not suppressed, crippled. 10 years of accumulation, and I took it apart in under 2 seconds because he'd built it wrong and nobody had ever been rude enough to tell him. He cried, sitting down in the corridor in front of 40 people with a noise that went right up the stairwell and brought 2 more floors of students out to look. I want to be honest about how that felt because it is the only thing I did that month that I have gone back and looked at more than once. He was 16. He had been given the best sword instruction in a third-rank empire and had been told every day since he was 6 that this was the thing that made him worth something, and he had done everything they told him to do correctly for 10 years. And the reason his sword chi came apart in under 2 seconds was not that he was lazy or stupid, it was that his family's method is wrong and has been wrong for 4 generations, and nobody above him has ever been good enough to notice. He was standing in a doorway for a prince because that was what a boy like him was for. Sorry, I said. Slip of the hand. That made it worse. Whose guard dog you are is your own business, I said, opening the door of the prince's room. Biting me was a choice. The Proud Sword Art has 3 opening forms, 3 intermediate, 3 advanced, 3 supreme, and 4 sword formations after that. Sword 17 for defense, Sword Shadow 300 billion, and 1 sword overturns the Jai. At that point in my life, I could use the opening 3. That was it. 12 techniques out of 13 sets were sitting in my head fully understood and completely out of reach, which is its own particular kind of misery. Then I went into the room and shut the door and stayed there for 10 days, which, inside the coffin, is 100. The room had 2 arrays in it, not 1. The energy array everyone knew about, and a gravity array nobody had mentioned, which starts at 10 times normal on day 1, and adds 10 times every day after that. I found the gravity array on the first breath, because at 10 times normal weight your own eyelids tell you. Then I sat down and did the arithmetic that made me laugh out loud in a locked room. 10 times on day 1, 20 on day 2, 30 on day 3. 10 days is 100, and 100 times normal gravity will crush a myriad manifestation cultivator into the floor tiles. That's why the record was 7 days. That's why it was the best room in the hall, and why 20 inner court students had taken the others by force and left this one for a prince. And inside the coffin, where time runs at a 10th, 10 days is 100 days. 100 days of forge pressure in a room designed by somebody who genuinely wanted to hurt whoever was in it, with the door shut and the whole academy assuming I'd be dead by the weekend. I have not been that happy since I was alive the first time. Day 1 took me from the 5th level of Primal Spirit to the 7th. Inside the Star River domain, dozens of stars came on at once. 128 star power, strength over 100,000 jin, and the lit stars weren't an arc anymore. They were a curve with structure in it, and I could finally see enough to know what I was looking at. It was a totem. A single continuous design being drawn across the surface of a pillar that had no visible top, 1 star at a time, by a boy in a locked room in a 3rd-rank empire, and there was spirit array logic running inside the lines, which meant it wasn't decoration and it wasn't a map, it was a mechanism. And I had lit perhaps a millionth of it. The 3rd page of the Star Soul Codex opened, and it was insulting. Still 1st rank, and 4 times more complex than anything on page 2. 5 days to carve flame demon armor. 3 more for 3 simple ones off the older page. 4 Star Souls total, which felt thin until I remembered I'd killed a 9th level cultivator with the first one I ever made. Outside, meanwhile, the academy record for that room was 7 days. On day 10, the gravity array hit 100 times normal, and the entire academy concluded I was a stain on the floor. Not one teacher came. Si Longbo had left standing instructions. Wei Han was in sealed cultivation and unreachable. The Ice Prince walked past the corridor twice that day just to enjoy it. The country boy killed himself, he said. How efficient. And on the 10th day, someone came out of sealed cultivation on the other side of the academy. Wen Qingyang, 20 years old. First student of the inner court, myriad manifestation 5th level, and he had grown a sword heart, which nobody in the 200-year history of Li Shan Yun Academy had ever done. He came down to that corridor and found Zhang Yifeng trying to break the door array and stopped him. Then Cheng Jian ran for help and Wen Qingyang broke both his kneecaps to discourage the practice. Then Cheng Yuanjian got in his face. I have replayed this part a number of times. A 1st level Primal Spirit cultivator, 5 years stuck, universally described as useless, stood in a corridor and told the first student of the inner court that his entire family were cowards who bullied children because they couldn't manage adults. Wen Qingyang put a sword through his chest. The Golden Thunder armor stopped it. 4th rank, gift of a dead emperor, won on a bet by a boy who'd been told he was going to lose it. The 2nd strike went for the throat, above the collar. I came out of that door. You're going to kill my brother? I said. Not today. One sword overturns the Jai went through his entire accumulated sword chi and scattered it. Then we fought properly, and it was even. I want to be clear about how absurd that is. 7th level of Primal Spirit against 5th level of Myriad Manifestation with a sword heart. That is not a gap you close with talent. That is not a gap you close at all. That's two men on different floors of a building arguing about who is taller. The corridor stopped being a corridor about 90 seconds in. We went through the far wall into the second hall, and then through the second hall into the yard, and by the end of it there were about 300 students standing on the grass watching the first student of the inner court fail to finish a first year. He was better than me. I want that on the record too. His footwork was cleaner, his edge control was better, and he had been doing this since he was 4 years old with the best instruction money can buy in a 3rd-rank empire. I simply would not stop. But he had a problem, and I could see it, and after about the 40th exchange I got bored and told him what it was. Your primal spirit is a flowing silver sword. It's water. I parried something that should have taken my arm. Your family technique is Golden Sun Sword. That's metal and fire. You've spent 10 years running 2 engines that put each other out. I stepped back. Drop the Golden Sun. It's crippling your spirit. There is no way to say that to a proud man in a corridor full of witnesses and have it land as help. I knew that when I said it. I'd like to claim I had a reason. The truth is that I have been correcting people's sword work for 116 years, and I have never once managed to keep my mouth shut about a foundational error, and it has cost me 2 friendships and at least 1 duel. He came apart, and that's when Cheng Yuanjian screamed. He went down on the flagstones with blood coming out of his eyes, his ears, his nose, and his mouth, and something inside him was moving that I could feel from 6 meters away. I turned my back on a myriad manifestation cultivator mid-fight and sealed my brother's meridians. When Qing Yang struck me in the back, I let him. I took it across the shoulder blades and answered without turning around with War God Ninefold Kill, which put 9 holes through him and ended the argument. Then I spent the next hour doing surgery in a corridor. Needles through Yuanjian's shoulders, thighs, palms, and the soles of his feet, and what came out of every one of them was black, and it kept coming. Here's what was wrong with him. His primal spirit is a book, not a beast, not a tree, not a weapon. A god-demon blood scroll, which he awakened at 10 years old and which has never once been opened, because there's a lock on it. Divine Demon 3000 seals, 9th of the 10 strongest seals in existence. For scale, the 10th, the one above it, belonged to Long Bai Lei, Demon Emperor of the 9 Netherworlds, and when he used it on me, it erased a continent. There is a forbidden land where that continent used to be. They call it the Demon Swallowing Abyss. So, a book that cannot open, and a boy who cannot grow, because the seal has been holding him at the first level for 5 years, which everyone including his father read as a lack of talent. When Qing Yang's strike had woken it up. 3,000 seals. They have to open one at a time. If they all release at once, he comes apart, and there is nothing in the entire small Sumeru world that can slow that down except a 9th rank pill or a 9th rank herb, neither of which exists here, which left one option, and it was ugly, and I hated it. There was a demonic fire in this city, exactly one. It was sitting in the chest of a 20-year-old alchemist who had been quietly dying of it for a month, and it was the only thing within 1,000 kilometers heavy enough to lean on a lock like that. I explained it to Zhang Yifeng twice, in detail, including the part where taking it out of him would leave him ordinary, no fire, no edge, no chance at the 4th rank before 40. He'd been carrying it for 10 years. He'd built his entire craft on top of it without ever once being able to say so out loud. He said, "Take it." I said, "Think about it." He said, "Teacher, I have been thinking about it since you told me what it was. Take it." So I took a top 13 demonic flame out of one boy's primal spirit and put it into another boy's chest in a corridor at 4 in the morning with a hole in the wall and a girl holding a lamp. It sat down on the Divine Demon 3000 seals like a hand on a door, 1 month, maybe 2, and then I turned around and formally accepted Zhang Yifeng as my 10th personal disciple. He did the 3 kneelings and the 9 kowtows on the flagstones of a corridor with a hole in the wall and 2 men bleeding in it, and when he got up I gave him his first gift, which was a sentence. "I will get you a demonic flame from the top 10, not a fragment. The origin." For context, the head of the Alchemist Guild of the entire small Sumeru world carries number 83. Then I fixed Shenmu Qing, 12 silver needles, in a sequence that has been lost since the Middle Ages, and which I happen to know because in my last life I collected things like that the way other people collect cups. He sat down on a stool in the yard and rolled his sleeves up and said, "How long has it been since anyone did this successfully?" "About 4,000 years. "And the failure rate?" "You don't want it." "I've had 25 years of wanting it," he said. "Start. The order matters more than the placement. That's the whole secret, and it's why the technique died." Get the sequence wrong and the accumulated pressure comes out through the wrong channel and takes the arm with it, wrist, inside of both elbows. The 4 points along the spine that nobody can reach on themselves, which is the other reason it died. Then the 2 at the base of the skull, which have to go in within the same breath. 25 years of blockage came out in about 4 minutes. It came out black, and it kept coming, and Shen Jingxuan had to leave the yard. He sat there afterward with his hands open on his knees and didn't speak for a while because 25 years of accumulated energy had just found somewhere to go, and inside a month it was going to carry him all the way to Giant Spirit Realm. Then he got down on one knee. 10 years of service. I said it and I meant, no. Master Ni. Not a servant, I said. A friend. Get up before I change my mind about both. He got up slowly and then stood there opening and closing his hands, testing something that had been broken for longer than I had been alive in this body. I keep waiting for it to hurt, he said. It won't. 25 years. Every morning the first thing I did on waking was check whether it had gotten worse overnight. He turned his palm over. Every morning. For 25 years. So check. He did. Then he sat down on the step of the Yang family courtyard at 45 years old and put his face in his hands, and I went inside and left him to it because there are things a man should be allowed to do without an audience. And in the same week, Lei Ling Mei awakened her primal spirit at 9 years old. I awakened mine at 9 in my last life too, and that was considered a once-in-a-generation event in the celestial realm, and I have never told her that, and I'm not going to. Everyone crowded into the yard to watch. The light came up around her, and it settled, and out of it stepped a rabbit, a pink rabbit, with a pink halo, and a faint smell of flowers. Shen Jingxuan got about 2 words out. Your spirit is a pink. Don't laugh, Ling Mei said, going scarlet. Please don't laugh. Everyone laughed. I didn't, because I was busy reading it, and the reading kept getting worse in the best possible way. 6th rank at minimum, possibly 7th. Flowing rainbow rabbit, which I had heard of exactly once, in a bestiary older than the empire we were standing in. For scale, Lin Huayue's phoenix, the thing an entire great family had sent a divine wheel cultivator across 2 provinces to verify, is 9th. A 6th rank primal spirit in a border town child is the kind of thing families go to war about, and its element was light. There are 9 elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth are common. Wind and thunder are 1 in 10,000. Light and dark are 1 in a million. I had thunder once, and thunder was considered the frightening one. Light is worse. Little sister, I said, over the laughing, you're going to be a cultivator without equal one day. I'd like that noted by everyone currently making noise. Then I'll protect you. She pushed the panda into my arms before I left. Take little Guai, she said very seriously. He's strong. He protected Meyer when they stole her. He's yours. He's better at protecting than I am. She pushed him further into my arms, which took effort because by then he was over 1 meter long and mostly opinion. Brother Lei Zhen goes to more dangerous places. Meyer, when I'm stronger than you, she said, you can give him back. And she said it the way you'd state a delivery date. The old poison seller had told me to come back, so I did, and he told me the truth about himself in 1 sentence. I used to be a 6th rank alchemist. Used to be. Somebody had taken it off him, and he'd been sitting in an illegal district of a 3rd rank empire for 20 years, for exactly one reason. Then he put a scroll on the counter and unrolled it, and it was alive, a magic fire chart. Drawn by an ancient divine alchemist who finished it and then died of finishing it, and it tracks the 100 strongest demonic fires in the world in real time, as they move, right now. It was broken into 100 pieces, Wu-Ren said. I have the 13th. There was a mark on it, and the mark was about 40 kilometers away. It's here, he said. In the Li Shan Mountains. In the Burial Cloud Abyss. The Burial Cloud Abyss is a mass grave. The whole Li Shan range was a battlefield in an ancient war between gods and demons, and the abyss is where the dead ended up, and it has been marinating in evil energy for 10,000 years. Plenty of people have gone in. Nobody has come out. Which a doomsday flame would consider an excellent neighborhood. So go and take it, I said. I can't. His jaw worked. There's a restriction over the abyss, 7th or 8th rank array logic. It crushes anything above myriad manifestation, and the stronger you are, the harder it crushes. So go in weak. I did. He looked at his own hands. 10 years ago, I drank forbidden pills for a month to roll myself back down to the 9th level of Primal Spirit, and I walked in, and the doomsday flame burned me on the way out. That's what took my 6th rank. I did the arithmetic, and I very nearly didn't say it. The spark that got away from it that day, I said. The one that ended up in a 10-year-old street beggar in the capital. Ho Ren put his head in his hands and made a sound I'm not going to describe. So what you need, I said, is somebody whose rank is low enough to get in and whose strike is heavy enough to matter once he's there. I have looked for that person for 10 years. He looked up. 4 days ago, I watched a boy lift a mountain out of the ground and drop it on an assassin. Then we haggled, and I want to say honestly that I enjoyed it more than anything else that month. He opened at 1/10 of the fire and expenses. I laughed at him for long enough to be rude, and then I explained his own position back to him, which is the only negotiating technique I have ever needed. You've had that chart for 20 years, I said. In 20 years, the fire has surfaced exactly once inside your reach, and it cost you a rank. You are 60-something years old, and you have found precisely one person in the world whose rank is low enough to walk into that basin and whose strike is heavy enough to matter once he's there, and he is sitting on the wrong side of your counter drinking your tea. There will be others. There will not be others, I said. There is no reason for me to exist. I'm a statistical accident. Whatever you're about to say next, ask yourself first how many years you'd have to wait for the next accident, and whether you'd still be able to lift the scroll when it got here. He sat down. Half, he said. Half the fire, I agreed. Everything else in that abyss is mine. And the chart. He opened at half the fire. I took half the fire, everything else in the abyss, and the chart. The chart is my life's. You'll have the fire. What do you need a map of fires for after that? What do you need it for after that? I want to take it apart, I said, and work out how it was made and build my own. Then I'll know where every fire in the world is. He agreed, because in 10 years he had found exactly one person who fit, and because he was old enough to know it. His assistant came in halfway through carrying a crate. He was the height of a 10-year-old, twice as wide, and about 70% beard, short, human race, a dwarf. 9th level of giant spirit realm, and under 100 years old, which for a dwarf means he had recently stopped being a teenager. I read both of those off him in a second and a half, which he found astonishing, and I did not tell him why. One of my 9 personal disciples had been a dwarf. You're a friend of the boss? Deng Lei said. Good. Introduce me to your fiancé. I'm 16. Then introduce me to your friend's fiancé. My friend is a man. A man is fine. He brightened enormously. Men have sisters. Men have cousins. I sat there and remembered that my dwarf disciple had had a newborn daughter the year I died, which would make her about 100 now, and I decided this was information nobody in that room needed. Elsewhere, on the same afternoon, 2 people were told I'd gone into the mountains. The Ice Prince went and recruited Wen Qingyang, and Chao Yong sent for Ren Qiuyue, who had healed, and gave her a 4th-rank burst yuan pill, enough to put her straight into Giant Spirit Realm, and a second contract on top of the first one. Kill the Ice Prince, he said, and make sure Lei Jin is holding the knife when they find him. I walked into those mountains openly, on the main path, in daylight, because I wanted to be followed. I had exactly one plan, and it was not subtle. Get every enemy I had into one valley at the same time and let the terrain do the sorting. Huo Ren's mental energy runs at 65, which gives him 5 clear kilometers, and he counted them off for me as we climbed. Assassin, Alone, North Ridge, 1 myriad manifestation, 9th on the east slope, and a group of 4 behind us, badly. How badly? They're arguing about the route. One of them keeps stopping to complain about his boots. That'll be a prince. Then he stopped walking. There are about 40 wolverines in the next ravine, he said. 3rd rank. They hunt as a pack, and each one is worth a myriad manifestation cultivator on his own. Deng Lei, who had been eating something the entire climb, stopped eating. Boss, he said, that's a normal reason to go around. Good, I said, and howled. Everyone within 30 meters flinched, including the panda. Here's a thing I never expected to use twice. In my first life, I commanded a legion of giant wolves for 11 years, and somewhere in year 3, I got bored of shouting at them through interpreters and started working out what the sounds actually meant. They have grammar, not much of it, but enough. And near the top of it there is a specific pitch, held for a specific length, that is only ever used by a wolf emperor, and only ever means one thing, which is, I am here, and this is mine. 40 3rd-rank beasts came out of the rocks on both sides of the ravine. Huo Ren went the color of paper. Deng Lei got behind Huo Ren. Zhang Yifeng, to his enormous credit, stayed exactly where he was and merely stopped breathing. The wolverines came down the slope at a flat run, and about 8 meters out the front rank put their heads down and stopped, and the ones behind them piled into the ones in front, and then the entire pack was standing in a ravine with their chins on the stones looking at a 16-year-old. How? Huo Ren said. Accent, I said. I walked them around the shoulder of the ridge, which took about 20 minutes and which I enjoyed more than I have enjoyed almost anything, and pointed them down a gully at 4 people who were still arguing about boots. Here's a thing I never expected to be useful twice. In my last life, I commanded a legion of giant wolves, and in the process, I spent 11 years working out what their sounds actually meant, and one of the things I learned is that a wolf pack has a specific frequency it uses for the wolf emperor. 43rd rank beasts came out of the rocks and put their heads down. I walked them around the ridge and pointed them at 4 people climbing a gully. Shadow Frost Ji, Wen Qingyang, Zhou Zekai, father of the Zhou Hongguang I'd killed, and Qin Yulong, who had personally put my sister in a sack. Your Highness, I said from the top of the ridge over the noise, that's the first gift. I have about 100 more. Then the real wolf emperor arrived. 5 meters at the shoulder, claws like billhooks, myriad manifestation 9th level, and it had come specifically to find out who was using its voice. Its first swipe nearly took the sword out of my hands, and a black and white ball came off my shoulder, landed on its skull, punched through the bone, and froze the whole head solid in one motion. I took the neck off in the half-second it was frozen. Then little Guai climbed down into the wreck, dug out a beast core the size of my fist, carried it back to me in his mouth, and sat down wagging. Huo Ren looked at the panda for a long time. That is not a pet, he said. No. The burial cloud abyss is a bowl in the mountains tens of kilometers across, filled to the rim with black fog, and standing at the edge of it feels like standing at the edge of a lung. I stepped through the restriction and felt it read me and decide I was beneath its notice. Behind me, 3 other people came in without noticing there was anything to notice. Then the ground stood up. I've been in a lot of bad places. I want to be clear that the burial cloud abyss is in the top 3, and that the other 2 were in a different world entirely. They came up out of the soil in a wave that started at the near rim and rolled to the far one, thousands of them, skeletons in armor 10,000 years out of fashion with white fire burning where the organs used to be. The fallen of a war between gods and demons, lying in a bowl in the mountains since before anybody in the small Sumeru world could write. And something had been down here waking them up one layer at a time for years, the way you'd work through a wine cellar. And above them, hanging on wings made of the same white fire, the ones who had been officers. Star power puts them down. That's the first thing I learned in that basin, and it was the only good news I got in the whole hour. Undead recoil off star power the way frost recoils off a stove. Not blocked, not resisted, simply undone, because whatever animates them is a borrowed pattern, and star power is the original. I killed about 200 of them in the first 8 minutes. It made no measurable difference at all. That is the thing about a mass grave. You cannot win an argument with arithmetic. There were 10,000 years of dead down there, and the fire had all night, so I stopped counting and started reading the ground instead. They came up in waves, not randomly. Waves, with gaps between them, and the gaps were exactly long enough for a man to think he'd finished. That's a schedule. Somebody was pacing them, which meant somebody down here could see us. Deng Lei killed roughly the same number in the same time with a hammer, having elected not to think about it, which I have come to believe is the correct dwarf approach to most problems. Ren Chuyue got up onto 9 pairs of black wings, and the restriction closed on her like a hand, because she was giant spirit now, and the restriction charges by rank. The Ice Prince's group had it worse. Qin Yulong died in the first 10 minutes, and his body did not fall over. It went to powder and blew away, and there was nothing left of the man who'd taken my sister at all. And then something happened that I had not planned for and did not like. Shadow Frost, Jai's primal spirit, started eating. Black water. Mystic ice, which had frozen a boy solid in a school arena, turned out to feed on the evil energy in that basin, and it fed hard. He went from 10,000 manifestations first level to myriad manifestation 9th in under an hour, standing in a mass grave, laughing. His own uncle-in-law grabbed his sleeve and begged for help. He shook him off and walked away. In his eyes, those men had always been dogs, and this was simply the first day it had been convenient to say so. At the center of the basin, 2 faces made of fire came up out of the ground. One white, one crimson, and I started laughing, which upset everyone. Those aren't the Doomsday Flame, I said. Those are 2 of its 3 clones. The faces stopped moving. Nobody knew that. Nobody in the world knew that. A top 13 demonic fire that had split off 3 independent bodies, and the largest and strongest of them, the purple one, was still with the original. Then Huo Ren got out his sealing scrolls, and I had to sit down on a rock. 5th rank, I said. You brought 5th rank scrolls. They cost me everything the white one needs a 7th. The crimson one needs an 8th. I put my face in my hands. 10 years of planning, old man. Fortunately, Star Souls suppressed demonic fire. Liu Yichisha tore the white clone into 7 pieces, and Huo Ren got a 5th rank scroll onto the largest one before it could pull itself together, which is the single luckiest thing that happened to anybody that day. Shadow Frost Jai tried to take it off him. I put him on the ground with one sword overturns the Jai, and then he stood up again. That's the part I want to be honest about, because it very nearly went the other way. He came out of the rubble at the 9th level of myriad manifestation, 4 whole steps above where he had been that morning. And he came at me with something I had never seen before and have not seen since. The black water, shaped into about 900 separate needles, each one turning on its own axis, filling the air between us like weather. I got sword 17 up. It bought me 2 seconds. In the third second, I understood that I was not going to win this, and that the restriction was the only thing in that basin with an opinion strong enough to change the outcome, and that he still had not noticed it existed. He'd been in a mass grave for 2 hours, getting stronger by the minute, and he had never once asked why his chest hurt. "Your Highness," I said, "do you know why you're breathing like that?" He told me to die. "You've come up 4 levels since you walked in here," I said, backing up. "And this whole basin is under a 7th rank restriction that charges by rank. When you came in, it barely noticed you. Right now, it is standing on you with both feet, and every single level you gain makes it heavier." For about a quarter of a second, I watched him do the arithmetic. That's all it took. A quarter of a second of a man realizing that the thing he had been celebrating for 2 hours was the thing killing him, and that he had eaten it voluntarily, and that he could not now put it down. Then the demonic fire he'd been gulping went off inside him. There was no body afterward. There was nothing to bury and nothing to accuse me with, and I have always thought that was the most elegant thing that ever happened on my behalf. Then I killed Zhou Zekai, who spent his last 30 seconds on his knees explaining that he was Qin Yetian's brother and Zhou Hongguang's father, as though either of those were arguments in his favor, and then Wen Qingyang, who I had genuinely offered a way out of that valley, twice. Neither of them ever understood that the reason they couldn't fight properly was that the sky was standing on them. The Crimson Clone put a Crimson Dragon net over me, 3rd rank spirit array, and it holds giant spirit realm cultivators, and I could not get out of it. And Ren Qiuyue, who had tried to kill me twice, who had put a feather through my shoulder in front of 400 people, swallowed a 4th rank burst yuan pill inside a restriction that punishes rank, which is suicide. She knew it was suicide. She did it anyway, and 40 meters of 9-winged dragon raven came up out of her and tore the net apart. Then she fell out of the sky, and I caught her. "Lei Zhen dies," she told me, from about 2 inches away, with blood coming out of her mouth. "By my hand, not somebody else's." "Fine," I said. "Get in line." She was already unconscious. And there was a silver pendant around her neck, and I had seen its twin exactly once, on a green-eyed boy in a valley outside Moyang City. Reverse Origin Netherblade tore the Crimson Clone apart, and Huo Ren's 5th rank scroll split down the middle, and the fire started gathering itself back together. Then a man in a green mask stepped into the gap. He wanted the scroll, and he was walking around inside a 7th rank restriction without the slightest discomfort because he was wearing a 3rd rank spirit formation robe. His primal spirit came out as a 6-armed fury of an ape, 5th rank. "Take her and go," I told Huo Ren. "Now. Lei Zhen, Danks in Pavilion. I'll be waiting with the chart." Then I took the man's mask off with a sword strike. Xie Longwei, the vice president's brother, the man who had broken Shenmu Qing's meridians 25 years ago and laughed about it in a plaza, and behind me, the Crimson Clone had nearly finished reassembling itself, and I had no scroll, no seal, and no way to hold it, so I let the coffin out. For the first time in this life, I released the Chaos Origin coffin into the open air, crystal, immaculate, with its own private current of space turning slowly around it. Xie Longwei's face did something I will remember with pleasure until I die again. "Your primal spirit," he said, "is a coffin." The lid opened into a vortex and swallowed the Crimson Clone whole, and then I found out what that costs. For about 4 minutes, I stood in the middle of a mass grave while a top 13 demonic fire beat on the inside walls of my own soul. I want to describe this accurately because I have been asked about it since, and I have always lied. It is not like being burned. Being burned is a thing that happens to a surface, and a surface can be repaired, and while it is happening, you remain a person who is being burned. This was not on a surface. There was a fire inside the place where I keep the part of me that has opinions, and it was looking for the door, and every time it found a wall, it hit the wall. I have been stabbed through the heart by my own wife. That was quicker, and I have thought about it less. I went down on one knee, and then both, and Xie Longwei stood 12 meters away in a green mask and watched me do it, and did not come closer, which is the only reason he lived another 4 minutes. I did not black out. Not out of strength, out of spite, which in my experience is considerably more reliable. Then the vortex finished digesting it, and something in the dark said, "Chaos 9 transformations, born from nothingness, Chaos Primal Embryo, awakening." There was an embryo hanging inside my coffin. A whole world's worth of chaos, curled up, the size of a fist, turning slowly, and the Crimson Clone of a doomsday flame had just gone into it as food, which is when I understood that the coffin was never my primal spirit. The coffin is the container. Whatever is growing inside that embryo is the actual answer, and I had been carrying a box for months without ever asking what the box was for. 8th level of Primal Spirit, 256 stars. Then I turned around and dealt with the man who had watched me open it. He hit me for 300,000 jin with 6 fists at once, sand collapse, and I went backward through a hill. Then I used a star soul called Dragon Arm, and my right arm went to scale and claw from the shoulder down, and I hit him once, 25 years late, but it counted. We searched that basin for 2 days and found nothing. No fire, no trail, which meant it had gone down, into rock, where a chart drawn 10,000 years ago couldn't follow it in real time. At the bottom of the central sinkhole there was a mound of ash, and when I sifted it I understood what I was looking at and had to walk away for a minute. Scrolls, several thousand of them, ancient martial manuals out of a war between gods and demons, burned deliberately before the fire moved out. No cultivator in his right mind burns a manual, not a bad one, not a duplicate, not ever. Only a fire would do that, and only to make sure nobody who came after got anything. 2 things survived. The first was a flower. I nearly missed it. It was 3 meters down in the ash, and the only reason I looked twice was that the ash immediately around it was the wrong color, paler and dry, where everything else was packed and greasy. 9th rank, a Huanhua blood lotus, half grown, roots into the ash. I grew one of those once. It took me 10 years, and then I gave it to Jiang Huiyin as a token of what I felt for her, about 8 months before she put her hand through my chest. Their love, like the blood lotus, ended in blood. I've had 100 years to come up with something better than that, and I never have. But it told me the whole plan in one look. A demonic fire has no flesh. That's its ceiling. It can be terrifying and it can be ancient, and it will never be more than a fire because power without a body eventually stops scaling. The doomsday flame had been growing a 9th rank divine lotus to condense itself a body, and I had walked into the middle of the process about 2/3 of the way through and taken 2 of its 3 clones off the board, and now it had gone underground with an unfinished body and a very specific grudge. The second survivor was under the ash, a bone tablet tens of thousands of years old with a technique cut into it. Guangfeng Jiue Jue, the technique of clear wind and bright moon. Written by an ancient woman named Jiyu, unranked, and I'd put it at heaven grade or above by feel. 2 elements, light and wind, which is, to the letter, a pink rabbit. I sat in a mass grave holding a technique built 10,000 years ago for a 9-year-old girl who currently could not pronounce Guangfeng and thought, whatever else this world is, it is not random. Outside the mountains, the Imperial Guard had been looking for a missing prince for 3 days. Qin Yetian was there, and so was the Empress, in a black traveling cloak with her hood down, making a noise I could hear from a tree 40 meters away. Who killed my heir? Who killed my son? I dropped out of the tree in front of them and bowed. Your Majesty, I said. Thank you for not wishing me dead. As you can see, I'm perfectly well. She stopped mid-sentence. Who's your heir? I said. Oh, the Ice Prince. My apologies. I wasn't aware I'd been hired as the Imperial family's nursemaid. She came off the ground at me, and I turned her strike with raw sword chi and left her standing in the road. Qin Yetian, I said, on the way past. Get a hold of her before she bites somebody. First the son, now the mother. Is it the whole family? And Qin Yetian, this is the only moment in the entire affair when I respected him, took his sister by the arm and told her the truth. Let it go, he said. He is past us. We are not his equals. She pulled free and went looking for someone who would do it for her. Huo Ren did not come back. He was supposed to be at Dangsan Pavilion within a day. He wasn't there on the 2nd, and he wasn't there on the 3rd, and by the 4th, I had stopped pretending to myself that this was about a slow horse. Ren Xingjiao brought him in on the 5th, carrying him. The sect had put more than 20 assassins around the burial cloud abyss. Ren Xingjiao had recognized the old man, taken him off them, and then spent 2 days and 2 nights losing his own people in the mountains, which made him, as of that week, a traitor to the Bloodbat sect. There was a woman, he said. He was carrying a woman. They took her, Huo Ren said from the ground. Ren Xingjiao asked what she looked like, and I told him about the pendant, and I watched a 15-year-old boy come apart in front of me. I had to have Deng Lei knock him unconscious, physically, with a fist. He woke up an hour later, entirely calm, which was worse. I'm going to the Fengqin Empire, he said. I'll be back in a month. He didn't explain. He didn't have to. Fengqin is a 2nd-rank empire with a Tang family branch in it, and he was going to go and ask the largest family in the world for help, and I had a fairly good idea of who he'd end up asking. Huo Ren kept his half of the bargain and gave me the chart, and then he added something I hadn't asked for, a purple dragon beard, the same 7th-rank herb I'd traded him for the Star Soul Stone, back again. For your fat friend, he said. It'll hold the seals a while longer. The chart's glow had dimmed, which is bad news dressed as good news. It meant the flame's new body was setting properly, and the mark had moved. Tianluo City, a border town at the junction of 3 2nd-rank empires, which makes it the most dangerous place within 1,000 kilometers, which makes it the safest possible address for something that is hiding. I did the arithmetic on the way down the mountain. 3 months. In 3 months, a doomsday flame in a fresh body will cross 3 great realms, and once it does that, the chart won't be able to see it at all. So, 3 months. He gave me one more thing at the gate, a black token, 6 gold tongues of flame on the back, and an invitation. Danwu City. 6 weeks. The Great Assembly of the Pill Dao. He watched my face. 3 second-rank empires. Alchemists under 25. The prize is a Dangson Soul Stone. No. You haven't heard the... I'd be a grown man punching an infant, I said. It's undignified. You are 16. I am 116, and I have been an 8th-rank alchemist for 80 of them, and you are asking me to go and outbrew a room full of talented children in front of an audience. I handed him back his tea. There's no version of that where I come out of it looking well. He looked profoundly disappointed, which I enjoyed, and then he said the thing he had actually been building toward for the entire conversation. The Dangson Soul Stone can hold a demonic flame. I stopped in the doorway. For how long? Indefinitely, Huo Ren said. That's what it's for. That's the only thing it's for. It has been the prize at that assembly for 200 years, and not one alchemist who ever won it has had the faintest idea what they were holding, and every 3 years another one takes it home and puts it on a shelf. I stood in that doorway for a while. 6 weeks, I said. 6 weeks. I'm still not entering. Of course not, he said, and went back to his ledger, and neither of us believed a word of it. Back in the palace, the Emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire refused his wife's demand for vengeance, and then he made the last mistake of his life, which was telling her the truth. He became what he was because of you, he said. You put him in the Blood Bat sect. You did it when he was 11. Don't stand in my hall and grieve at me. So she poisoned him. 2 men came out of the dark behind her afterward. The first was Wu Yuanjian, president of the Alchemist Guild, who had turned because the emperor had taken the princess's treatment away from him and handed it to a 20-year-old. The second one pulled his hood back. I've been told what Chao Yong's face looked like. His skin was eaten through in patches, and there were 2 dark holes where his nose should have been, and he had done it to himself deliberately, over years, by feeding corpse worms with his own blood. 25 years ago, the Gao family was one of the first families of the capital. Chao Yong took a woman the emperor wanted. For that, the emperor had the entire clan put down. 413 people, 42 of them were infants. 1 person survived, and it was the one who'd caused it. He was 30 years old. He had been the 3rd son of a good house and had never done anything harder than choosing badly. And then in one night, everyone he had ever eaten a meal with was gone, and it was, unarguably, his fault. What a person does with that is the whole story. Most of them drink. Some of them become monks. He went into the mountains and found a technique that turns a man into a farm for corpse worms, and he read it, and he understood exactly what it would cost, and he started that same week. 25 years. Every single day of it being eaten from the inside, on purpose, at a rate he controlled, because the technique only works if you stay conscious for it. I have known a great many people who wanted revenge. Almost all of them wanted it the way you want dinner. Cao Yong wanted it the way a river wants the sea, and he had spent a quarter of a century rebuilding himself into something shaped like the shortest route. Mercy, the emperor said. Did you think about mercy, Cao Yong said, when you were doing the 42? Wu Yuanjian had been standing at the empress's shoulder for the whole conversation, and I am told his face during that speech was the face of a man doing accounts in his head at speed. He had come into that room believing he was the 3rd party in a coup. He worked out somewhere around the word infants that he was the 4th item on a list. Then Cao Yong turned around and put his hand through Wu Yuanjian's chest. You were on the list of names that night, he said to a man who had betrayed his empire about 30 minutes earlier. Did you think I wouldn't have kept it? The corpse demon curse takes 15 days. The worms eat the mind first, and the body keeps working, and at the end of it, the emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire would walk into his own throne room and hand the crown to his wife in front of the entire court in a clear, calm voice. He tried to kill himself that night and found that he couldn't even do that. Sometimes even death is something you have to ask permission for. By morning, the Blood Bat sect held every entrance to the palace quietly, and nobody outside the walls knew anything had happened. 15 days. 10 days later, in the yard of the Yong family estate, my 9-year-old sister broke Shen Jingshuan's best technique with one hand. Snake dance on the azure waves, 49 sword shadows in a curtain of water. The move that had forced a 9th-level Primal Spirit cultivator to spend a killing technique in a public arena. Ling Mei stepped inside it, put her palm out, and said, "Wind's trace," and the whole curtain came apart like a cobweb in a doorway. She was at the 1st level of Primal Spirit. Shen Jingshuan was at the 4th. I give up, Shen Jingshuan said, sitting down on the flagstones. Meyer, I said, come here, let's find out which is stronger, your Wind's Trace or my Sword Chi. I'd had a productive 10 days myself. 9th level of Primal Spirit, 512 stars, over 300,000 Jin, 2 more star souls carved, and the totem on the star origin stone had started to show an edge, not the whole shape. An edge, one clean boundary. thousands of stars long, and the beginning of a curve I could follow with my eye. Then I broke through to myriad manifestation realm, which means one thing above all others. Your primal spirit materializes. It stops being a phantom hanging next to you and becomes an object in the world, with weight and edge that other people have to deal with. That single change is why Lei Yuanju could hold a courtyard alone against 40 men in Moyang. It's the whole difference between a threat and a fact. I had been looking forward to it for 2 months for a reason I hadn't said out loud to anybody, which was that I wanted to find out what a materialized coffin was actually for. It hurt more than it should have, and it took me a few seconds to understand why. The chaos primal embryo was cracking at the same time. Something came out of it. It was about the size of my 2 hands. It was crimson. It had a very large head, enormous eyes, 2 small red fangs sticking out over its lower lip, 2 black and red horns, and a pair of folded wings. It blinked at me. Then it tilted its head to one side, all the way over, the way a dog does when you say a word it almost knows. Then it fell off the edge of the coffin, landed on its back, and had to work out how wings go. I had been waiting for a monster. I had, at various points during the last 4 minutes of agony, been actively looking forward to a monster. Damn it, I said, you came out of a chaos embryo. Is your primary talent being adorable? And the domain said, 9 extremes chaos beast, containing the body of 9 extremes, devouring heaven's soul, descending upon the world. I stopped breathing. Let me explain what those 2 sentences actually mean, because it took me most of a night to accept them. The 9 extreme beast is not a species. There has only ever been one. It was mine, and when I awakened it at 9 years old, the celestial realm spent a decade arguing about what it implied. It is a 9th rank supreme. It stood beside me at every battle of my first life, and Li Twilight Great Emperor personally destroyed it after they killed me, specifically so that nothing of it would remain. That's the first half. The second half is that the thing which came out of that embryo is not a copy of it. It's that, plus the devouring heaven soul of a 900 billion point star origin stone, grown together inside a coffin over 4 months. I did not get my old primal spirit back. I got a better one, and it was currently trying to eat my thumb, because the 9 extreme beast was my primal spirit in my last life, 9th rank, supreme. There were emperors in the celestial realm who went pale at the name, and this was that, plus the devouring heaven soul of the star origin stone, welded together and grown from nothing inside a coffin. It was an improved version of the spirit I had carried as a god of war. It sneezed. And at that exact moment, across every world at once, something happened that I did not find out about for a very long time. A wave went out of me, not out of the courtyard, not out of the city, out of the world, in every direction at once, through walls and mountains and the space between one place and the next, and it did not slow down when it ran out of world. Every cultivator above Yuanling realm in the small Sumeru world felt their soul shiver. In Zhumi spirit capital, 3 prodigies looked up from what they were doing. Man in sealed cultivation coughed blood without knowing why. Chao Yong in a palace cellar, Wei Han in a mountain, Shenmu Qing in a courtyard, all in the same second. And in the celestial god domain, in a valley that had been sealed since the beginning of the world, the heaven-opening sacred stone split in half. That stone is the stone of destiny. It has stood since the world was made. No heavenly emperor in the entire history of the heavens has ever put a scratch on it. I have had a long time to think about what that morning looked like from up there, and the part I keep coming back to is not the crack. It's that 9 people who had not stood in the same place in 400 years all arrived inside an hour without being summoned from 9 different directions, because every one of them had felt the same thing at the same moment, and every one of them had privately decided it was probably nothing. Ziwei Great Emperor went first, because he always went first. He carries the purple extreme demon eyes, which sit 3rd on the list of the 10 innate heterochromatic eyes, and which are generally described in the heavens as the end of any argument about seeing things. He looked into the fracture for a long time. There's no cause, he said. There is always a cause. Then it isn't in this valley, he said, and it isn't in this world, and it did not happen at a time I can reach. Which is the most frightened sentence I have ever heard attributed to that man. The 9 heavenly emperors came down into that valley within the hour, all 9, including the Li Twilight Great Emperor, who had watched his daughter murder me on my wedding night and then told her to take my sword. The first among them is the Snow Emperor, a half-god, the only cultivator at the peak of the heavenly emperor realm, and the closest thing that world has to a final authority. He unrolled the great technique of divination over the broken stone, and coughed blood, a half-god, reading a rock, and it cost him blood. He got 8 words out of it. Chaos has descended upon the world. All spirits submit. Then he straightened up and gave one order. Nobody comes into this valley. Nobody learns that the stone of destiny has cracked. Because if that got out, the divine realm would tear itself apart inside a month. From today, Cadian Valley is the first forbidden land of the divine realm. And Li Twilight Great Emperor stood at the edge of the fracture and did not say what he had recognized in that wave, because saying it out loud would have been insane. The aura of the Nine Extreme Beast, the primal spirit of the first war god of the heavens, the man he had personally arranged to have killed, whose body he had personally destroyed 100 years ago. Impossible, he said quietly, to a broken stone. I burned it myself. He did not sleep well after that. I'm told it went on for years. I knew none of this. I was sitting on the floor of a merchant's courtyard in a third-rank empire holding a small red animal that had just tried to eat my thumb. The coffin had materialized. 1,024 stars were lit. My strength had nearly doubled. And little Guai, a Pixiu, direct kin to the divine dragon, an extinct species with a heavenly emperor's ceiling, took one look at the new arrival and backed into a corner. I have never seen that panda frightened of anything. He once bit a wolf emperor's skull open for the exercise. The little red thing unfolded a pair of meter-wide wings, flew across the courtyard, landed next to him, and patted him on the head with one paw until he stopped shaking. Then the panda purred and went to sleep. And I sat there with a cold feeling going up my spine because primal spirits do not do that. Primal spirits do not comfort other animals. Primal spirits do not make decisions. A primal spirit is an extension of its owner. It doesn't have opinions about the room. This one had walked across a courtyard and consoled somebody. You need a name, I said. It looked up. You need a name, I said again. And before you object, I'd like you to consider that the alternative is my sister naming you, and she has already named a Pixiu Little Weird. It considered this. Xiaoju, I said. Little 9. It shook its head violently and waved both paws. You don't get a vote. More waving. It actually put both paws over the top of its own head, which I chose to interpret as a formal objection. Xiaoju. It turned its back on me. Silence is agreement. It made a noise like a kettle, flew up into the eaves, and sulked there for the better part of an hour, and came down only when Ling Mei arrived with something edible, which is how I learned that my primal spirit could be bribed. I want to record my emotional state accurately, because it is not the state I expected to be in on the day I reached Myriad Manifestation Realm. I felt like I had just given birth. That same night, 2 men came out of sealed cultivation early with blood on their mouths, because of a wave that had gone through the world at midnight and knocked on everything. Shenmu Qing came out at the 3rd level of Giant Spirit Realm, and Cheng Yuan Jian came out at the 5th level of Primal Spirit, with 20 of his 3,000 seals open, having not moved a single level in 5 years. His father found him in the corridor and did not say anything for quite a long time. 2 days later, the heir to the throne knelt outside the Yang family gate. He was not alone. Qin Yetian, commander of the Imperial Guard, knelt beside him, in uniform, in the street. My father is going to name my mother Emperor, Shadow Frost Li said, in 11 days. The palace is already theirs, every gate, every corridor. I looked at the man beside him because that was the interesting part. And you, I said. You watched me kill your son's cousin, your brother, and your eldest boy. Why are you on your knees at my gate? He didn't dress it up, which I appreciated. Because I found out who Tao Yang is, he said. He's the last of the Gao clan. And the man who put the Gao clan down 25 years ago on the emperor's order was my father. There it is. Once the Lan family are finished, he said, we're next. There's no version of this where the Qin family survives Chao Yong, so he'd sold his dead son for a chance at a live family, and he'd done the sums cleanly, and I disliked him more for that than for anything else he'd ever done to me. Name your price, the crown prince said. Anything the throne has. 1 city. Which? Tianluo City. Cut out of the empire entirely. No governor, no tax, no imperial writ. Mine. He agreed before I finished the sentence because he was 18 and desperate and had no idea he was handing over the one place in the world where a demonic fire was quietly growing itself a body. Then we counted what we had, which took about 4 seconds and was depressing. Cao Yong was at the 5th level of Great Spirit. He had roughly 40 assassins at Myriad Manifestation 9th and several hundred ordinary ones. We had Shenmu Qing at Giant Spirit 3rd, Wei Han at 3rd, Cheng Ren Guang at 1st, Qin Yetian at 1st, and me. That is not a force. That's a delegation. And the one person in that empire who could have simply walked in and settled it, the dean, the only true origin cultivator in the country, had disappeared from Lishan Yun Academy 4 days before any of this started, and nobody knew where she'd gone. Everyone in that room started talking about defensive positions. No, I said. We attack tonight. Silence. They outnumber us 8-1, Wei Han said reasonably. Yes, and in 11 days they'll outnumber us 8-1 and hold a legitimate throne, and every soldier in this empire will be theirs by law. I put a finger on the map. A weak man who runs loses the only thing he has, which is the enemy's uncertainty about him. A weak man who hits first, at the closest possible range, at the worst possible moment, sometimes wins. That's not bravado. That's the entire content of about 90 years of commanding armies, and it fits on a card. Then I laid it out, and it took 4 minutes, and nobody interrupted after the first one. Their whole arrangement runs on time. They need 11 more days of the emperor breathing to make the succession legal, which means for 11 days they cannot afford a single thing to happen in public. That's not a strength. That's a leash, and they're wearing it, and we aren't. They still outnumber. They outnumber us in a field. Nobody is going to a field. I put a finger on the palace plan. 40 assassins in a walled compound with 9 internal courtyards is not 40 assassins. It's about 6, 4 times, in the dark, in corridors they have to hold, and we don't. Seal the city gates. Not to keep them out, to keep them in. No reinforcements, and no retreat. I looked at Qin Yetian. Your guard clears the palace from the inside, and we're taking the fat boy. Everyone objected at once. He's the only person in this city, I said, who can see an assassin who doesn't want to be seen. Not your commander, not me. Him. Because a god-demon blood scroll doesn't fight, it perceives. That was the entire reason a boy with no cultivation had been able to spot Ren Xingzhou in a crowded room when his own father couldn't. That night, 3 shapes went over the palace wall, me, Shen Muqing, and Wei Han. What they sent at us first were not people, cadaver goo puppets, myriad manifestation 9th, and you cannot kill them, because cutting them apart is not an argument they recognize. Wei Han took one in half at the waist, and the 2 halves found each other and stood up. Wei Han worked that out in about 40 seconds and said so, at volume. They don't stop. Lei Zhen, they do not stop. I have taken this one apart 4 times. I know. Then what do? We keep walking, I said. They're not here to win. They're here to make us spend everything before we reach the man who's holding the leash. So we don't spend anything. Take the head off. Step over. Keep walking. That is much easier to say in a courtyard than it is to do in one. We did it for 11 minutes. Take the head. Step over. Keep walking. Do not look back at the thing you just stepped over, because it is already getting up, and looking will cost you the next one. Wei Han was faster than me. Shen Muqing was steadier. I was the only one of the 3 who had done this before, in another life, against the man who invented it, and I was the one whose hands were shaking. 11 minutes. It was the longest stretch of time I have spent in either life. And in the second rank of them, walking with the same empty stride as the rest, was Ren Qiuyue. Her eyes were open. There was nothing in them. Her own godfather had taken the girl he raised from 6 years old and turned her into a puppet because she had failed him once and because she was efficient. Wei Han took her arm off at the shoulder to make a point about the futility of it, and the arm grew back. I stopped enjoying the evening at that point. So I did the one thing you can do to a man like Cao Yang, which is tell him his own secret out loud in front of his subordinates. You feed corpse worms with your own blood, I said across the courtyard. That's what your face is. You've been eaten from the inside every day for 25 years, and you've learned to like it. And one day, fairly soon, the technique is going to finish and you're going to become one of these things yourself, standing in a row, waiting for orders. The puppets kept coming. The 40 assassins behind them did not. How? Cao Yang said. Because I fought the man who invented that curse for 3 days and 3 nights, I said, and you have about a 9th of it. The Corpse Demon Lord is one of the 9 demon lords of the 9 netherworlds. His corpse demon body was tens of thousands of chi tall, and everything under it died and stayed dead for a generation. Cao Yang had a very good copy of a very small piece of him. He let his own corpse demon body out. 100 meters of it came up out of a palace courtyard, and the roofline disappeared behind it, and the torches along the eastern colonnade went out in a row as it rose, one after another, like somebody walking down a hall closing doors. To grow that thing, Cao Yang had destroyed his own primal spirit, deliberately, at 40 years old, which is roughly equivalent to a man cutting off his own legs to make room for wheels, and then he had fed the thing that replaced it the primal spirits of 200 cultivators. I know exactly what 200 is, because he told me the number himself, in the tone of a man giving his year's harvest. The first strike came down at me out of a sky I couldn't see anymore. It should have killed me. It killed the courtyard. 40 meters of flagstone, a wall, a granary, and a well went away in one motion and left a bowl in the ground with steam coming out of it. Flame Demon armor took the rest. I want to say something about that star soul because I had carved it in 5 days in a locked room, and I had spent the whole time resenting it for being defensive. It held 100-meter corpse demon body's full strike on a 16-year-old at the first level of myriad manifestation, and it cracked doing it, and it held. Never resent the armor. That's free advice from a man who has died once. And out at the gate, something happened that I only heard about afterward and would have paid money to see. Shen Muqing cut a cadaver goo puppet in half, and it started to reassemble, and Cheng Yuanjian stepped up and put one of his 3,000 seals on it. It stayed down. Who said my son was useless? Cheng Renguang bellowed, at a courtyard full of assassins in the middle of a battle. My son is a genius without equal. 5 years of listening to his own trading partners make jokes, and he got it all out in one night. Then the two of them worked out the rhythm. Father cuts, son seals. And every puppet Yuan Jian sealed fed something back into that book, and the seals kept coming open one at a time, all night, like a lock turning. In the courtyard, I used 3 star souls simultaneously for the first time and discovered they were a set. Flame Demon Armor, Flame Demon Spear, and Owl Bone Demon Flame, which comes out as a net of burning skulls. Chao Yong laughed at me from 100 meters up. Ants shaking a tree, he said. Then his right arm burned off to the shoulder, and the fire started walking up the joint like a black snake made of skulls, and he stopped laughing and cut his own arm away at the shoulder to stop it spreading. Shen Muqing came in under him with Mo Knife No Edge. Wei Han came in over him with Xuan Shuang Yuezhan. The corpse demon body came apart between them. Chao Yong got most of one last question out. Lei Zhen. Who are you? I closed it with a finger. Sorry, I said. I'd rather not say. And I want to record why, because it wasn't cruelty and it wasn't theater. He had spent 25 years turning himself into a weapon aimed at one family, and he had actually hit it. He got his 413 back. The house that ordered it is gone, and the man who signed it died under a hall 2 courtyards away, and by any reckoning, Cao Yong won. The only thing left to take off him was the answer to the last question he ever asked, so I took it. The body ran out into the flagstones, and the worms died within a minute of losing him. The emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire died that night as well, under a collapsing hall, and there was not enough left of him to identify. I would like to say I felt something about that. He'd chosen his son over my sister in a public hall, and I had told him at the time that I don't forget things like that. And I don't. We spent the next 2 days taking a corpse puppet technique off a 14-year-old. It is not surgery. There is no clever needle sequence for it, because the thing anchoring a cadaver goo puppet is not in the meridians, it's in the space where a person keeps their own opinion of themselves, and the only way to get it out is to burn the anchor and hope what's left underneath still knows its own name. Zhang Yifeng did the decoction. Shen Jingxuan sat with her for both nights. My sister brought a blanket every 4 hours whether one was needed or not, and by the second morning there were 6 blankets on that bed, and nobody had the heart to remove any of them. 3 days later, Ren Qiuyue opened her eyes. The first thing I noticed was that they were clear, not clear as in awake, clear as in new. A 14-year-old assassin who had killed more people than she could count woke up with the eyes of something 4 hours old. Where am I? She said. Who am I? She remembered exactly one thing in the entire world. Ren Xingzhao, she said. I remember Ren Xingzhao. Is he here? Shen Jingxuan and Ling Mei had rehearsed for this all morning, and they said their line in unison and slightly too loudly. We're your friends. Do I have family? She asked. Does anyone know where I'm from? Shen Jingxuan looked at me. My sister looked at the floor. Somebody does, I said. He's about a week out. He's 15, he's extremely rude, and he spent 8 years walking toward the front door of the worst organization in this world on the theory that you were somewhere behind it. Is he nice? No, I said. He's stubborn, which is better. Rest, I told her. 13 is coming for you. He's been coming for 8 years. She thought about that for a while. Was I a good person? She said. Before. 4 people in that room found somewhere else to look. You were 6 years old when somebody took you, I said. Everything after that was done to you by adults who knew exactly what they were doing. That isn't an answer. No, I agreed. It's the only honest one you're getting today. Ask me again in a year. And privately, watching her fall asleep with no idea what she'd been, to lose a memory like that might be the only real mercy anybody in this story has been shown. Somewhere in a mountain range 2 provinces away, Lin Hua Yue was doing whatever the Mo family did with people like her. Wait for me, I thought. I'm coming. Boss. Cheng Yuanjian in the doorway delighted. You've gone soft in the face. You're in love. Idiot, I said. It's my first love. There's a difference. Shadow Frost Li was crowned 11 days later, and he brought the seal of Tianluo City to the Yong estate personally, and then he stood there holding it and sweating. There's a difficulty, he said. Go on. The Fengqian Empire has made an offer for Tianluo, 2nd rank, 10 times our strength. He swallowed. They're offering 12 cities for it. I let that sit for a moment. You're afraid of offending Fengqian, I said. I understand that. Yes. And offending me? How does that rank? He gave me the seal. It took the Fengqian Empire 4 days to send someone. They came into the Yang family estate through the front door and threw the body of the head of the household guard down on the step in front of us, Wang Cheng, who had been polite to me every single morning for 2 months. The man giving orders was a head shorter than a normal man, carried a folding fan, and had 4 arms, 2 where you'd expect them, 2 more below those, thinner, longer, with the fan in one of them, Kun Xuanying. 3rd Prince of the Fengqin Empire. That was your gate captain, he said, indicating the body with the fan. He asked me to wait outside. Now, the seal of Tianluo City. I'm told a child has it. I have it. He looked at me properly for the first time and did not adjust anything about his expression. Then hand it over, and I'll only take the estate. No. Kill all of them, he told his people, without any change in tone at all. Leave nobody. I have found, over 2 lifetimes, that there is no better answer to a sentence like that than the same sentence. Kill all of them, I said. Leave nobody. Forearms stopped moving. That was the point. Not bravado. Information. Everything that man knew about this estate came from a report written by somebody who had counted our ranks, and none of it explained a boy repeating an execution order back at a second-rank empire's prince in a courtyard with a body in it. I watched him rebuild his afternoon from scratch, and I watched him arrive at the wrong answer, which was that I was bluffing. And then Shen Muqing came home. He'd been away for 2 weeks, and he came back at the 4th level of Great Spirit, and he came back with a blade heart. The Fengqin delegation lasted about 90 seconds. Bao Jian at Giant Spirit 3rd, his son. 2 more. The prince himself got out under a covering rain of poisoned silver needles, which was the first competent thing anyone from that empire did all day. Small fish, I said, watching him go. Let him swim. Then I turned to the new emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire, who had gone the color of paper. Tianluo sits on your border, I said. If Fengqin marches, they come through me first. I'll be your shield. Don't ever make me remind you of it. There was one more thing to settle before we left. Shen Muqing had killed Zilongbo that week, went to the academy alone, walked into the vice president's office, and came out an hour later, and Zilongbo had given up the client's name on the way out. Zuo Yu Hai Hai, master of the Huashan sect. Here's the shape of the world, which I'd been assembling for months out of scraps. The 3,000 small worlds are divided into 4 regions. We were in the Nanshan region. And in Nanshan there are 2 powers that sit above every first-rank empire in it, the Huashan sect and the Chengkun Palace. Shen Muqing sat down on a step and put his hands over his face. Even if I reach divine wheel, he said, even then, I'll never touch him. I've spent 25 years walking toward a wall. 25 years, he said again, mostly to himself. I taught myself the blade twice, because they broke the first version of me. I have gotten up at the same hour every morning since I was 21 years old, and the answer at the end of it is a name I'm not allowed to say in public. Shen Muqing. Even if I reach divine wheel, he said, even if I live to be 400E, the Huashan sect sits above every first-rank empire in this region. I could spend 3 lifetimes and never get inside the front gate. That's true. Then don't. I give you my word, I said. 3 years. In 3 years, the Huashan sect will not exist in the 3,000 small worlds. He looked up at me for a long moment. Master Ni, he said carefully, are you from one of the 4 great families? No. Then how? And I don't think much of the 4 great families either, I said. Which was, technically, entirely true, and which I enjoyed more than I should have, because the head of the greatest of the 4 is my youngest disciple, and he doesn't know it yet. Cheng Yuanjian came to find me the night before we left, which I had been expecting for about a week. My father says I should stay. He's right. He says the Chamber of Commerce is a real position, and I'd be a fool to walk away from it at 15. He was talking to his own hands. He says you're going to a city with no laws in it, and there's a very good chance nobody comes back. He's right about that too. So why do you keep looking at me like you've already packed my bag? Because there are 3,000 seals on your Primal Spirit, I said, and a demonic fire holding them shut, and about 2 months before that stops working. Whatever happens to you next is going to happen wherever you're standing. You may as well be standing somewhere interesting. He thought about that for a while. That is the worst comfort anyone has ever offered me. It's not comfort, it's a schedule. He stood in the doorway, a while longer. 5 years, he said. 5 years of being the joke in every room my father walked into, and then one night I sealed 9 corpse puppets in a courtyard, and he shouted about it so loudly that people 2 streets away complained. He rubbed his face. And the thing is, boss, I haven't got any better. I've got exactly 20 of 3,000 locks open. I'm still the worst fighter in this house. You're the only person in this house who can see an assassin who doesn't want to be seen. That's not fighting. No, I agreed. It's worth more. He came. We left for Tianluo City the next morning. My sister, Shen Muqing, Shen Jingshuan, Ren Qiuyue, Cheng Yuanjian, and Zhang Yifeng. 4 months earlier, I had been a corpse on a bed in another world with my wife's hand still on my chest. Now I had a city with no laws in it, a doomsday flame growing itself a body somewhere underneath that city, a chart that would go blind in 90 days, a 15-year-old with 3,000 locks on his soul and about 2 months of fuse, a 14-year-old assassin with no memory sleeping in the second cart, a 9-year-old with an element that shows up once in a million people, and a coffin with a small red animal asleep in it that had, without either of us noticing, cracked the stone of destiny in a valley I used to walk past when I was a god. Somewhere up there, 9 heavenly emperors were standing around a broken rock deciding what to tell the rest of the heavens. One of them already knew. He'd recognized the aura the moment it went through him, and he'd looked at 8 colleagues and said nothing at all, because there is no sane way to say it out loud. The 9 extreme beast is awake. I burned that thing myself. I stood over the body and I made sure. He is not going to sleep properly again, and he's right not to, because I know his daughter's name, and I know his, and I have 100 years of quiet to make up for. There's one more thing, and then I'll stop. 4 months ago, I woke up in a body that couldn't lift a bucket, in a hall where every adult present had decided in advance to let a child be carried off, and the only person in that room who did anything was 9 years old and bit somebody. Since then, I have taken a city, buried an emperor, put a fire in one boy, and taken a lock off another, and made a promise to a swordsman about a sect 3 provinces away that I fully intend to keep. But I want to be clear about what I'm actually doing because the story sounds like revenge and it isn't. Not anymore. Revenge is a thing you finish. I finished one in a flooded courtyard in Moyang and it took about 11 seconds and I felt almost nothing. What I'm building is different and I only worked out what it was on the road to Tianluo, watching a 9-year-old argue with a panda in the back of a cart. The last time I stood at the top of the heavens, I had 9 disciples, an army, and a sword, and not one person in that entire world would have died for me without being ordered to. That's why it worked. My wife put her hand through my chest in a room with 40 guards outside it, and every single one of them was still standing there in the morning. This time I'm doing it the other way around. So, Li Twilight Great Emperor, Zhang Huiyin, sleep badly. You've got a few years yet. And when I come back up that ladder, and I am coming back up it, I am not going to knock.